The story begins with two armies at war, slashing their way to victory and dominance over the enemy. All of a sudden, a huge explosion occurred, leading to the destruction of the bridge. The White Knights became nervous since the bridge was the only way back to their base. Later they found out that the person who destroyed the bridge was none other than Reid, the hero of Altyne. Reid heard a familiar voice as he had expected this particular person to show up, Elria the Sage. After showcasing her ability by casting multiple spells, Reid asked her if they could finally settle the score after fighting hundreds of battles with each other. As Elria reminded Reid that they had fought 629 times, Reid appreciated that he was always reminded every time they fought. Even though Reid kept forgetting how many times they had fought, he knew he couldn't afford to show his pathetic side to others on the battlefield since he is called a hero. Elria felt the same way since she had also been called a sage. In the Altyne Kingdom, there was a man referred to as a hero who had thrown himself into numerous battlefields without losing, and had never once fallen to his knees until the very end of his life. The country Vigalta fought the Altyne Empire and was led by a lady referred to as a sage. Using the concept of magic, she overturned the unfavorable tides of war and increased the power of the entire country by spreading magic technology. The hero and sage had always met on the battlefield. They never slept, never rested, and always fought as if they were enjoying the battle. The only person the hero, Reid Freeden, could go all out against was none other than Elria Caldwin, the sage. However, their unique relationship would soon end. Eventually, a conclusion will be reached between the two. A white-haired man from the Altyne Empire named Lord Freeden received a report that Elria the Sage had been defeated. When Lord Freeden asked Lyot the messenger if the information was true, Lyot responded that the information was extremely credible since it came from a spy who had infiltrated Vigalta. Lord Freeden sat down, relieved, thinking that he would die first before Elria. When Lord Freeden was informed of a royal decree sent by the higher-ups, he had assumed that he would be regarded as useless after the passing of the sage. However, after hearing the decree in full detail, the white-haired man became enraged at the Altyne higher-ups for ordering such an unnecessary invasion. Lyot understood that what lay before them was the greatest opportunity they ever had. However, the people who were present on the battlefield knew that both Reid Freeden and Elria Caldwin did not want to waste the lives of the soldiers and decided to fight in a one-on-one battle. Frustrated, Lyot wished not to use the death of the great sage for war, but rather mourn for her death. The person known as the hero, Reid Freeden, appreciated Lyot's words and told him that he would be sure to convey his words properly to her. When Reid removed his armor and grabbed his sword, Lyot was curious about what he was going to do. Reid responded that he can't be dressed up for war to meet a friend. At the border of Altyne and Vigalta, Reid dashed towards the Vigalta country. Reid remained unfazed after multiple arrows were launched at him. After the soldiers of Vigalta finally recognized that it was Reid, it was already too late as Reid was now right in front of their mages. The mages tried to stop Reid, but he was too fast and strong for them. When Reid was about to land a punch on one of the mages, he suddenly stopped. Reid was then attacked from the back by Tiana, Elria's disciple. With tears in her eyes, Tiana asked Reid if he had come to invade their country. With the full force attack of the mages of Vigalta, Reid did not defend himself and sustained heavy injuries. After removing the shards that were stuck on his body, Reid told Tiana that he only came to say goodbye to Elria. Reid eventually landed at the Vigalta royal capital and punched his way in. As the soldiers mourned for the death of their sage, they asked Reid what he was planning to do with Elria. Reid wished to die on his terms after he finished talking to Elria and asked the soldiers not to get in his way. In front of Elria's body, Reid knelt and complimented how strong the people she had raised. Reid was still amazed by her, even though she had passed. Many people still looked up to her. Even though they couldn't decide who was stronger between the two of them, Reid enjoyed fighting Elria for over 50 years. Thinking that if they were in a different position, Reid knew that they could have been friends. Reid then lay beside Elria as he slowly passed away. As everything turned to darkness, Reid was confused when he woke up as a baby and curious about the lady in front of him. After having his special milk prepared for him, he cried out as he had no idea where he was. 18 years had passed and Reid was now a teenager. Working as a lumberjack, Reid was asked to cut down large trees. After felling the tree with one swing, his colleagues were very impressed and glad he was around to help them. Carrying the huge tree on his shoulder, Reid asked his colleague where he should take it. They were suddenly surprised after seeing a new species of squirrel from the tree that Reid had taken down. Everyone was so excited that the reincarnated Reid thought the place was genuinely peaceful. Reid was certain that he would spend his days like that in his current life. The news of a new species of squirrel was published in the papers, and Reid's photo was included. A woman immediately stood up as she became excited after finally finding Reid. At Reid's home, his mother suddenly rushed towards him, asking what he had done. Reid became confused as he didn't remember doing anything in particular. His mother then informed him that a noble from the royal capital was looking for him, and that he was asked to visit the village chief's house. After hearing that a noble was looking for him, Reid immediately thought of mages that fought against magical beasts with magic. However, he was still curious, since he was sure he had nothing that could be of concern to them. Reid's mother had the same thoughts, but she was still nervous since they specifically called Reid's name. She became even more nervous after noticing that Reid was rather calm after learning that a person with nobility was looking for him. Reid couldn't explain to his mother that he was no longer surprised after waking up and finding out that 1,000 years had passed. Reid learned in school that his old hometown, the Empire, had long been destroyed and absorbed into the enemy country, Vegalta. The country had now become a magic kingdom, and magic had become something that anyone could use. As Reid left to head to the village chief's house, his mother asked him to pretend that she had no knowledge of his actions in case he would cause a problem. After hearing Reid's nonchalant response, his mother sobbed as she suggested that they should atone for their sins together. After leaving his house, Reid was asked by the people in the town what he had done. He was a little embarrassed since rumors had already spread throughout the village. Everyone then gathered at the magic vehicle, as such machinery was privately owned, and only a high-ranking noble could obtain it. The village chief dashed towards Reid after seeing him and immediately asked what he had done. When Reid asked if a big-shot noble was in the village chief revealed that a distant descendant of the royal family in the Vegalta Magic Kingdom was looking for him. When Reid asked the intention of the noble that they personally look for him, the village chief asked the same thing and was only told that Reid would know once they met. When Reid finally went inside the room, he froze as he saw Elria once again. When Elria called Reid's attention, she was surprised when Reid suddenly apologized. Confused as to why Reid was using honorifics, Reid explained that since he was in the presence of a noble from House Caldwin, he had to watch his tone. When Reid asked if they had met before, Elria became disappointed. However, when Reid asked if she was looking for a guy who was a hero, Elria's eyes widened with excitement, but then realized that the Reid she knew did not talk like that. Reid then eventually revealed that he was indeed that hero she was looking for. He then asked if she was the same Elria from his past, and Elria responded that she was, and tried proving it by informing Reid what she likes to drink and do. Reid couldn't confirm if the information she mentioned was true since the only thing he knew about Elria was just her name. Elria suggested that they could just fight each other to find out, a suggestion that Reid could agree to. However, there weren't many places around that Elria could use her magic. Elria then told Reid that if he could dispel her magic in 10 seconds, then she would know it was the real Reid. The two then transferred to an open field, which made Elria curious where they were. Reid revealed to her that they were in his workplace. Curious, Elria asked what work he was doing in the village. When Elria learned that Reid was mostly doing regular hard labor, she asked for the reason. After informing Elria that he couldn't use magic, Reid still asked her not to hold back since he still had strength from his previous life. After Elria agreed to the terms, she then cast a huge fireball and launched it at Reid. Clenching his fist, Reid positioned himself and then punched the huge fireball and totally destroyed it. As the presence of the strong wind became a witness to the little battle, Reid asked Elria how many times they had fought. After informing Reid the exact number, the two then had a familiar conversation which they usually had in their past life. While Elria was glad that Reid and her finally met, Reid, on the other hand, never thought that they would meet again. Elria then shared that since she was reincarnated, she had assumed that Reid would also be reincarnated. Reid then became curious how she found him. After Elria shared that she found him in the news article, Reid was more surprised that Elria would even check the articles of the countryside. When Reid asked Elria what reincarnation really was, Elria explained that it was an event where one inherits the memories and abilities of their previous life, precisely called reincarnation magic. When Reid assumed that Elria used the reincarnation magic, Elria explained that she did not. Reincarnation magic was just a name that Elria gave on a provisional basis. The magic exists in theory, but Elria has no knowledge in making it. Elria then became annoyed when Reid teased her for not knowing the procedure. Elria then shared that if what had really happened to them was the reincarnation magic, she would also look the same as what she was before. Elria was then annoyed that Reid did not notice that she was now human instead of an elf. Theorizing that Reid's inability to use magic was also caused by the reincarnation magic, Elria asked what were the results for his magic aptitude test. Reid revealed that he accidentally broke the examination device, which he ended up receiving an earful. When Reid shared his wish to live peacefully in the countryside, Elria was annoyed since she knew that Reid was as strong as her and was used to being known as a hero. Mad at the fact that only mages are allowed to fight, Elria suggested to Reid that he should marry her. Seeing Reid's confused look, Elria then explained her plan of Reid becoming a part of the Caldwell family, which he would then become a mage after taking the Magic Academy's entrance exam. Thinking that the plan was somewhat cheating, Elria explained herself that it was not cheating since Reid had the capabilities to fight her for over 50 years. Elria could not accept that the people around them do not recognize Reid's real power. Reid was glad to hear the offer but was not sure about Elria's proposal. Elria then suggested that they see who was stronger between the two of them. After hearing Elria's words, Reid responded that he would not run or hide, as he would always accept Elria's challenge. When Reid finally met the village chief after speaking with Elria, the visibly worried chief asked if it was bad news. While Reid explained that he was going with Elria to the royal capital, Elria, on the other hand, was extremely embarrassed after suggesting to Reid that they should get married. As soon as Elria stepped out of the room, she was surprised as the people from the village were so eager to meet her. Seeing Elria turning red from embarrassment, Reid reminded everyone of their manners and emphasized that they wouldn't be able to ride the magic vehicle if they were blocking the way. Elria felt a sense of relief after hearing Reid's words and extending her hand. The village chief agreed with Reid and roughly asked everyone to back off. After thanking Reid, the two then went inside the magic vehicle and set out for the royal capital. While on their way, Elria was so embarrassed at what happened that she was no longer listening to Reid. When Reid called out Elria's attention, she was surprised and immediately turned red since Reid's face was so close. Thinking that Elria must have had a shy personality before reincarnating, Reid suddenly wondered if Elria knew the reason why he couldn't use magic. Elria theorized that it was probably because of Reid's unique magic power. Unlike others whose magic energy is like flowing water passing through the magic circuit, Reid's magic power was like a rock that, if forced, the path itself would break down. Elria mentioned that she would have to construct a special theoretical formula to match Reid's powers, if he wishes to use magic. When Elria mentioned that the process might take a long time since in her previous life, it took her 100 years just to form the basis of her magic theory, Reid was very grateful to Elria as she had solved Reid's 18 years of curiosity. When Elria asked if Reid wanted to use magic, he responded that he only wanted to know what it felt like to use magic. Elria reassured Reid that he would be fine since he still couldn't beat her even if he had magic. When Elria thanked Reid for accepting her proposal, she immediately became embarrassed when Reid mentioned that he was surprised by the sudden proposal. But Reid does agree with Elria, since marriage was the only way for a commoner who cannot use magic to become a mage. Reid also found the marriage convenient as he discussed with Elria how the two of them got reincarnated after 1,000 years. Reid had his suspicions that someone might be involved in their reincarnation, and being a commoner he couldn't do anything about it. Reid also does not want Elria to bear all the burden. Reid then realized that Elria's family name was linked to the royal family. Elria explained that she was the daughter of the royal family and that her disciple, Tiana, inherited her family name. It was then known that the Kaldwin family was the lineage of the sage. Reid then asked Elria if she was really fine with him being her fiancé, even though they were enemies in their previous life. Elria had no problem as she did not care that they were once enemies. The two were grateful to one another as they both trusted each other. Reid then shared that he had never once given an engagement speech in his previous life. Reid spent most of his life on the battlefield when he decided to turn down all marriage talks. When Reid asked if his stories were passed down to the future generations, Elria panicked and explained to Reid that his story had been adapted and passed down. Though Elria couldn't bear to tell Reid his adapted story, he reassured him that it was not what he thought. When they finally arrived at Elria's home, Reid couldn't close his mouth after seeing such a huge house. A man then called Elria's name as he landed in front of them. That man was Elria's father, Galleon Cladwin. Enraged that Elria went on another excursion alone, Galleon's anger suddenly changed as he became happy that Elria was honest. Galleon became more proud when Elria mentioned that she had left a note and also told people at the mansion. When Elria mentioned that she had brought her fiancé, Galleon outright rejected her fiancé. When Reid introduced himself, Galleon greeted him energetically and immediately asked him to go home. When Reid responded that he wouldn't be going home, Galleon then asked him to follow him inside the mansion as he then introduced the real head of the family. Galleon then told his wife that Elria had brought her fiancé. Elria's mother, Alicia Kaldwin, who was also the head of the Kaldwin family, asked her husband to step away since he was being too noisy. When Reid introduced himself to Alicia, she responded that she had never heard of his family name before. As Alicia and Reid spoke to each other, she assessed Reid and told Elria that he was much more level-headed than her. Alicia was then disappointed in Elria, that she would compliment Reid even though her own mother had insulted her. When Elria told her mother that she had finally found Reid, Alicia asked Reid to raise his head as he would be their guest. When Alicia and Reid sat down, Alicia asked what was going on and how things came to be. After assessing Alicia, Reid knew that a mediocre excuse would not work on her. Reid then honestly told Alicia about his plans, to which Alicia accurately guessed that it was Elria's idea. Wondering if Alicia doubted his words, Reid told her that she can confirm it with Elria. However, Alicia mentioned that she didn't need to confirm it since he was indeed the real Reid. Alicia explained that Elria was strange at birth as she spoke Reid's name out of nowhere. After hearing Elria's story that even scared her mother before, Reid was surprised after learning that Elria had been looking for him for a long time without any basis that he was also reincarnated. Reid was surprised when Alicia approved of their marriage. When he asked if she would be okay to hand their house in his hands, Alicia responded that she only wanted to fulfill her daughter's wishes. Reid then shared that Elria was his only equal, and that they've been apart for a very long time. Just like Elria, Reid also never forgot about her as he wondered what Elria would think of the peaceful world he had lived in. After seeing Reid's sincerity, Alicia gave him a passing grade for the proposal. Alicia then mentioned the conditions for accepting the engagement, and that was to qualify as a mage at the same magic academy with Elria. Wondering how he could prove himself, Alicia suggested that Reid could just use his strength. Alicia then called for Galleon as she wanted to test Reid's fighting capabilities. Reid agreed with Alicia's terms and mentioned that he would avoid all of Galleon's attacks and only land one of his own. Before starting the fight, Reid asked for Alicia not to complain if he happens to destroy the whole building. Before Galleon and Reid could engage in their mock battle, they needed to change locations. Alicia explained that the room was a magic training facility managed by the country, allowing non-mages to participate in magic combat. As Alicia prepared to speak with Elria, she requested Galleon to assess Reid's abilities thoroughly. Turning to Reid, Galleon proposed that they should enjoy their mock battle. Prior to the commencement, Reid inquired if Galleon was truly comfortable with the agreed-upon terms. Galleon affirmed, expressing confidence that Reid would find it challenging to land an attack. To sweeten the deal, Galleon added that if Reid could land an attack, he would be allowed to call him Daddy, to which Reid promptly suggested father-in-law as an alternative. As the mock battle began, Galleon's movements were so swift that his fist closed in on Reid's head within seconds. However, Reid proved agile enough to evade the attack, earning Galleon's compliment on his reaction. Attempting a counter with a kick from above, Reid was taken aback when he realized Galleon's fist was approaching him. After his attack was blocked, Galleon intensified his pace, launching serious attacks. Evading Galleon's strikes, Reid was impressed by their power. Excited, Galleon felt the training was akin to sparring with Elria and saw no need to hold back. Reid apologized to Galleon and decided it was time to make his move. In the adjacent room, Elria was startled by a knock on the door. When Alicia entered and sought to talk, Elria promptly interrupted, eager to learn about Reid's situation. After informing Elria that Galleon was currently engaged in a mock battle with Reid, Alicia sought confirmation that Reid was indeed the person Elria had been searching for. Upon Elria's affirmation, Alicia smiled, expressing surprise at Elria finding Reid. Elria, initially worried about being wrong, felt relieved after discovering Reid. When Alicia inquired about Elria's feelings for Reid, Elria admitted her affection. As Elria noticed her confidence waning, she explained that these feelings were new to her, and now seemed the right time to express her liking for him. When Alicia remarked on Reid and Elria thinking alike as if they had shared a past, Elria was taken aback. Although Elria hadn't planned to keep anything about her previous life from her mother, she insisted it was her and Reid's secret. Thanking Alicia for her understanding, Elria was surprised when Alicia asked if she had confessed her feelings to Reid. Alicia expressed disappointment after learning that Elria had not yet communicated her feelings. Having spoken with Reid, Alicia sensed he was a good man. Intrigued, Alicia teased Elria, attempting to coax the truth from her. Contemplating Reid, Alicia considered acknowledging him and having Galleon train him. When Elria inquired about what Reid and Galleon were currently doing, Alicia disclosed the terms for approving their engagement, evaluating Reid's abilities. Elria then revealed to Alicia that Reid was unable to use magic, though he was very strong, putting Galleon in danger. After Galleon was blasted off from the house, Alicia's expression immediately displayed regret. Alicia was still dumbfounded after witnessing her husband being blasted off from their house. When Reid saw Elria, he asked if she had seen Galleon. After learning that Galleon had flown past their room, Reid was shocked by the damage he had caused even though he had held back. When Elria asked for an explanation from Reid, he responded that since he was told not to hold back, he tried punching Galleon lightly. After witnessing Reid's power, Alicia asked Elria what Reid really was. Elria smiled and responded that the man she likes was the strongest. After a month had passed since the annex of the Caldwin estate was smashed into pieces, Reid was checking the historical records in the royal library. He expected that the village library might not have the information he needed, but he was surprised that the royal family library also did not contain any history regarding Altine or the hero. When Elria called Reid's attention and told him that he had received a letter, Reid wondered if he had informed the village about the engagement between him and Elria. After reading the letter that came from her mother, Reid shared with Elria how her mother thinks of their engagement as a prank and that the village chief asked for souvenirs from the royal capital. When Elria asked if he had gone to the royal capital yet, Reid shared that he has since he was thoroughly taught proper manners and courtesy by Alicia. Elria then suggested that they go shopping so that Reid would have something to wear when he takes the examination in the academy. Seeing his outfit, Reid could understand that his appearance may not pass as Elria's fiancé. Before the two leave, Alicia compliments Elria's look and hopes that they enjoy their date. While walking in the street, Elria noticed that the clothes Reid was wearing were familiar. She then asked if those were her father's, to which Reid confirmed it and explained that he had borrowed it from Galleon, though he was hesitant at first after putting Galleon through such an ordeal. Elria then suggested that Reid should focus on finding something that would suit him better. After trying out the clothes, Reid then enjoyed delicious food. Reid complimented the food of the current time as he could tell that the food would have been unthinkable 1,000 years ago. Elria became embarrassed after Reid pointed out that she had breadcrumbs. When Reid tried to remove the breadcrumbs, he suddenly got excited and ended up breaking the table. After having their meal, Elria then asked Reid to follow her as she wanted to show him something. Elria then showed Reid the Vigalta Royal Magic Academy, to which Reid found it very huge. Elria then shared that she could have enrolled in the academy when she was 12 years old but postponed her enrollment because she had to look for Reid. The king also asked Elria to postpone her enrollment since it coincided with the princesses, and as a result, Elria received sweets. When Elria asked Reid if there was someone he liked in his hometown, Reid responded that after living such a long life, he could only see the people as his grandchildren. Reid also shared how he was thinking about her all the time while she was looking for him. Elria expressed how she didn't want to fight Reid and that she wanted to spend time together with him. Glad that she got engaged to Reid, Elria extended her hand and asked Reid to take good care of her. The two shook hands as they agreed on helping each other out. The Royal Magic Academy of Vigalta was a grand institution for mages. Reid was amazed by people from other counties enrolling in such a prestigious academy. Reid then asked Elria how long she was going to hide behind him. Elria was nervous, feeling that everyone was staring at her. Hearing Reid complain that walking was hard, Elria thought a piggyback ride would be easier. Reid pointed out that this would only embarrass her further, and everyone was staring because she was cute. When Elria asked if Reid thought the same, Reid tried to avoid the question, but Elria insisted he respond since it was important to her. Elria was surprised when Reid responded that she was indeed cute, and he would even want to brag about it. Elria was grateful and promised Reid that she would do her best to make him proud. When Reid asked if she could let go of his sleeves, Elria held his arm tighter, mentioning that it was her lifeline. When they finally met a person from the academy, Reid told her they were from the Caldwin family, and they were asked to follow her. The academy staff couldn't believe she was guiding Elria personally, known as the Reincarnation of the Sage. When she asked Reid how he was related to the Caldwin family, Elria answered that he was her fiancé. It took some time for the academy staff to register what Elria said, and when she finally realized it, she was deeply shocked. After congratulating them, the academy staff asked Reid about his distinguished family. When Reid responded that he was not from a noble family but rather just a commoner, the staff refused to believe Reid's words. They then heard a lady giving everyone a warning that another fire blast from the dragon she was riding would happen again. The staff introduced the lady as Rufus Laelis of the Sirios Federation. The Sirios Federation was a country that specializes in summoning magic, values strength and talent, where one's superiority was determined by what monster they had enslaved. After hearing the benefits of enrolling in the academy, Reid realized it was essentially a proxy war for other countries. Reid was impressed after learning that Rufus was able to handle 4 dragons, earning her the title of Dragon Princess. Elria, jealous of the attention, told Reid that she could summon many things. Reid believed her, and he asked Elria to show him something spectacular next time, to which Elria also agreed. As they arrived at the location for their examination, they were instructed to destroy the object using their magic. When Elria asked if the staff could make it more challenging, Reid warned her not to cause trouble for others. Hearing that Elria was unsatisfied with the examination, the staff summoned a simulated designed beast for training. Satisfied with the updated examination, Elria asked Reid to watch over her. Elria cast multiple magic circles, wanting to show Reid a slightly stronger spell. When Elria destroyed not just the simulated beast but also everything around it, Reid complimented her, though he did not expect the spell to be more flashy. Meanwhile, the staff was sitting on the ground in total disbelief. When Elria shared that she did many things aside from the spell that caused damage, Reid patted her head, amazed, thinking it was like the strongest set of greed. The staff was surprised that Reid was still calm after seeing such a devastating spell. Reid responded that it just became ordinary to him after seeing the spell multiple times. The staff, still in total disbelief, explained that the power produced in Elria's spell was at the same level as a 10th tier magic, something she had never seen anyone other than those registered as special rank mages use. When Reid asked about the evaluation he would get for putting out the destruction left by Elria's spell, the staff explained that since the fire was caused by magic, it would require magic of the same tier to offset it. Reid would be evaluated on par with Elria if he put out the fire. After hearing the explanation, Reid used a spell by just punching the air. After putting out the fire, Elria complimented Reid, saying his punch looked like what he usually did in their past life. Elria then patted Reid's head, complimenting him for being humble. The staff mentioned that the headmaster was calling for both of them. As they met with the headmaster, they were asked to hold back while in the academy. Elise Rummel, the headmaster of Vegalta Royal Magic Academy, was informed by the king that Elria had extraordinary talent in the field of magic, which she witnessed in her office. Elise then asked Elria to use just 5th-tier magic, since her spells were so strong that she might end up killing someone. She reminded Elria that if she didn't comply, she would be expelled. Elise then asked Reid what he was, as she could not comprehend his very existence. Reid then asked Elria about the aging progress of the elves since she was once an elf. Reid concluded that Elise stopped growing before she stopped aging, which Elise found insulting. Elise accurately guessed that what Reid did wasn't magic. When she asked what he did, Reid responded that all he did was just a normal punch since he can't use any magic. Regardless of their powers, Elise asked them to hold back. Reid expressed his concern for the request, since he was asked by the head of the Caldwin family to produce reasonable results. Elise mentioned that she had received a report from Alicia regarding their situation, realizing that it was her responsibility for underestimating Reid. To compromise, Elise told them that she could lift the restriction only during exams, but still asked for them to at least not go overboard. Elise then expressed her surprise as she did not expect to hear their names at the same time. Reid became curious about what Elise meant, to which she then explained that it was just a story he had heard from her grandfather that was also passed down only amongst elves. When Reid insisted Elise tell him his story, she revealed that the story of Reid, once called the hero, was in love with the sage. Reid was surprised to learn that the history of the hero had been adapted and turned into a love story, where the hero was in love with the sage. As Elise imagined what it might look like, she shared that the hero was an enemy of the sage, but they both wished for peace. The two had been fighting each other for more than 50 years to prevent any serious damage to their forces. However, during the battle, the sage got sick and died. Upon receiving the news, the hero invaded the Vegalta royal castle all by himself. The hero who arrived at the royal castle was in a tattered and near-death state. Curious about the reason the hero gave for going to the royal castle, Elise found it very cool and shared the exact phrase that Reid used before he passed away. Elise became more excited as she shared her opinion that only lovers would go through such lengths. Elise wished that the sage could hear the thoughts of the hero, as she was sure the sage would be delighted. When Elise tried to share more stories passed down by the elves, Reid raised his hand and thanked Elise for sharing the story with them. Reid then apologized as it seemed Elria was in no shape to continue, and they may have to take their leave. Seeing how easily startled Elria was before dismissing them, Elise asked the two to strictly adhere to the ability restrictions, and then congratulated them on their acceptance to the Vegalta Magic Academy. Although Reid did not think of the story as bad, Elria explained that she did not know what had happened, but the hero's story became so popular that it was passed down among the elves. Elira was ashamed of what happened to their story that she didn't have the courage to tell Reid, thinking that it might make him feel unpleasant. With a sad look, Elria asked if the story was a mistake. Reid released a sigh and told Elria that it wasn't a mistake, and that the story passed down among the elves was something that actually happened. Elria's eyes widened after learning that Reid came to the royal castle alone and battered. Reid then tried to pass it off that he had to get beaten one-sidedly since he had to see and couldn't just kill Tiana. When Elria asked Reid the words he said before his passing, Reid was caught off guard and just told Elria that he didn't say anything. Reid then avoided the conversation as he reminded Elria that there are more important things to do, such as reporting to Alicia and the others that they have passed the exam. Back in the House of Caldwin, Alicia and the others congratulated Reid and Elria for passing and getting into the academy. After informing Reid that they would be commuting from the academy's dormitory, Alicia asked him to take care of Elria since she was shy and clumsy. Galleon grabbed Reid by the shoulders and asked the same thing from Reid. Galleon then asked one more important thing from Reid, which was not to make any advances towards Elria until they're married. Reid respected Alicia and Galleon's request, as he knew that the penalty for breaking those promises was a death penalty. As Reid and Elria began their academy life, they were handed a key to their dormitory room. Curious, Reid asked if he was sharing a room with Elria. The dormitory person responded that in the academy there were nobles who were already engaged or married when they entered. As long as there were no special circumstances, the academy would arrange for them to share the same room. After learning of the policies for engaged students, Reid asked Elria if she was fine with it. Elria expressed her relief that she could stay with Reid and not some random girl. Reid found their situation convenient since Alicia did ask him to take care of Elria, to which Elria was a bit annoyed and told Reid that she was not that hopeless. After entering their dormitory room, Reid was pleasantly surprised as it was a very nice room. When Reid mentioned that he was hungry and planned to cook a meal, Elria was surprised as she did not expect that Reid knew how to cook. When Reid mentioned that he had learned simple cooking during camping trips, Elria remembered that they used to hunt rabbits whenever they saw one. The two then shared their struggles and the activities they enjoyed in their free time. While laughing at how similar their experiences were in the past life, Reid remembered that because of the smell, Elria was able to find him. Elria laughed, remembering such fun memories, and suggested to Reid that they just cook simple meals like they used to. When asked by Reid why she would go out of her way to eat like before, Elria responded that nostalgia might bring out flavors. As the two started cooking and preparing their meals, Elria shared that the last time she cooked was with her mother when she was still young. She remembered that her mother praised her a bit. Unfortunately, other than that, Elria no longer received praises from her mother. Reid patted Elria's head as he reassured her that her mother would praise her since she was now praised throughout generations. After preparing their meal, Reid and Elria had a conversation while eating. Elria was curious about what Reid was like when he was young in the previous life. Reid only remembered that he was always alone. In the previous life, Reid had a weak body when he was a kid. He was always bedridden with a fever, so Reid's memories of his parents were hazy. The Altine Empire was a country where there was a huge gap between the rich and the poor. With the lack of resources and the country's policy to exploit land, kids from the villages were going off to become soldiers, which was the norm at the time. Kids like Reid at the time couldn't become a soldier and were just treated as a burden. Frustrated with having such a weak body, every time Reid got a fever, he would keep on training until he eventually gained the body he has now. While achieving new feats, the people around Reid started to notice his superhuman abilities and ended up calling him a monster. When his own mother also called him a monster, Reid was then driven away and was given to a mercenary group that was passing by at the time. Though the mercenaries pitied Reid at first, when they witnessed how dangerous Reid was, they suddenly changed their view of him. Eventually, no one dared to approach Reid as he had killed enemies who stood in his way. Reid continued being a mercenary while searching for someone like him. His achievements started piling up, and eventually people started calling him a hero. Hearing Reid's struggles, Elria was amazed at Reid for surviving such a harsh environment. Reid was surprised by the sudden compliment, to which Elria explained that she only returned the favor and praised him. Elria pointed out that receiving a compliment makes someone happy, and since Reid had always been alone, he never noticed its value. Now that Reid was no longer alone, Elria promised that whenever Reid works hard, she would praise him a lot. Reid broke out laughing when Elria pointed out that even in their past life, she was way older than him. Elria immediately turned red and annoyed Reid after being called an older sister by him. When Reid and Elria checked the bedroom, they were surprised that they only received one bedroom. Elria could not hide her embarrassment when Reid did not mind that they shared the bed together. When Elria shared that she has some unique habits when sleeping, especially if she was drowsy, Reid offered the bed to her and decided to sleep in the living room. Reid was caught off guard when Elria pulled his sleeve and mentioned that she would feel lonely and wished to sleep together. After hearing Elria's request, Reid could not help it and told her that he would be okay doing anything with her. Scratching his head, Reid was left with no choice and decided to just think about Galleon's face when he sleeps. After spending their first night at the dormitory house, Reid finally woke up as morning arrived. He noticed that his right side felt kind of heavy, but when he realized it was because of Elria, Reid was somewhat glad to have her with him. He tried waking her up, but to no avail. He then instructed her to take a bath to fully wake up. When Elria finally agreed, Reid felt relieved and planned to prepare breakfast while she was still in the bathroom. However, he was caught off guard when Elria suddenly suggested they take a bath together. Seeing that Elria was about to fall asleep again, Reid had no choice but to agree to go to the bathroom together. After preparing a warm bath for Elria, Reid noticed she was still in a daze. When he realized Elria was out of it, he immediately declined when she suggested taking a bath together again. Thinking they would be late for class with such a slow pace, Reid agreed to hold her hand while she took a bath. However, he was once again caught off guard when Elria started stripping in front of him. When Elria had finally undressed, she became confused after seeing Reid covering his face with a towel. Reid then lied, telling her that he bathes while covering his face. Elria bought the lie, went inside the bathtub, and held Reid's hand. The two enjoyed each other's company as they held hands. When they finally arrived at school, Elria was curious why Reid seemed so tired. The drained Reid wasn't sure if it was a good or bad thing that she didn't remember what had happened. As they opened the classroom door, Elria was immediately bombarded by the students waiting for her. Overwhelmed, Elria immediately hid behind Reid and told everyone that he was more amazing than her. Reid was nervous at first when everyone's eyes were fixed on him, but he calmed down after realizing that the students also idolized him. Delighted by their words, Reid introduced himself and announced that he would soon claim the Caldwin name while being just a commoner. The announcement shocked everyone, as they did not expect Reid to be a commoner. The students were immediately cautious of their words. However, one student still did not believe that a commoner could dispel higher-tier magic from Elria. Reid recognized the student as Farag, the son of the Verminen family. Before entering the academy, Alicia had told Reid about the Verminen family and its long lineage. The current generation had Farag, known for his talent and vast magic power, though Alicia had a different opinion about Farag, assessing him as self-centered and always blaming others. Holding back her anger, Alicia asked Reid to do something about Farag's character if he ever got a chance. Farag doubted the credibility of Reid's connections and insulted him for ruining the Kaldwin name that had protected Vigalta for a long time. Reid remained calm and responded that Farag could confirm his connections with Alicia himself. Farag became more enraged, not accepting that Reid, a commoner, could enter the academy. Reid explained that he had properly passed the written and practical exams and gained Principal Elise's approval. Farag became more annoyed when Reid tried talking to him calmly, accusing him of having a creepy grandpa attitude. Farag's classmates tried to calm him down, warning him against butting heads with someone connected to the Kaldwin family. Still, Farag did not believe Reid had any connection, and guessed he might just be some servant. But when Reid pulled Elria and announced that he was her fiancé, everyone was in total shock. Reid and Elria looked for seats, barely containing their laughter while everyone was left speechless. Reid expressed his satisfaction after seeing Farag's bewildered look. When Elria reminded Reid of his bad attitude, he defended himself, explaining that he scolded them since they were getting cocky. After hearing Reid's explanation, Elria realized why the Altine soldiers were so obedient. A student called Reid and Elria's attention, offering them a seat. Grateful for the offer, Reid introduced himself, and the student introduced himself as Weasel Blanche. Elria mentioned that she had heard of the Blanche family name before. Weasel revealed that his family were magic equipment engineers, and the tools Elria used were made by his sister. Elria immediately changed her attitude, and the three continued having a pleasant conversation. Since the Blanche family were engineers, Elria was curious why Weasel took the test for mages even though there were classes for magic engineers. Weasel explained that he was more of the practical type. On top of being a mage, Weasel wanted to know what's not important, not just for himself but also for his surroundings, creating a more practical magic tool, which was his goal. When Weasel mentioned that he might be a nuisance, he was surprised when Reid responded that he didn't mind. Reid explained that people who complained about the tools just didn't understand them. Weasel's act of creating a good magic tool aligned with the school's pursuit and development of magic ideology. After gaining some confidence from Reid's words, Weasel asked Reid if he could look at his magic tool. Curious after learning that Reid was able to dispel Elria's Tier 10 magic, Elria explained that Reid's magic powers were special, and he couldn't use magic tools since his mana flow was broken. Disappointed, Weasel then asked Reid if he could destroy the object in his hand. Weasel reassured Reid that it was fine as it was a spare. He also explained that he wanted to know under what circumstances the magic tool would break down as a magic engineer. After boasting that the tools he personally created had high durability, he was in total disbelief when Reid easily broke his tool. After examining his broken tool, Weasel asked if Elria had any idea of the phenomenon surrounding Reid. When Elria explained that Reid's magic was different from everyone else, Weasel agreed with her theory as he was still unsure why the protective magic and engravings were damaged. Weasel shared that he may have to observe and analyze the tool a couple of times since he still couldn't grasp the explanation or come up with a conclusion. When Weasel asked Reid how he was able to obtain such magic power, Reid responded that he had already forgotten about it since it happened a long time ago. He then noticed someone eavesdropping in their conversation and called the student's attention. The student hiding underneath the table was so surprised that she ended up hitting her head. Though the student claimed she was not a stranger, Reid still asked for security. The student then introduced herself as Millis Lambat from the village called Noaber. Millis also shared that since she was enrolled through scholarship, she was thinking of using it as an opportunity to make human friends. When Elria approved of Millis, and was then promoted from a suspicious person to a classmate, Millis was ecstatic as she shared how she had thought about the introduction all night. After Reid asked Millis the reason why she was eavesdropping, Millis responded that she was just searching for anyone that she thought she could reach out to. When Reid mentioned that she could reach out like usual, Millis cried out as she found it impossible. Even though Reid tried giving points to Millis on how to start a conversation, the two ended up arguing for having the same status, a commoner. Their argument reached a point where they were now listing the best qualities of their hometowns. Millis, now feeling hopeless, jumped right at Reid as she shared that she only wanted a fellow countryside friend. Elria immediately jumped in between the two and caught Millis. When Elria mentioned that she wanted to be friends with Millis, Elria suddenly thought of a dog when Millis shook her hand since she was overjoyed. After Reid and Weasel introduced themselves to Millis, she cried so much as finally gained 3 new friends. Reid then noticed that the teacher had not arrived yet, which made Millis suggest that the teacher may have lost their way. All of a sudden, a huge explosion came from the classroom entrance and destroyed the walls. A black-haired lady appeared, feeling relieved thinking that Elise might get mad if she was late. The black-haired lady then introduced herself as the homeroom teacher. The students were taken aback upon discovering that their homeroom teacher was Alma Kanos, a specially ranked mage. Alma attained this special rank due to her ability to exterminate huge disaster-level monsters single-handedly. The students were in total shock, assuming that Alma had received orders from the king to participate in a large-scale subjugation in the dragon's nest. When a student inquired about the king's orders, Alma nonchalantly responded that she had already completed them. Alma then informed everyone that both the king and the principal had personally requested her to become a teacher. After sharing her expectations for the class, Alma proceeded to outline her plans. Explaining the mechanics of qualifying as a mage, Alma emphasized to everyone that the most crucial part of the class was the evaluation. Even if they achieved the highest score individually, if their class did not pass, it would mean they wouldn't become mages. Alma reminded everyone that, as mages, their duty was not only to focus on themselves, but also to prioritize acting as a group. Alma then called out Millis and asked her about the duties of a mage. Though caught off guard, Millis managed to provide an appropriate answer, which Alma agreed with. However, Alma pointed out that there were still more duties for mages, such as evacuating the surrounding residents to a safe zone, securing evacuation routes, isolating danger zones, conducting rescues, and many other tasks. Realizing they had more responsibilities than they initially thought, some students hoped their class did not have any deadweight. Alma reminded everyone that individual evaluations would be held once a month, while class evaluations would take place 4 times a year. After reading the teaching manual, Alma found lectures to be a hassle and decided to conduct hands-on training. Using her magic item, Alma transported everyone to a separate space for a mock battle. The students were very nervous at the thought of fighting a special rank. When Alma mentioned that anyone could leave if no one raised their hand, Farag raised his hand, introduced himself, and informed Alma that he would be her opponent. Hearing Farag boasting about his skills, he was surprised when Alma mentioned that she would be fighting seriously and might break a few of his bones. When Farag immediately changed his mind about the mock battle, Elria raised her hand and seized the opportunity to fight Alma. Upon hearing Elria's name, Alma immediately recognized her since she had been given a heads up by Principal Elise. Since Elria was only permitted to use 5-tier magic, Alma decided to match her. When Alma swung her weapon, causing a wave of magic, she was amazed since Elria was able to block it so easily. After casting another spell and getting blocked, Alma assessed how Elria's spell worked and asked if she had any more spells. When Elria asked Alma if she had specific requests, Alma responded that Elria could use any type of spell. However, she would have to fight Elria for real, as Alma was curious about how many bones she would break. After Elria agreed to the terms, Reid then asked everyone to move away, warning that they could get injured if they were too close to the fight. While everyone else moved to a safe spot, Reid and Weisel decided to stay, eager to witness the fight up close. When Alma cast an offensive spell on Elria, she was surprised that Elria's lower-tier magic could compete with her higher-tier spell. Confused about what was happening, Reid explained to Reid that Elria didn't cast the spells directly but used them to cast more spells. When Reid mentioned that Elria could cast 1,000 lower-tier spells, Millis was in total disbelief. Reid explained that Elria creates a bunch of spells and puts them together. After learning about Elria's capabilities, Weasel asked Reid if he had seen the full potential of Elria's spell. Reid responded yes, as he had always kept his eyes on Elria. What made Reid crazy about Elria was that she was brighter than anyone else. As the two spells clashed, Elria was amazed that Alma could deal with all of her spells. However, she noticed that Alma was still not yet serious. Alma smiled as her charade was discovered, and she then summoned a lot of skeletons, which she called the Death Brigade. When Alma told Elria to overcome the Black Flag as if her life depended on it, Elria asked how Alma knew those words. Hitting a nerve, Elria then told Alma that only one person could say those exact words. Sensing that Elria's attitude had somewhat changed, Millis asked Reid what was going on but was surprised not to find Reid beside them. As the huge skeleton was about to attack Elria, it was immediately defeated by Reid's punch. Reid then apologized for getting in between their fight as he could not stand someone using his own words. Recognizing Reid as the other irregular Alma had been told about, she then asked Reid how he was able to send her magic flying without using magic. Reid offered to answer Alma's question if she answered his. Reid could barely recognize the flag, but after hearing his own line, it all made sense to him. Reid then asked Alma why she was holding Altine's banner. Elise's voice suddenly echoed in the space that Alma created. After receiving an earful from Elise, Alma canceled her spell and told Reid that they could talk about his question later. Alma then encouraged everyone to be strong like them. However, after witnessing their fight, some immediately lost hope. But Alma's words still reached some students as they gained some encouragement. Alma then asked those who had fallen asleep to wake up, as she was going to teach them the most important fundamentals as a mage, instructing everyone to run until they passed out. After Alma instructed everyone to run, she was disappointed with most of the students as they were all out of stamina. Reid, accustomed to harsh training, did not break a sweat after running, while others like Weasel were so out of breath. Seeing that everyone could no longer move, Elria decided to use 6th tier transport magic. As everyone was being lifted up, Millis cried out, expressing her desire to take a bath. This gave Alma an idea, and she suggested that they all go to the dormitory's joint large bath. The tired Millis was re-energized after hearing Alma's suggestion, and invited Elria to join them. Alma found it convenient that while everyone was relaxing, she would have a small time to talk with Reid. At the dormitory bath, Elria had lots of questions about Reid and Alma's relationship and about the Altine banner. Seeing Elria's body up close, Millis found it very unfair that both Elria's hair and body were silky smooth. Embarrassed that her body parts were being described, Elria immediately covered Millis's mouth. Elra wished to discuss something with Millis and asked what good gift she could think of to give to a certain person. Elria was surprised as Millis accurately guessed who the person was. Even though Elria denied the accusations, her actions had already exposed her to everyone, as they all could notice that Elria had feelings for Reid. Elria asked Millis for help about the gift since she had never given a present to someone before, and she wanted to give Reid a congratulatory present. Since Millis does not fully know Reid nor Elria, she suggested giving Reid something that he would like. Elria threw some ideas on what Reid would like. Millis liked the ideas, but as she pointed out that as a fellow country girl, she would rather have something with a more permanent form. Grateful for the idea. However, Elria immediately gave up as she could not think of anything permanent to give to Reid. Elria became depressed since she doesn't know what to give to Reid even though they have known each other for more than 50 years. As Millis pleaded with Elria to not drown herself, she asked Elria to think of the moments where Reid was happy. Elria then remembered that whenever Reid fights her, he'd always laugh and enjoy himself. As Elria expressed the type of gift that would give the same feeling when they, Reid and her, fight in battle, Millis hugged her tightly as she found it very cute. While unintentionally suffocating Elria, Millis became jealous of Reid and gave Elria her full support. Inside the classroom, Alma apologized for making Reid wait as Elise gave her an earful. Reid did not mind and immediately wanted answers as to how Alma gained the Altane's banner. When Alma asked if Altane was the name of a country, Reid asked her not to play dumb after using her magic tool. After seeing how serious Alma was that she had no knowledge of Altine, Reid guessed that the Altine banner was not something that could be recognized as a banner. Alma revealed that only people from the Kanos name who have inherited the spell knew of the banner, and she then asked Reid about his real identity and the connection he has to the banner. Reid apologized as he could not answer her question. However, she gave Alma an opportunity to ask anything aside from her first question. Reid gave the choices into Alma's hands. If she could deduce Reid's identity based on his answers, or if he could answer her without declaring anything, with those options laid, Reid would then know if he could trust her. First, Alma asked Reid about his opinion on methodical people. After hearing Reid's opinion about it, Alma then asked for his opinion about the moonshines. As for the last question, Reid asked Alma if she really was sure about it. Calling Reid Her Excellency, Alma asked if he still remembered her name. Reid smiled as he only knew one name that called him Excellency, and that was no other than Liat. When Reid asked if Alma was related to Liat, Alma revealed that Liat was the name of her ancestor. Liat was the one who made the memorandum and passed it down to their generation. Reid could not believe that Liat would even leave a memorandum for a millennium. Alma then agreed not to ask something related to her ancestor, to which Reid pleaded not to bring up the topic again, as it was the very reason why he wanted to talk to her. After Alma made it clear that she did not know the country Altine, as well as the banner since it has been passed down along with the memorandum. When Reid asked about the hero and Reid Friedrich, he received the same answer as what Elise had given him before. Reid remembered that Liat did not just call him Excellency, but also Hero, yet it was not mentioned in his very own memorandum. Alma was surprised when Reid shared his theory that someone was trying to erase the existence of the hero. To manipulate a personal memorandum was logically impossible. However, Reid had already seen irrational things in reality. Curious as to why his story still existed among the elves, Alma explained the elves' oral tradition, sharing information from mouth to mouth without any medium. After learning what had happened to the elves' oral tradition, Reid instructed Alma to tell him anything moving forward, as he deduced that she knew a lot more about history. Even though Alma agreed to Reid's request, she was still annoyed that he nonchalantly gave orders to a special rank. Since Reid was well respected and loved by her ancestors, Alma left it at that and asked if Elria was the same as Reid, but was immediately disappointed at herself after realizing that she picked a fight with the real sage. The two ended their conversation as Reid counted on her for any help he might need. After the talk with Alma, several days passed. The conditional exams were now starting the day after tomorrow. Millis asked the others if they had any plans for their day off. However, she was immediately lectured by Reid that even though Elria had praised her magic, she still had to train her combat skills. Millis defended herself and asked for assistance from Elria. However, she was so sleep-deprived that she was sleeping while sitting. Millis and Weasel then asked if there was something going on between Reid and Alma, since they were becoming more friendly and as well as being called Excellency. Farag, who was also at the cafeteria, lectured Millis for being too noisy and told her to prostrate herself when apologizing to someone higher than her. Farag was annoyed when Millis refused to prostrate herself. Angered that a commoner like Millis was using the same magic Grand, Farag tried teaching Millis a lesson and cast a spell in front of her. Reid saw what Farag was about to do. He immediately jumped in between them and deflected Farag's spell. Reid then grabbed Farag's head and lectured him about the dangers of magic. After being thrown by Reid, Farag still acted out, telling Reid that a barbarian like him needed punishment. In front of Farag, Reid took his magic tool and broke it in front of him, making Farag in total disbelief. Even though Reid had saved Millis, she still found it disappointing and asked Reid to only do cool things when Elria was awake. When Elria was woken up by Millis, she was still out of her wits and immediately hugged Reid. Embarrassed by what was happening, Reid excused themselves and decided to head back first. Walking back to their dormitory room, Reid was curious as to what makes Elria very busy to the point that she was overexerting herself. When Elria responded that she wanted to make Reid happy, she then later realized that Reid was carrying her and was totally shocked. When Elria shared that she was going to push herself more, Reid agreed, but insisted that Elria do it in moderation. Wondering if Reid would not ask for the reason, Reid knew that Elria was not hiding something from him and doing something dangerous. Reid then reassured Elria that as long as he was beside her, she could relax and do whatever she wanted. The students will be evaluated from real combat to reacting to various situations during the conditional examination. The examination will be held in a huge forest area within the academy, a special location where everyone from the 8 classes would gather. Alma warned the students that the forest behind the fence was a dangerous area inhabited by monsters. After informing the students about the dangers of the monsters, Alma announced that in today's exam they are going to enter at least rank E. After informing the students about the types of monsters they might face in the forest, Alma reassured them that medium-sized monsters had already been dealt with by their teachers beforehand. Alma explicitly told the students that even though the medium-sized monsters had been dealt with, the forest was still a dangerous area where carelessness and pride could not just injure them, but also take their lives. After reminding everyone, an old man explained the contents of the conditional exam to the students. The students were given a scenario and tasked to rescue people who had wandered into the dangerous area by mistake. Since dummies were placed inside the dangerous areas, the old man pointed out that the more dummies the students could rescue, the higher their score would be. When a student asked if they should act independently since they were being evaluated individually, Alma did not answer the student, but instead gave the students the most important thing in the exam, which was to guarantee the rescue. When the explanation was finished, Alma told the students that they could discuss among themselves since they still had 30 minutes. As Reid wanted to discuss what they would do, Weasel suggested that they split up since he and Millis would just be a burden to them. But Reid clarified to Weasel and Millis that Elria aside, he needed both of their help. Reid then gave everyone a situation where the human could not move, to which Weasel and Millis gave theories from an injury to a traumatic experience that rendered the human unable to move. Reid also pointed out that since he could not use magic, he could not tend to the dummies and could not accomplish the exam. Millis finally realized that if the dummies were magic tools, there was a chance that they could not be moved unless they were healed. Reid shared his plans with everyone, where he would beat the monsters, Weasel would carry a bunch of them using his magic tool, and Millis would be in charge of figuring out the mechanism. Millis was worried at first that Elria might have to do the examination alone, but was surprised to learn that Principal Elise specifically instructed Melia to do the quest alone. Millis then finally realized why Elria was instructed to do the exam alone, so that she could be evaluated accurately. Farag called their attention as he mentioned that Reid and the others do not understand anything. Farag then shared his opinion that the exam would have more than just rescuing, and that there was another goal. Farag then mentioned that subjugating large monsters would get them an even higher reward. However, Reid and Millis immediately did not buy into Farag's idea. Farag's idea gave Weasel worry since they were not informed how the teachers would know if they had failed or not. Farag then boasted to everyone that he has the power to take on a large monster while showing his magic tool. When Reid saw the magic tool, he unintentionally insulted it by calling it really short. Farag shared that the magic tool that Reid broke was somehow miraculously repaired by the Verminen's engineer. Before leaving, Farag vowed to make Reid cry. Reid was impressed by Farag's courage even after he was embarrassed in front of everyone. Before they start the examination, Elria patted Reid's head and asked him to be careful. Walking inside the forest, Reid's group was suddenly attacked by a huge monster. However, it was just easily defeated by Reid's kick. After assessing the monster, Reid was surprised that the monster was weak despite its huge size. Weasel shared that the smell of blood could also lure other monsters and make escaping harder, so avoiding blood on their clothes would be wise. Millis could not help but worry for Elria since she was all alone, but Reid reassured her that Elria would be just fine and could defeat anything with just a tier 1 spell. Millis could not believe Reid's words when he mentioned that Elria could beat an average person with just martial arts alone. When Weasel thought Reid's movements were interesting, this sparked an energy within Reid, and he offered to show him a little. While Reid was explaining to everyone, Weasel interrupted him and told him that there was a cave up ahead. When Weasel reassured them that there were no monsters inside the cave, Reid was relieved as he already assumed that there was a dummy inside it. Millis was curious about how Reid knew that there would be a dummy inside the cave. Reid gave Millis a scenario, pointing out that the safe place for a dummy would be inside the cave. After seeing the cave up close, Reid suggested that he would take the lead while Weasel watched their surroundings, and Millis acted as their support. When Reid raised their lamp, he immediately told everyone that he had found 5 dummies. As Weasel sensed multiple mana circuits, he guessed that they would dispel if there were 2 people or more. When Millis tried activating a spell on one of the dummies, she was surprised when it suddenly moved. Millis shouting worried Reid. However, he was reassured by Weasel that she was just startled by the dummy's mechanism. After seeing a timer ticking down on the dummy's leg, Weasel theorized that the dummy most likely received a fatal injury, and the timer was the time limit to heal it. When Millis tried to heal the dummy but ended up being startled by the dummy's beeping sound, Weasel had to hit her head since she was much louder than the dummy. Reid shared an idea that the order of emergency treatment matters, and he suggested to Weasel to check the wounds. After assessing the dummy's wounds, Reid asked Millis to calm down as she started panicking again, and told her that he would give her instructions soon. While fighting off against a pack of monsters, Reid was also giving Weasel and Millis instructions on how to tend and take care of the wounds. After following Reid's instructions, Weasel and Millis were so relieved after solving the dummy's mechanism. As Reid complimented the two, Weasel could not help but ask Reid if he had seen people on the brink of death since the instructions he gave were so precise. Reid responded that he saw people who were on the brink of death, as well as those who could not be saved. Reid still thanked Weasel and Millis for performing emergency treatments even though it was just a dummy. Reid was startled when Millis suddenly shouted. When Millis mentioned that someone was coming, Reid was able to recognize them as Farrig and his 2 henchmen. Weasel then asked Reid to call the 3 over as they had received heavy injuries and that something was moving in the forest. After calling Farrig's attention, Reid then asked him to follow them inside the cave. When Reid asked if they were attacked by monsters, Farrig could not answer properly as he was shivering in fear. When Weasel sensed that the situation was bad, Reid momentarily froze and immediately ran outside. Before going out, Reid tasked Weasel and Millis to take those who were injured and carry them deep into the cave. Farrig, who once again saw the monster that attacked them, shrieked and froze in fear. Fortunately for Farrig, Reid was fast enough and dragged him deep into the cave to safety. When Reid asked Farrig if they picked a fight with the huge monster, Farrig clarified that they did not start a fight, but rather he froze after seeing the monster, and was only protected by Valk and Lucas. As Farrig cried and apologized for the two, Reid consoled and praised him for not abandoning his friends while running desperately. Before leaving, Reid instructed Weasel to cast a barrier after he exited. Farrig argued that Reid won't be able to take on the monster, but Reid reassured him that he already knew the monster was immune to magic. Reid promised that he wouldn't die, and that he was just going to win like the hero he once was. 1,000 years ago, the mages of the Vegalta country accused the Altine Empire of sending huge monsters into their territory. While the soldiers of the Altine Empire were fleeing, Reid was the only one walking towards the monsters. Despite being warned, Reid continued to face the monsters head-on. Calling the monster's attention, Reid asked if it could handle his sword. In the current time, the monster was bashing its head on the cave entrance as it tried to get in. Farrig was surprised when Reid informed them of the name of the monster and its purpose. Although Reid was familiar with the armored dragon, Farrig insisted that they stay hidden until the Academy sends out help. Reid shared his opinion that Elria could handle the armored dragon herself, but it still depended on whether she would come. However, they didn't have much time to wait. After confirming that Weasel still had a magic tool that could create barriers, Reid asked Millis to keep healing those who were injured. Agreeing with Reid's instructions, Millis only asked him to send the armored dragon flying. Emerging from the dark cave, Reid leaped towards the armored dragon and landed a hard punch. Reid's attack was strong enough to make the armored dragon lie on the ground. Since Reid used a sword when facing the creature in the past, he did not realize how hard the dragon's armor was. But he still was not fazed since compared to Elria, the armored dragon was weak. After hitting an uppercut, the armored dragon's whole body was lifted because of the force. Reid thought that he was able to break the dragon's head, but it looked like it wasn't that simple. When the armored dragon let out a roar, Reid was surprised by the sudden tremors. He then realized that the dragon was calling for more backup. Annoyed that he may have to fight the armored dragons barehanded, Reid wondered what he should do to ensure that the others could escape safely. Fortunately for Reid, Elria arrived just in time and easily took down one of the armored dragons. When the Academy could not send out help immediately, they released Elria's limiters to help those who were in need. Glad after seeing Elria, Reid asked her to help Millis and the others to be transported. After reaching out to Millis, Elria then transported everyone inside the cave to a much safer place. After reassuring Reid that everyone was now safe, Elria received a call and was surprised when Alma asked if she sent an entire cave to their location. After confirming the students' safety, Elria was relieved and told Alma that she was not going to blow away the armored dragons along the area with Reid, and asked Alma to protect the children. As the call ended, Elria then asked if they should go all out facing the dragons. Planning on punching the armored dragons until they all would be defeated, Elria gave an item that Reid could use to go all out. Elria reassured Reid that with her magic, she was sure that the sword she created could withstand anything. As Reid received the present that Elria was developing for a while, he could not contain his laughter as he accurately guessed Elria's action. Reid was beyond happy and could not describe how he was feeling. Reid was sure that Elria's magic that had always fought alongside him could withstand his mana. Elria then realized that for a long time that they have known each other, this was the first time that they were going to battle together. Finally, a united front after 1,000 years since Reid received a very good present from Elria, he plans to show her his serious power. Even though it has been a while since Reid hasn't used the move, he knows that his body would never forget. With one strong swing of his sword, Reid was able to blow away a huge part of the forest and made a huge hole in the ground. Seeing Reid's serious power, Elria could not help but be impressed. When the sword suddenly vanished, Elria apologized and told him that it was not a sword that he could always use. Reid did not mind, as he felt really good after going all out, but he expressed that he had way more fun fighting with Elria. As Alma surveyed the area where Reid and Elria were fighting the armored dragons, she immediately knew that Elise would faint after learning of the aftermath. After Alma gave the report, Elise bawled her eyes out as she could not believe what had happened. Alma then confronted the two. Even though Elria was given permission to use her full power, Reid was praised for how he wiped out the dragons. However, they were not given permission to alter the terrain. When the two expressed that they only got carried away as it became fun midway through the fight, Elise scolded Alma for agreeing with Reid and Elria. When Elise asked how they were able to blow away the exam area, Reid and Elria nonchalantly explained that using the sword Elria created, Reid blew everything away. While Elria vowed to make a sword that Reid could use more than once, Elise asked for sympathy as she would be the one that would report the situation to the higher-ups. Alma reported that she had not received any reports from the reinforcement Elise sent, but she did notice that a piece was broken off. Alma then gave the testimonies of those who had fought the armored dragon that their magic spells were reflected or nullified. The armored dragon also managed to cut Alma's magic damage in half. Because of the armored dragon, Alma's death brigade was slowed down and easily destroyed. After learning the capabilities of the armored dragon, Elise instructed Alma to call back the reinforcement as she would get a specialist to investigate the case. After learning that Farag also encountered the monster, Alma called him and asked what happened. Farag shared that they were just exploring the area when they encountered the monster. Valk and Lucas tried to cover for Farag and ended up being injured. After assessing what the monster looked like, Farag then erased his smell by walking on Holewalker grass, and to avoid heat detection, he burnt some trees. Alma praised Farag for his decision to stay inside the cave and wait for evacuation. Alma informed everyone that they should rest first and announced that they were going to disregard everyone's rating in this test. When Alma asked the students to keep quiet about the situation for now, Millis asked for the reason. Alma shared that all instructors from the school have observed the area but not one noticed the armored dragons. Weasel deduced that the monster just came out of nowhere. Alma then shared that they still need to consider everything and would have to do a thorough investigation into the matter. Hearing Alma's announcement, Reid theorized that a third party may be involved or that the perpetrator was inside the school. After reminding everyone not to spread the news, Alma asked everyone to go now except for Reid and Elria. After dragging both Reid and Elria away from the crowd, Alma asked Reid if she could talk about the matter with the presence of Elria. Reid then revealed that Elria had more knowledge of the armored dragons than he ever did. Upon learning of the monster's name, Reid asked Alma if it was the first time they had heard of the armored dragons. After sharing that she had never fought a monster that could affect one's magic, Alma pointed out how Farag did not know of such a being. Alma shared that the Verminen family gathers all sorts of information about all monsters in each area, and that they're the most knowledgeable about monsters in the country. Elria then shared what she knows about the armored dragons with Alma, as the armored dragons are monsters that eat mineral resources. and those minerals are then used to form the creature's shells. Elria explained that the monsters don't have strong enough shells to repel magic, but if they're strong enough, just like a millennium ago, there was a chance that someone was intentionally feeding them with high-quality magic ores. Alma shared that, according to history, there were monsters that could affect magic. However, none of them remained. Alma explained that those deemed a threat to magic were all hunted down thoroughly to extinction. This explained that the armored dragon should no longer exist. After having a word with Alma, Reid and Elria were then welcomed by Weasel and Millis at the resting area. After a careful assessment, Reid expressed that it was safe to share their identity with Weasel and Millis, to which Elria also agreed. While Reid and the others were enjoying their meal, they were suddenly interrupted when Farrig called them out and thanked them for saving Valk and Lucas. Farrig then immediately left after expressing his gratitude. A couple of days have passed, and Reid was once again annoyed at how Elria keeps going back to sleep. Reid then reminded Elria that Alicia would get mad and annul their engagement. When Elria wished for a hug, Reid offered a piggyback instead. Seeing that they no longer have the time, Reid opened his arms and hugged Elria. After informing Elria that her clothes were in the basket, she then tried it on. However, Elria was having a hard time matching the buttons of the blouse. Elria then asked Reid to do it and was amazed when Reid was able to button the blouse swiftly. When the two finally made it to class, they were immediately bombarded with praise by the other students. Curious as to how the students knew that it was them who defeated the armored dragons, the students revealed that Farrig shared the information with them. After informing the others that they can talk about it another time since the class was about to start, Reid immediately sat in his chair. When he woke Elria up, she was confused as to why he was so close. Reid then clarified that it was Elria who was the one seated close to him. Startled, Elria apologized and was embarrassed when Reid shared that being close to each other was not the first that had happened. When Reid explained what Elria usually does before arriving at school, she was so embarrassed and could not help but cry. Millis then reassured Elria that everything Reid said was not heard by Weasel since she covered his ears. After clarifying their status to Weasel, Reid and Elria smiled as they asked the two not to go straight home today as they want to share something with them. When Elria and Reid revealed their secret, they were surprised at how Weasel and Millis easily accepted the truth. Curious about why Reid and Elria were the ones more shocked, Millis shared that they could now rest, knowing the reason why Reid and Elria were so extraordinary. Weasel was more convinced that Reid and Elria's powers came from something more concrete, rather than not knowing where their absurd power came from. Reid shared that there was once a county called Altine, and they were always at war with Vigalta. Upon learning that the hero was on par with the sage, Millis was curious why the hero's information had not remained in history. Reid revealed that they have already done extensive research but still could not find anything related to the hero or Altine. He also shared his theory that the story wasn't just overwritten but as if it was erased. Though they were doing their best to search for answers, they were still short-handed. While Weasel expressed his way of helping the two by searching through the records of the Blanche family since they supply the royal family's magic equipment, Millis, on the other hand, asked what she could do since she was just the normal person of the group. Millis became excited upon learning that her hometown used to be one of Altine's lands. However, she was immediately disappointed upon learning that her hometown has been nothing more than countryside for over 1,000 years. Millis became more depressed when Elria tried to console her. However, Elria clarified that Millis's hometown may be similar to how elves lived in a secluded area, and there may be a high chance that information still remained through tradition. Weasel and Millis were happy to help, but it was also clear that they could only talk about the matter with trusted people. Millis immediately became nervous when Weasel pointed out that the people who tried altering history would target them as well. Though Reid was hesitant to tell them at first, he was sure that they were able to protect them from anything. After informing Weasel and Millis of the people that knew and how they were related, Weasel was instantly intrigued by the magic equipment from 1,000 years ago. After asking for their help, Weasel and Millis reassured the two that they would do their best to help out, since they could also gain some knowledge from the past. Alma then entered the room and informed Reid and Elria that they were being summoned by Elise. When Alma knocked on the principal's office door, she informed Elise that she had brought the two. All of a sudden, Elise bowed down in front of them as she apologized. Elise explained that even though Reid and Elria helped evacuate the students and the teachers, the royal family and the Mages Association still refused to give them honor. Elise became confused when Reid agreed with the royal family's decision. Reid explained that if the information such as defeating a special ranked monster in one hit would be known to the public, it would offset the destruction of the environment. After Reid accepted the higher-ups' decision, Elise was so grateful towards them. Elise informed Reid that the association still does not acknowledge Reid's power since it was still unknown, to which they decided to have Alma investigate it. When Elise revealed that the special rank mages decided to postpone Reid's test, she was surprised at how easily Reid accepted their decision. When Elria expressed her wish to fight a special rank mage, Elise immediately slammed her head as she could no longer take the stress. Reid and the others were pleased with the outcome, as they have a good reason to meet and exchange information. After transferring to a more secure room, Alma asked Reid about his current abilities but just ended up being disappointed with his straightforward answer. When Elria shared how Reid gained a unique magic power, she shared the theory that Reid's body got stronger as a side effect of the unique power he gained. After hearing Elria's theory, Alma was curious if Reid's powers surpassed the sage. Elria also shared with the two that Reid's powers may not be natural. When Elria reminded Reid of how he used to get sick in his past life, Alma shared a theory that Reid's body may have rejected the magic at first, but ended up being accustomed to his own magic power and eventually stabilizing. After sharing the possibility that someone from the distant future may have transfused an unknown power to Reid to save him, Reid had no complaints since it was thanks to the transfusion that he was alive. Alma suddenly froze as she remembered that she was tasked to give a letter to Reid from the royal family. At the Caldwin residence, Alice was infuriated when Reid informed her that he only had 2 hours before he went to the castle. After dressing Elria and Reid, the two then went to the royal castle. Arriving at the castle, the two never imagined that they would see the castle once again. As they were being greeted by the head butler Selvas, Reid apologized for Elria's behavior and explained that she was shy by nature. Selvas then reassured Elria that he was holding down the princess with his magic. However, they were surprised the princess showed up and personally greeted Elria. Reid was surprised when Christia, the first princess of the Vigalta kingdom, suddenly hugged Elria and told her that she had missed her. While Elria was pleading for Christia not to cling on to her, Selvas expressed his apologies for such a display. Selvas explained that Christia and Elria grew up together and are treating each other like sisters. When Reid tried introducing himself, Christia interrupted him and granted Reid permission to call her Chris. When Christia informed Reid that she only approved of half of him, Reid became curious about the reason. After explaining the reason why she approved of Reid, Christia still could not believe that someone who could not use magic became Elria's rival. When Reid asked if he was summoned to confirm his strength, Christia was surprised by Reid's reaction, as if he was already used to challenges. After hearing Reid's sweet talk, Christia was surprised as Reid exceeded her expectations. Christia then shared that she may consider acknowledging Reid if he could test his love for her. Christia then announced in the royal castle the first test, which would show who loves Elria the most. After expressing how Reid was taking Elria away from her, Christia still wanted to test if Reid does truly love Elria or not. After introducing the two competitors, Selvas revealed that the winner shall be determined as to who truly understands Elria the most. When Reid expressed how he would do his best, regardless of how he only knew Elria for such a long time, while Christia boasted about how she knew everything about Elria, from what she likes to what she does not like. When Elria spoke, Christia could not help herself but cry while being warned by Selvas that she would be penalized if she acted mannerless. When it was decided that Selvas would instead read the questions before Selvas could finish reading the question, Christia already pressed the button and answered the types of books Elria likes to read. When Elria confirmed that Christia's answer was correct, she immediately showed confidence to Reid as she did not need to hear the question to know the answer. After seeing Elria, who has high expectations of him, Reid felt pressured. When Christia answered again without finishing the question, Reid guessed that Christia was using magic. Elria called Selvas' attention as she decided to make up the next question. When Elria asked what specific meal she wanted to eat if she gets tired, Christia complained since the question was really specific. When Reid gave the answer, Elria confirmed that it was correct. Elria kept giving questions that only Reid knew, to which he ended up getting embarrassed answering private questions. When Selvas informed Elria that the next question would be the final one, Elria asked what she liked. When trying to answer first, Elria gave a sign that it was incorrect. When Reid asked if they could take a break while drinking water, Elria did not expect that Christia would worry about her. Christia then visited the two while they were resting as she did not expect to treat them so warmly. Christia then reminded how she needed the help of them both. It was then revealed that Christia knew of Reid's real identity as the hero, while Reid accurately deduced that the first princess was none other than Tiana, the sage's disciple. After assessing the situation, Reid could tell that Tiana did not reincarnate, to which Tiana confirmed and revealed that she only sent her consciousness from the past using her magic. Upon learning the truth, Elria suspected that it was Tiana that made her wear all the clothes when they were young. When Elria was about to lecture Tiana, she happily obliged. Elria pointed out that Tiana should not be happy being lectured. After their emotional reunion, Reid asked if there was something Tiana wanted to share with them since she already revealed herself. Confirming that she does want to tell them something, Tiana informs the two that Elria lost all her magic, which was the cause of her death. 1,000 years ago, an old Reid spoke to Liat, informing him that they would now head back as they had reached their daily quota. Liat expressed his concern to Reid, suggesting that Reid assign more guards besides him. However, Reid liked their current setup, thinking that having fewer guards was also better for the others. Out of nowhere, sharp objects almost hit Reid. After the surprise attack, Tiana showed up, intending to harm the hero, Reid. Unfortunately for Tiana, Reid's reactions were so sharp that he was able to dodge the surprise attack and even counter her by sweeping her leg, commenting on her lack of speed. Noticing Tiana casting a spell, Reid knelt down and evaded Tiana's attack once again. As Reid was commenting on how annoying Tiana's magic was, he was surprised to see Tiana suddenly being taken away. It was revealed that Elria took Tiana, ordering her to stop acting on her own. When Elria noticed that Tiana had run out of magic, she immediately shoved a recovery potion down her throat. Seeing the two mages scuffle, Reid laughed after learning that Tiana was already out of mana after a few attacks, and commented that it was still 100 years too early for her to try and take his head. Liat then mentioned that if it wasn't for Reid, dealing with time leap magic would be very hard. Reid responded that what he did was just prediction. If one knows how their enemy thinks, then knowing the next move would be easy. Reid told Liat that he could do the same. Although Liat somewhat agreed that he could make the same prediction as Reid, that didn't mean he could deal with it. Back at their base, Tiana asked Elria what she could do to stay in the time world longer. When entering time, the user alters their body using magic, which costs a lot of mana. Tiana shared her experience when entering time, commenting on how it felt like moving the current scene forward just a bit, and that she was moving her entire body so she could only see a couple of seconds into the future. Tiana then shared that she recently started to send only her consciousness ahead and got a couple of seconds more. However, it was still not enough to win against Reid, which frustrated her. Listening to Tiana, Elria believed that her concern was already in the realm of the soul or divine, which is beyond the realm of reason. Tiana stood up, telling Elria that there would be a chance if what she mentioned logically exists. Elria then told Tiana that it would be difficult for her since she is a human, but for an elf like her it was no problem. Shocked, Tiana was amazed by her capabilities. Elria was also amazed by Tiana, commenting that she could also praise others. When Elria noticed that they ran out of tea, Tiana immediately left the room to get some more. After meeting the helpers of the house, the maids asked Tiana to leave the chores to them. However, Tiana insisted on doing it on her own, as she wished to bring the tea to Elria herself. After entering the room, the tea fell and broke as Tiana immediately tended to the unconscious Elria. Tiana cried as she encountered the lifeless body of Elria. After Elria's death, Tiana desperately searched for her again. Tiana searched for a way to use time leap magic to go back in time. Relying on Elria's magic tool, Tiana entered the time. When Tiana realized that there was a hole in the time tunnel, she immediately went to the hole. Beyond the hole was inside the consciousness of Chris, 1,000 years into the future. Seeing a kid that resembled Elria 1,000 years in the future, Tiana couldn't help but hug her with tears in her eyes. To make the future she saw a reality, Tiana inherited the title of the Sage. After losing the hero Reid, the Altine army collapsed, and Tiana worked with their remnants. With the help of Liat and what was left of Reid's army, Tiana destroyed the Altine Empire completely. Chris then revealed that they were currently trying to make Elria's magic technique popular in the world. In order for Tiana to jump 1,000 years into the future, she needed to fulfill a lot of conditions, such as using Chris as a medium and managing the amount of magic left in Elria's magic tool. Chris also shared that she couldn't open the hole in the time tunnel. Because of the hole in time, someone reincarnated 1,000 years ago, and Chris assumed that someone also used time leap magic. Chris revealed that it was the reason why she could visit the time when both Reid and Elria were reincarnated. Although Chris could confirm it, she still couldn't identify who it was. Elria was thankful to Chris as she did all the work just for Elria. As Tiana, who was inside Chris's body, was about to head back, Elria praised Tiana for unifying the country, which was more amazing than the country 1,000 years ago. After hearing from Elria herself that she and Reid were now living happily, Chris smiled. Later that night, Chris was very happy as she could sleep over with Elria once again. When Elria mentioned how surprised she was when she learned that Chris was acquaintances with Tiana, puzzled, Chris never imagined Tiana as her great ancestor, and thought that she had another personality. After expressing that her connection with her ancestor was their love for Elria, Elria commented that Chris and Tiana were alike, and the only difference was just how Chris talked. Chris then revealed that how she talked was all part of her act. She then explained that if she acted like a princess that talked weirdly, no one would notice if she swapped with Tiana. Chris recently noticed that people started looking at her as a funny and pleasant princess, making her quite popular. Chris did not ask anything else besides what Tiana had told her, as she was afraid that it would change the way she acted towards Elria. Chris then promised Elria that no matter what happens, she would always be Elria's friend. Elria thanked Chris, after informing her that she would leave Elria to Reid. Chris wished to take a picture with Elria using the magic camera instead of receiving thanks from her. Elria then responded that she would not let Chris take a picture and that the photo would not show up. Back in the Vigalta Magic Academy, Millis shared how lonely it was when Reid and Elria were not around. When Weisel asked Millis what her plans were on her day off, Millis became excited and shared that she was going to the royal capital to play. When Weisel asked if she was going alone, Millis immediately became sad as she was supposed to go with Elria. Millis was surprised when Weisel offered to accompany her to the royal capital. After explaining that he would be searching for materials for his new magic tool, Millis thanked Weisel. After telling Weisel that he was a nice person for staying with her, Weisel suddenly turned his head around, which surprised Millis. When the two finally arrived at the royal capital, Millis was amazed at how many people there were and did not expect to see moving things. Weisel explained that the object that was moving was the standard method of transportation in the royal capital. After listening to Weisel, Millis did not expect him to know a lot of things. Standing in front of a tea store, a mysterious person saw Weisel and Millis and informed the driver of the carriage that he would return on foot and that they could return first. Millis found the store used by family nobles to be cute. Curious, Weisel asked Millis if her hobby was pouring tea, but Millis responded that it was not her hobby, but she planned to make it her new hobby. Picking up a tea box, Millis commented on how the tea would suit Elria, as it would help her stay awake. Weisel shared that he also drank the exact tea as he found it quite strong. When Millis guessed that Weisel worked with his eyes wide open after drinking the tea, Weisel realized that he should keep his tea drinking in moderation so that his eyes wouldn't worsen. Curious if Weisel's vision was bad, Weisel took off his glasses and put his face in front of Millis's face. He then told Millis that he needed to be so close in order to see her face clearly. Weisel then thought of trying to develop a magic tool that sticks straight onto his eyes. After Millis rushed to the counter to pay for the tea, the two then sat on a bench under a tree. While drinking their beverage, Millis was curious as to why Weisel learned martial arts from Reid. Weisel found Reid's martial arts interesting, as Reid protected Millis much faster than Farag could fire his magic and erase it. Weisel found Reid quite vexing and wished to be as strong as he could be, and also admired how cool Reid was. Millis's heart raced, believing that Weisel was talking about her. Out of nowhere, the mysterious person inside the carriage was revealed to be Farag Verminion. When Farag asked the two what they were talking about, Millis shared that Elria and Reid were not with them as they were called to the castle. Although Farag did not say anything about Reid and Elria being summoned, he was more interested in talking about training with Reid. When Millis told Farag that it was nothing worth talking about, as they were only taught some magic-related stuff, Farag asked the two if they knew the contents of the practical exam. Suspicious, Millis responded that they would have to make teams of 5. The next morning, Millis immediately called for Elria and was surprised that she was already awake even though it was still morning. Weisel himself was also surprised to see Elria walking without wobbling. Elria revealed that it was because of Reid's milk tea that she was wide awake. When Weisel asked the two why the royal family called for them, Reid responded that they were just invited to join a party in the castle and provide some progress on their circumstances as well. If someone really took Elria's, Reid believed that it must have been a far more advanced technique than one from the current age. In other words, Reid believed that the future was also concerned in their reincarnation. Weisel and Millis then shared some news with the two while they were away. Reid was puzzled when the two mentioned that they had already decided on the last person for their exam. Out of nowhere, Farag approached the group, which Reid did not expect. When Farag suggested that they start training since the comprehensive exam was coming up, Reid finally realized that their last member was Farag Verminion himself. Extending his hand, Farag asked Reid that they give their best for the team. During the last conditional exam, armored dragons appeared which were supposed to be extinct. However, it turned out that they still existed. Reid also learned from Alma that the armored dragons were deemed a threat to magic, and it was decided that their species and all their variants should be hunted to extinction. For the next conditional exam, Reid and the others are required to form a team of 5 and will battle against other humans. For their exam, the group headed to the practice grounds for a mock battle. Upon arriving at the practice grounds, Reid asked Elria if it was really necessary for her to hug him. Elria responded that it was, as it made meeting the requirements of the magic manageable. Seeing the two so close to one another, both Weisel and Millis were already used to it and were no longer surprised. When Farag commented on Reid's inability to use magic and his reliance on Elria for teleporting, Elria's attention was immediately directed to Farag. Sensing that he might have offended Elria, Farag immediately tried to come up with an excuse. A couple of hours before going to the training grounds, the group learned that Farag's 2 friends would not be able to recover in time for the exam, and that he had already asked everyone in the class to join him. However, everyone refused to let Farag join them. Millis tried intimidating Farag by informing him that Elria's training was difficult, but she felt challenged when Farag responded that the training would be easy for him. The two made a bet that if Farag complained midway through the training, he would be below a commoner, and Millis would call him a weak, sheltered boy. Seeing the two exchange words, both Elria and Weissel felt exhausted and worried about teaming up with Farag and Millis. On the side, Alma felt sad as she was not allowed to participate in the mock battle that the person she idolized was a part of. Alma's assistant, Filia Teresia, tried to console Alma, making her realize that her role to interject in case of an emergency was vital. When Alma suggested to Filia that she participate in the mock battle, Filia was surprised and explained that she was not used to combat-oriented magic. Dragging Filia away, Alma told her that although she was recommended as a teacher, she did not want a coward accompanying her. As the group was about to start, Millis suggested that they be assigned to their roles first. When Elria was told that she should train with more than just the standard training, it made Millis believe that there was a chance they wouldn't be on the same team again after the exam. Due to the result of Elria's previous exam, it was almost certain that she would pass. In order to improve her qualities as a special rank mage, Elria was ordered to teach the other students. When Reid suggested making Farag the leader, Farag acted high and mighty at first but did not expect that he would seriously become the leader. Holding authority over the group, Farag asked if everyone would have to obey his words. However, he was surprised when Reid told him that he wouldn't listen to him. Reid then explained to Farag that it was the leader's role to make decisions. Reid pointed out a good decision that Farag made when he chose to run away with the injured when they faced the armored dragon. Reid commended Farag's decision-making. After suggesting dividing the responsibilities of the group, Elria suggested that Millis attract the enemy's attention and defend herself with magic until the others completed their tasks. Hearing Elria's idea, Millis grabbed Farag's shoulder and congratulated him on becoming the leader. Elria was worried that the task might be difficult for Farag as he would be put on the front line. Elria theorized that the stronger the magic, the less experience people tend to have on the front lines. As Reid understood Elria's point, she also added that Farag was super weak in close-quarters combat. Seeing the two looking smug towards him, Farag felt enraged. After receiving permission from Elria to handle Farag, Reid asked Weissel if he could borrow a magic tool that he could break. Annoyed, Weissel pointed out to Reid that making a magic tool is very expensive and should not be easily broken. Realizing that he might have said the wrong words, Reid explained that he had no plans of breaking the magic tool. However, there might be a chance that it would break if he tried to put his magic into it. After asking for a magic tool that resembled a sword, Weissel offered prototypes that didn't make the cut. After a few swings, Reid asked Farag if he was now ready for their training. Confused, Farag asked what Reid could teach him if he couldn't use magic. Although Reid couldn't use the same magic, he made it clear that he could still show a similar battle strategy. To make their training more fun, Reid offered a bet to Farag. If he won, Reid would do anything Farag asked of him. After accepting the conditions, Reid informed Farag that he was free to use all of his magic. Giving a handicap to Farag, Reid mentioned that he would only attack after a minute had passed, and suggested that Farag attack as much as he wanted during that time. Seeing that Reid was very confident that he wouldn't lose, Farag cast huge fireballs and told Reid that if he won, Reid would no longer call him boy. Starting their training, Reid immediately charged towards Farag, which surprised him. Reid dodged all of Farag's huge fireballs easily. After praising the accuracy of Farag's magic, Reid commented that there were still gaps and suggested that Farag cover the gap using other magic. After taunting Farag, Reid dodged another spell and commended the spell's speed. However, since the trajectory was so linear, it could easily be dodged. Reid had already read through Farag's plan and blocked Farag's real target, which was Reid's blind spot. After being lectured about the element of his magic, Farag became frustrated and mad, believing that he was above average and did not want to be looked down upon. Casting the spell, Hagen no Enbei, a being formed by flames emerged. As flames were about to hit Reid, he announced that a minute had passed and deflected Farag's attack with his bare hand. Reid thought that if Farag knew about swordsmanship, he would be able to deal with it even without using himself. As Farag did not accept change, Reid believed that he would just waste his talent. After destroying Farag's spell with just one slash, Reid commended Farag's ideas and planned to train Farag so that he could change the way he thought for his own good. If it was Farag, Reid didn't mind teaching his swordsmanship. After seeing the huge fire, Elria believed that Reid was having fun. Weissel still couldn't believe that he would voluntarily train Farag. Elria believed that Reid wished to look after the most troublesome kids. Elria then shared another reason she believed Reid wanted to teach Farag. He had no one to teach him in the past. Reid was able to teach things like swordsmanship and tactics, everything other than combat. Because no one could fight using Reid's style, Elria thought that Reid believed in Farag and also wished to change his attitude. When Elria suggested that they now start their mock battle, both Millis and Weissel became worried, wondering why Elria liked mock battles so much. Elria believed that the lesson could be learned and would not be forgotten if a painful mark was left. As Millis protested Elria's ideology, saying it did not fit for a sage to say, Weisel nervously tasted blood in his mouth just by remembering. All of a sudden, Elria and the others were suddenly covered in shade and were asked where her classmates were. After Millis informed the girl riding a dragon that they were from the East Tower, the girl stepped down from the dragon and introduced herself as Rufus Rylus from Sirios Federation. Hearing that Rufus came from the Sirios Federation, Weisel remembered that the country was excellent with summoning magic and just learned that she was a student from the West Tower. When Rufus noticed Elria hiding, she became curious and asked for the reason. Millis explained that Elria had a habit of hiding whenever she saw someone she didn't know. Finding Elria's behavior similar to an animal, Rufus became excited and guessed Elria's identity. After Elria confirmed her identity to Rufus, Rufus became ecstatic and suddenly thanked Elria, which confused her. Elria believed that Rufus was an amazing person for forming a contract with the Guardian Dragons, making history by making a contract with all 4 kinds. Rufus happily shared where her dragons were and what they liked to do. After listening to Rufus, Elria felt like she would have a blast just watching the dragons. When Rufus shared how the dragon she was with was the one she liked the most, Elria asked if it was a flying steel dragon. Surprised, Rufus asked if she knew about them. After Elria responded that she didn't know the dragon's scientific name, Rufus immediately gave more information about the steel dragon species, also called Volansferum. After sharing how her dragon Lafika and she had been friends since they were little, Rufus asked Elria if she could use summoning magic. Elria responded that she could but was hesitant after looking at Weisel and Millis. The two then enthusiastically gave their permission for Elria to continue talking with Rufus, sharing that they were already learning a lot from listening to their conversation. Upon learning that she disrupted Elria and the others' mock battle, Rufus suggested that she participate in the mock battle with Elria instead. Wanting to see Elria's magic, Rufus planned to show Elria that Lafika and she would not lose to anyone. After Rufus proposed a mock battle between Elria and herself, Elria accepted the challenge, mentioning that she hadn't fought with a friend for a very long time. Using her magic, Elria summoned a beast named Sheffrey. After summoning a demon wolf, Rufus was impressed, as demon wolves are notorious for giving mages a hard time, ultimately making the mages give up trying to tame them. Elria shared that her demon wolf is quite clever, understanding that no matter what he does, Elria could never be defeated. Seeing their mock battle getting more interesting, Rufus rode on Lafika's back and flew up into the sky. Both Weisel and Millis were impressed by Lafika's speed, believing that Lafika had already taken the advantageous position in an instant. After Elria ordered Sheffrey to chase Lafika, Rufus was not bothered as she believed it was impossible for the demon wolf to catch up with Lafika's height. However, Rufus was surprised when Sheffrey was able to follow them up into the sky even without a foothold. Since demon wolves are sensitive to magic power, Rufus believed that Sheffrey was detecting Elria's magic power. The moment Elria created a foothold, Sheffrey jumped towards it immediately. In order to stop Sheffrey from following them, Rufus ordered Lafika to cover themselves with fire breath. After Elria ordered Sheffrey to wait, a huge explosion manifested which made Rufus believe that the footholds were made out of air pressure. When Elria finally gave the signal to Sheffrey to attack, Sheffrey sneaked behind and bit Lafika's tail, startling the dragon. As Lafika fell from the sky, Rufus tried to calm her dragon down. However, it was not enough as the two landed on the ground. While Rufus was tending to Lafika's care, Elria, on the other hand, called for Sheffrey and chained its mouth, making Weisel believe that Sheffrey was trying to bite Elria. After sharing that Sheffrey's food is magic power, Elria advised Rufus to undo Lafika's summon, as the dragon might not last long. However, Rufus became stubborn and wished to continue the fight, believing that Lafika still hadn't lost. Sensing the magic power coming from Rufus and Lafika, Sheffrey immediately positioned himself in front of Elria, protecting her from Lafika's fire breath. Angered by Rufus's actions, Elria told her that she would not forgive Rufus. Even though the summoned beings' bodies are made of magic and cannot die, excessive damage could still harm their souls. Elria then reminded Rufus that showing killing intent was not necessary, as it was just a mock battle. However, Rufus did not feel the same way, not caring anymore if it was a mock battle or not. All of a sudden, their mock battle was interrupted by Alma's assistant, Philia. It was then revealed that Reid had called Philia to their location to stop the mock battle. After witnessing the mock battle, Philia warned Rufus that if she continued the fight, there was a high chance that she could put Lafika in danger. Reid spoke up and told Rufus that if she wished to settle the score with Elria, she should pull back for now, as sacrificing her precious dragon for a single victory might not be worth it. Seeing Lafika, Rufus decided to undo her summon, and told Reid that she did not care about the value of a win and believed that victory is the only thing that gives us meaning. Rufus then left the place, leaving a hostile impression. Back at their dorms, Reid noticed that Elria was lost in her thoughts and asked what she was thinking about. Elria responded that she was thinking about Rufus. Reid mentioned that when he looked at Rufus, he felt kind of nostalgic. Seeing Elria curious, Reid explained that in Altine, sending kids out onto the battlefield was the norm. But that was just a facade to reduce the number of mouths to feed. In order to protect themselves, the kids desperately tried to achieve something. Reid then mentioned that Rufus had the same look as the kids back in Altine. Believing that only Rufus herself knows the real reason, Reid guessed that Rufus was probably attending the school shouldering a burden that had forced her to strengthen her resolve. Curious about what he was seeing, Reid asked Elria if the small dog-like creature on her lap was her summon. Elria responded that she was giving Sheffrey magic power as a reward for working hard. Since summoned monsters' bodies are made of magic, Elria was able to adjust Sheffrey's size and make him smaller. When Elria offered Reid to pet Sheffrey, Reid's face turned red, worried that Sheffrey might explode because of his magic power. Elria reassured Reid that it would be fine as Sheffrey had already materialized. As Reid touched Sheffrey's stomach, he commented on how it felt like touching a dog's stomach. Reid then shared how all animals ran away whenever he got close to them, which led him to decide never to touch an animal again. When Sheffrey suddenly bit Reid and spat out something, it gave Reid the impression that even monsters rejected him, and he could not see a future where animals came to him. Calling Reid's attention, Elria told him that it was fine if he could pet her, showing an animal's ears on her head. Reid could not hold in his laughter but already expected Elria's behavior. To make Reid happy, Elria told him that he could pet her until he was satisfied. A few days later, Weisel and Elria were training in hand-to-hand combat. After throwing Weisel to the ground, a hole suddenly emerged under Elria. However, Elria noticed the hole and was able to dodge the trap. Finding Millis's location, Elria pulled her out of the hole and threw her up into the sky. After Millis landed on Weisel, Elria then praised the two for their growth and suggested that they train again. Hearing a faint voice, Millis and Elria looked up at the sky. It was then revealed that the voice they heard came from Farrig, as he landed on top of Weisel. Reid then apologized to Elria, excusing that Farrig just flew their way. After Farrig mentioned that he was blown away, Elria was impressed that Farrig could still speak in his condition. In pain, Weisel asked Farrig to move. However, Farrig also couldn't move even if he wanted to. After Millis pushed Farrig off of Weisel, Farrig asked that she be gentler next time. Reid then shared how clever Farrig was for imitating his movements using magic. But Farrig would always run out of magic midway through. He then asked Elria if she had any advice for it. Managing one's magic power is something only the user can feel for himself. Elria doubted that she could give any advice to Farrig. Weisel then approached Farrig and asked to see his magic tool. After checking the magic tool, Weisel shared how some of the magic circuits were erased, but it was fixed to match its original state. However, because of the magic tool's current setup, Farrig will have to use more magic power than usual if he tries to use magic that is not prepared. When Farrig asked if he needed to repair his magic tool again, he shared how his father was furious when he repaired his magic tool and couldn't imagine what his father would say if he asked for his magic tool to be repaired again. When Weisel offered to tinker with his magic tool, as he was acquainted with the workshop, Farrig grabbed Weisel's hand and accepted any suggestion as long as he did not anger his father. Hearing the two's conversation, Millis was able to confirm that Weisel and Farrig would not be able to continue with the training in order to repair the magic tool. When Millis mentioned to Reid and Elria that they wouldn't have anyone to train with, the two then pointed out that they still had Millis to train. Covering her ears, Millis tried to ignore Reid and Elria. Millis then announced that on their next day off, everyone would head to Weisel's house together. A voice was heard over the speaker, thanking everyone for riding to Vegalta Center Station. In the midst of a sea of people, Millis ran toward the street, exhilarated that she had once again visited the promised big city, Vegalta. Millis then noticed that the others were already leaving her, and she immediately followed after them. Farrig reminded Millis that they were going to the business district, and if she wished to sightsee, she would have to go her own way. Seeing that Farrig did not understand why she felt so excited, Millis explained that someone like her, who had only experienced life in the countryside, was excited to see even a small workshop. After some time, the group finally arrived at Weisel's parents' workshop. Millis had a different opinion of the workshop, as she believed that the place was too small for a renowned magic tool engineer. Weisel explained that they used most of their profits for developing magic tools and buying materials, and that the appearance was more of an afterthought. After entering the workshop, Weisel shared that he had reserved the place for the day and guided everyone inside. Reid was amazed to see tons of tools inside. Weisel explained that they used all the tools as references to calculate the magic circuits, then made the shape and chose the materials after comparing the magic. After finishing the design, Weisel and his family determined the magic circuit and finally asked a craftsman to engrave it. When Weisel asked for Farrig's magic tool, Farrig became worried and asked Weisel if what they were about to do was safe. Putting his family name on the line, Weisel reassured Farrig that he would show his skills and fix his magic tool. Using construction output, Weisel confirmed his theory. Farig's magic tool had a lot of magic formulas that Farig often used. The setup of the magic tool was made so that other magic would be repelled. After confirming with Farig that the 5 magics inscribed in the tool were what Farig mostly used, Weisel informed Farig that the shape of the magic tool would remain unchanged. However, they would have to touch up the converter and stabilizer. Reid praised Elria for using the converters and stabilizers they took from Altine and reusing them. Elria shared that she only picked up scraps from the battlefield, recreated and analyzed them. Using the scraps instead of electricity, Reid shared how he was still puzzled as to how the tool worked, but expected that the sage, Elria, could come up with such a solution. Weisel then shared a concern with Farig, stating that fixing his magic tool might be more troublesome than he thought. The problem with Farig's magic tool was the magic circuits engraved. Since everyone else used different systems, creating a perfect engraving would be hard. What Weisel meant was that if they tried to make changes in Farig's magic tool, it would affect its efficiency and lower its performance. Farig suggested to Weisel that he should just hand the tool over to a craftsman. Weisel agreed with Farig's idea. However, it would also increase the chance of Farig's father finding out that his magic tool was broken once again. Running out of options, Weisel asked Elria for advice, as she was someone who could use 6 different magic systems. When Elria responded that she had never engraved a magic circuit before, Farig fell to his knees, feeling defeated. Millis then approached Farig, informing him that she had experience in engraving magic circuits. Seeing Farig's surprised look, Millis explained that they repaired their own broken magic farming tools since it took too long to call someone in the countryside. Testing Millis's skills, Weisel asked her to try copying the magic equipment's engraving onto a plate. After informing Millis that the engraving must be accurate, he was surprised when Millis handed the plate so quickly and even engraved its magic circuit flawlessly. Believing that her time had finally come, Millis stood atop a crate and asked Weisel if he wished for her to engrave the magic circuit on his magic tool. When Weisel asked what Millis wanted in return, Millis guessed that Farig would not listen to others and suggested that he owed her one. Even though Farig was frightened by the deal, Weisel advised Farig to take it, as he believed that Millis would be a great help to him. Seeing Millis's handiwork, Weisel was confused as to why Millis attended a magic school when she had talent for craftsmanship. Millis enthusiastically explained that she chose to attend a magic school because she thought being a mage would be cooler. Hearing Millis's answer gave Farig more confidence in refusing her offer to engrave his magic tool. However, Weisel reassured him that he would make Farig the best magic equipment and advised him to just turn a blind eye for now and let Millis do her work. Farig had no other options but to trust Weisel and Millis. Minding their own business, Reid was approached by Millis, informing him that they would be working for a while and suggested that Reid and Elria go on a date. Agreeing with the idea of a shopping date, Elria and Reid left the workshop and looked for interesting shops. Elria couldn't contain her emotions and was visibly turning red. When the two concluded that they didn't know what they wanted to purchase, Elria became sad and asked Reid what they should do. Reid then remembered his little sister's advice, which was that looking at things could also be fun. Elria did not expect to hear from Reid that he had a sister. Reid then shared that he also had a brother. However, he was unlike his siblings, as they had high magic aptitude. Since the two would not be buying anything, Reid suggested that they just walk around and get some refreshments for Weisel and the others. During their walk, Elria noticed a couple holding hands. This made Elria wish to hold Reid's hand as well. Overcoming her embarrassment, Elria told Reid loudly that they should hold hands. Surprised by Elria's sudden behavior, Reid complied with her request. Unable to take the pressure, Elria let go of Reid's hand, comparing what she had experienced to a high-level battle. Reid then thought of an idea and suggested to Elria that she summon her monster and take him out for a walk. Elria agreed, and the two had a pleasant conversation while walking with Sheffrey. In their conversation, Reid advised Elria not to push herself and suggested that they go back to their usual selves to remove the tension and be more relaxed. The women they passed admired the two and thought that Reid was a gentleman. Sitting on a bench while looking at the sun setting, Elria shared how it had been a while since she walked around the capital so casually. As Reid believed that he had gotten a bit closer to Sheffrey, Elria suggested that Reid take Sheffrey out for walks sometimes. Without hesitation, Reid accepted the offer and did not care if he had to walk Sheffrey in the morning or at night. Elria then noticed a familiar face sitting by the fountain. It was revealed to be Rufus meeting with her mother. Curious as to why her mother suddenly called for her, Rufus was about to suggest that they try different foods in the capital when all of a sudden her mother slapped her in the face. Rufus's mother had learned that Rufus hadn't used her guardian dragons in the academy. Rufus's movements in the academy and her achievements were being reported, which surprised her mother to learn that Rufus had lost to the reincarnation of the sage a few days ago. Rufus tried to explain that her fight with Elria was a draw. However, Rufus's mother knew the details of the fight and asked her if she believed the fight was a draw after launching a sneak attack. Unable to give a proper explanation, Rufus's mother thought that she should have dealt with the flying steel dragon before Rufus entered the academy. Rufus's mother thought that Lafika was needed so that Rufus could maintain her mental stability, but now she believed she was wrong after learning that Rufus was not using the guardian dragon. Intending to teach Rufus a lesson for choosing to only summon Lafika, Rufus reminded her mother of the promise she made that Rufus could be with Lafika if they kept on winning and becoming a mage. However, Rufus was then reminded that her duty was to display Sirius's dignity and that there was no value for losers. With tears rolling down her face, Rufus promised her mother that she would not lose again and would definitely win the exam. Unbeknownst to Rufus, Elria had approached them, informing Rufus's mother that she was wrong. Elria then introduced herself as the reincarnation of the sage who had defeated Rufus before. After introducing herself, Elria mentioned how using a monster that Rufus was unfamiliar with could cause trouble in a mock battle, which justified Rufus's decision to use Lafika. Elria also stated that Rufus was the victor in their mock battle. Rufus's mother asked Elria if she pitied her daughter, to which Elria responded that she did not, and explained that she had already assumed the outcome of the match, which was why she stopped attacking. Admitting to herself that she had grown conceited, Elria made it clear that if her fight with Rufus had been real, Rufus would have won. Rufus's mother mentioned that their fight was not a real battle. Elria clarified that, for her, when engaging in a mock battle, one must treat it as if it were real, something she admittedly failed to do. Raising his hand, Reid introduced himself as Elria's fiancé and a person who knows the Caldwins. He first apologized for Elria's behavior in barging into other people's conversations. Apologizing once again for his rudeness, Reid advised everyone to switch places to avoid misunderstandings, as they were currently in a public area. Appreciating Reid's advice, Rufus was told by her mother that she had said all she needed to. Regarding Rufus's future, her mother would decide after seeing the results of Rufus's conditional exam and taking everything into account. As Rufus's mother and her guards left, Reid hit Elria on the head, lecturing her not to rush out. Reid reminded Elria that Rufus's mother was a noble from another country, and if Elria caused trouble, Alicia would kill her. Realizing her mistake, Elria apologized. Since Reid was used to dealing with such affairs, he told Elria to leave it to him. Elria noticed that Rufus was leaving without informing them and called out her name, asking her to wait. Rufus apologized for causing them trouble and clarified that it was their problem, so they did not need to worry about her, as she did not plan on losing the next exam. Before Elria could respond, Rufus had already run away, leaving Elria feeling a little sad. Reid told Elria that they should head back for the time being. Later that night, the others shared how they had finished preparing for Farrag's magic tool and enjoyed the capital. Millis couldn't hold herself back, thinking that the food she had eaten that day was much better than usual. Wearing an exhausted expression, Farrag commented that he had done something he could no longer take back. Curious about what had happened, Reid asked Weissel about it. Weissel explained that Millis had asked for a reference regarding how much Farrag owed her, and Weissel estimated the engraving costs at 5 million. Shocked, Reid asked Weissel if he was serious. Weissel was indeed serious and revealed that the amount had already been reduced since Millis wasn't a craftsman. Excited, Weissel thanked Millis for helping him discover his talent. As a magic tool engineer, Weissel had no regrets, believing that what he had done was his best work so far. Seeing Elria lost in thought, Millis tried to get her attention. Reid then asked Millis to leave Elria alone for now. But before Reid could finish his words, Elria suddenly stood up after seeing Rufus from a distance. When Elria mentioned she would get seconds, Reid was puzzled since Elria had just eaten a lot at the food stalls. Seeing where Elria was headed, Reid told the others that he too would get more food. While eating, Rufus was surprised when Elria suddenly approached her, asking if she could sit with her. Reid then snuck up behind Elria, telling Rufus that Elria wanted to speak with her. Surprised, Elria commented that she had hoped her approach would look like a coincidence. In the end, Rufus agreed for them to sit and eat with her. Rufus could only use summoning magic, which saddened her as there was no one in her class to talk about magic with. However, Elria's presence made Rufus happy. Rufus apologized to Elria for making her demon wolf go through a lot of pain. Elria reassured Rufus that Sheffrey was not mad. As the two young ladies praised their summons, Elria told Rufus that she wouldn't lose next time. Elria shared that in the next conditional exam, she would be restricted to using only Tier 3 magic. Though Elria was confident that she could still win despite the restrictions, she intended to do her best. Elria also shared that she had a goal to achieve, although it wasn't as serious as Rufus's situation, it was still a promise she intended to keep. Rufus praised Elria for being strong, as she herself could only make contracts with guardian dragons. Elria had been told by a person named Teach that she could definitely make a contract with the guardian dragons. Teach, who did research on guardian dragons, had even found time to teach Rufus things she didn't know. Rufus believed Teach's words and after trying to talk to the guardian dragons was accepted by them. However, the guardian dragons were prideful, and if Rufus did not supply them with enough magic power, they would get mad, act violently, and do whatever they wanted. Lafika didn't request a specific amount of magic power, which was why Rufus's mother told her she was spoiled. Rufus had high expectations placed on her, yet her mother still lowered her head for her sake. Rufus was fully aware of this, which left her unsure of what to do next. Elria stood up and told Rufus to fight her with everything she had. Elria reassured Rufus that she would feel refreshed if she fought with all her might. Rufus was still confused after listening to Elria, so Reid explained that the process was more important than the result, regardless of whether Rufus won or lost. Though Reid believed the best outcome for Rufus was to use all her strength and win, he added that if Rufus lost, there was nothing more she could do. Even if Rufus managed to use a guardian dragon and still lost, Reid asked if her other dragons would win. Advising Rufus to run away and have others handle it, Reid argued that pushing expectations onto Rufus and forcing her to take responsibility was more irresponsible. Reid reassured the crying Rufus that if something happened, he would do something about it. Reid then shared how he had thought of punching someone during the entrance exam, causing a scene. As Reid reassured Rufus that they would help her, Elria clarified that she only wished to fight Rufus and go all out, leaving everything else to Reid. Rufus understood the two's intentions and decided to use everything in her fight with Elria. Before they split up, Elria told Rufus that she looked forward to their fight. Elria had decided to fight Rufus with everything she had, but she also sensed that something was off. For starters, she found Rufus's contract with a guardian dragon suspicious. Curious, Reid asked what she meant. Elria explained that summoning magic involved using mana to create a vessel and then placing the soul of the contract monster inside it. If the guardian dragon's magic power was insufficient, regardless of their knowledge, they would still maintain their contract with Rufus. Elria gave Reid an example and explained that it was the same with monsters. While confident that nothing like this would happen to Lafika due to their bond, both Reid and Elria still found it odd that the 4 guardian dragons continued to uphold their contracts. What intrigued Elria even more was the person Rufus referred to as Teach. Remembering Teach's words to Rufus, Elria thought that Teach might know the future. Believing they might uncover hidden truths, Elria trusted Reid to take care of it. Elria then pleaded with Reid to carry her, as she had eaten too much. Later that night, Rufus pulled out a mechanical device and called Teach, wanting to speak with him since she had something to ask. Hearing Rufus's energetic voice, Teach thought something good had happened. After hearing that her mother had scolded her for losing in a mock battle, Teach remarked that the news was too heavy for him. Since Rufus had used the magic tool, Teach assumed she had something urgent to discuss. When Rufus asked how to handle a guardian dragon, Teach inquired if she wanted to tame the dragon in its prime state. After explaining that she would be fighting Elria and needed the guardian dragon's power, Teach told Rufus that winning against Elria was impossible. To help Rufus understand who she was up against, Teach compared Elria to the guardian dragons considered the peak of monsters. Elria surpassed all others, and it wasn't an exaggeration to say she was the peak of everything. When Rufus asked if she truly had no chance of winning, Teach told her not to cry as he was weak to such things. However, he believed that Rufus could still make victory possible by using all 4 guardian dragons. Shocked, Rufus said she lacked enough magic and feared making the dragons angry. Teach reminded Rufus that in the future, she would be able to fully control the guardian dragons, which was why they had made a contract with her. Teach planned to take that future and borrow its power. On the day of the conditional exam, Reid was greeted by Alma inside the tent. Alma explained that she was in charge of emergencies and was not slacking off, as Reid had commented. Wasting no time, Reid asked Alma to show him the footage. Reid was amazed knowing that Alma could see from the perspective of every student taking the exam. Agreeing with Reid's comment, Alma explained how Elise had created everything, proving she was a genius at magic and magic tools. Before becoming a principal, Elise had raised the standard of engineering for nearly a decade. Alma then shifted her attention to the team she deemed problematic. Reid soon learned that the team Alma referred to was Elria's. After learning about changes made to the exam content right before it began, Alma suspected that some higher-ups wanted to see Reid and his friends fail. Believing that Alma was referring to Farag, Reid explained that Farag couldn't help it as he couldn't use magic tools in the exam. However, Reid was confident in his representative, as he had ensured Farag trained with everything he had as the hero's first disciple. For the conditional exam, a battle royale will be participated in by 8 classes, and defeating an opponent will increase their class's points. If the other party defeats someone with a golden bracelet, they will earn many points. Millis is overwhelmed as she believes they will lose once she is taken out. Although Millis's mental state is pretty bad, Elria still considers her the best suited out of all of them. Millis commented that the other 3 were far more suited to wearing the golden bracelet, but Elria pointed out that the exam is all about surviving until the time limit, which Millis is best suited for. Farag shares that the best strategy is to hide whoever is wearing the golden bracelet. Hearing Farag, Millis becomes happy, thinking that she does not need to fight. However, Elria had a different thought. Elria wishes to have total domination over the exam and annihilate everyone. Elria's team is currently at a disadvantage since they have one less member. If the other classes were to beat Elria and Farag, they would have a high chance of losing. Weissel agrees with Elria, as he could see the remaining members forming an alliance and engaging with them. After Weissel scans for enemies, the decision to engage or not will fall to Farag. As the first son of the Verminion family, Farag reassures the others that they will win and will not let anyone say otherwise. Weissel then informs everyone that he has already detected a few magic power readings, stating that 10 individuals are moving in sync towards their location. When asked what their next move will be, Farag stated that such a question was unnecessary, as he had decided to eliminate everyone right away. Drawing his burning sword, Farag tells his teammates to just do it as planned. With his new magic tool, Farag was able to release an explosive power, launching him toward the incoming enemies. Due to Farag's flashy move, the other classes were able to locate him and immediately prepared for battle. Although multiple magic circles were being cast in front of him, Farag remained unfazed and destroyed the magic circles with one slash of his upgraded magic tool. Unable to detect Farag's presence, the other classes believed that Farag couldn't completely deal with the magic circles and teleported. The member detecting the enemies was shocked when he finally detected Farag, who was now on top of them. Before they could prepare themselves, Farag had already landed an attack in the middle of their group. Realizing that they were facing Farag, the remaining members immediately focused their attention on him. While ordering their mage to subdue Farag with ice, they did not expect him to move in closer, believing that he was a long-range type of mage. After Farag subdued the two students, Weissel informed Farag that the other students were moving just as they had planned. Not wanting to waste any unnecessary magic power, Farag asks Weissel if they can immediately begin the operation. Following Farag's request, Weissel requested Millis to create a wall at the location of their enemies. Seeing their enemies, Millis then created a wall, surprising and confusing the students. Upon learning that a single enemy was headed for their location, the other students suggested they beat the guy first, as they believed it would be much faster than destroying the wall. Before the student could throw his weapon, Weissel cast the spell called Sever, stopping the student's spell activation. Seeing Weissel coming, a student told the others that it was Weissel who interrupted the spell, though he did not know how he did it. After spending the last few days getting blown away by Millis, Weissel hoped the other classes could help him blow off some steam. After attacking one of the students, the others were wary of Weissel and advised that they be careful, believing that Weissel aimed for some quick hits. After using the smoke to hide, the other students became enraged when they saw Weissel fleeing. Weissel shared that his role at the beginning was just to stall them, and the reason why he attacked them was to test out his magic tool. Distracted by Weissel's words, the other students did not notice that the wall had crumbled, toppling over them. Returning to their hideout, Weissel praised Millis as their plan went better than expected. Elria was a little annoyed with Weissel as his magic tool did too much. Weissel was very impressed with his new magic tool, as he did not expect it to be so effective. While surveying from the top of a cliff, Millis was caught off guard and fell after being attacked by a monster. Before the monster could eat Millis, Farag arrived just in time to catch her. Thanking Farag, Millis was curious about what attacked her. Farag revealed that the monster was called a moray eel. Facing the monster and its summoner, Elria praised the other class for attacking Millis while she was away, but then informed them that revealing themselves was a bad move. Watching from the base, Alma was shocked as she believed the fight was no longer at a student level. Reid expected no less from Elria and the others, as he trained them. Staring at Reid, Alma brought up the topic of Elria fighting the Dragon Princess Rufus. Reid confirmed the rumor and shared how Elria felt something was off about Rufus's pact with the dragons. If something was going on, Alma believed it would become obvious once Rufus used the Guardian Dragons. When Reid was asked if he knew about the Guardian Dragons, he responded that he had never heard of them, even in Altan, but only knew that they were strong monsters. Alma told Reid that records showed that 200 years ago, a subjugation team was formed. 150 people, including 5 special-ranked mages, were annihilated by a single guardian dragon. Alma was unsure if Rufus had magic power equal to or greater than 5 special-ranked mages. If Rufus could truly summon the guardian dragons, Elria's chance of winning would be 0 if she followed her restriction of using only Tier 3 magic. Meanwhile, Farag and Millis celebrated, as they were able to defeat the other classes. Weissel, on the other hand, could not believe how energetic the two still were after facing the other classes. Elria believed the remaining teams must have understood the meaning behind the test and probably secured a safe place. Since Elria's class already had an advantage, she believed that avoiding any unreasonable fights was the best option for the time being. Agreeing with Elria, Farag was about to say something when Elria ordered him to find a safe place to hide until the time was over. Curious, Farag asked Elria what she planned to do. Elria told Farag about the promise she made with Rufus and planned to wait for her. Farag asked Elria if she had lost her mind, telling her that the guardian dragons were not just strong, they were equal to Tier 10 magic. Elria was impressed that Farag knew so much. Despite Farag's warning, Elria stuck with her decision, as she had promised Rufus to fight her seriously. Since Elria can't speak as well as Reid, she does not know what to say to Rufus, who is troubled. After fighting many battles and finding many important things, Elria believes that Rufus just has to fight with all her strength to find what she longs for. Seeing that Elria could no longer be convinced, Farag agreed to follow her order. After Farag and the others left, Rufus arrived and apologized to Elria for being late. As Rufus expected, she couldn't choose between her bond with Lafika, her mother, and her country's expectations. Not wanting to disappoint the contract she made with the guardian dragons, Rufus decided to choose them all. Seeing the guardian dragons behind Rufus, Elria was amazed and planned to show Rufus how serious she was as well. Elria is amazed after witnessing a portion of Rufus's full power. After being summoned, one of the guardian dragons launched an attack on Elria. Although the attack did not hit Elria, she was still alarmed as she could still feel the heat of the attack even with her layered defense magic. Elria also felt that deploying multiple Tier 3 spells would not guarantee her victory against Rufus. Elria thought that there was only one way for her to win, at which point she summoned Sheffrey's kids. Not expecting Elria to summon more demon wolves, Rufus was not intimidated, as she believed that Elria would not be able to counter the guardian dragon's magic. To avoid the onslaught from the guardian dragons, Elria rode one of the wolves, hastily dodging the attacks. When Elria gave the signal, the demon wolves then started charging toward Rufus, jumping on the pillars. Rufus could not believe that Elria was using the pillars to stop the water's momentum, while also avoiding the electricity at the same time. Using the power of the Earth Guardian Dragon, one of the wolves was struck after trying to protect Elria. Watching the fight, Alma asked Reid if he could also tell how Elria was at a disadvantage. Reid then responded by ordering Alma to be quiet since Elria was getting serious. When another Guardian Dragon launched a lightning attack, one of the demon wolves took on the attack, saving Elria. Rufus was starting to get confused, as she could only see Elria running around, making her wonder if Elria was heading somewhere. Blocking Elria's way with ice, another demon wolf rammed into the ice, breaking it and creating an opening for Elria to escape. Observing Elria, Rufus noticed that she was chanting. In the past, Rufus had been informed by Teach that the magic they were using now was something that the sage had created 1,000 years ago. For people in ancient times, they would pray for miracles. The origin of all magic is the variety of techniques offered through prayers. As Elria was still continuing with her chanting, another guardian dragon was preparing to launch an attack. Another demon wolf charged toward the attack, trying its best to block it. With the help of the demon wolves, Elria was successful in casting her spell called Serious Judgment. As the whole area cleared up, Elria then lost all strength. When Elria asked Rufus what she thought of her full power, Rufus responded that it was amazing, even though she still lost after doing everything she could. With tears rolling down her cheeks, Rufus kept on apologizing to Elria. When Elria praised Rufus and her strength for facing her full power, Rufus responded by telling her to stop looking down on her. As the two agreed that the match was won by Elria, Rufus suddenly collapsed, feeling hot all over her body. Elria was surprised when she noticed a huge power behind her. Upon turning around, Elria saw all of the guardian dragons that Rufus had summoned. Elria then realized that Rufus was still summoning the guardian dragons, even in her current state. Elria thought at first that Rufus's summoning was incomplete, but it turned out that Rufus managed to fully summon and command the dragons so well that she managed to beat Moshe and the rest. After being asked by Elria what she did, Rufus revealed how Teach had informed her that if her magic was not enough, then she could just borrow from her future self. When Elria inspected Rufus's body, she was surprised after seeing an unknown magic all over Rufus. When Rufus spat out blood, Elria theorized that the magic was taking Rufus's lifespan in order to create enough magic power to summon the guardian dragons. Rufus became confused when she saw how angry the guardian dragons were, and she asked them why she needed to kill Elria. Elria then used her magic to block the guardian dragon's attack. However, her magic power was no longer enough for her to continue blocking the attack. Using her magic, Alma threw a weapon toward the guardian dragon's location. As the guardian dragon continued to blow fire from its mouth, it was stopped when the weapon Alma threw finally reached its target. Seeing the weapon up close, the dragon saw that Reid was attached to the weapon, controlling the swing. After seeing the dragon get knocked down, Elria then realized that her prayers had come true, as Reid arrived, saving her from the guardian dragons. Wielding the large pole, Reid then buried it into the ground, announcing that he would not let any of the guardian dragons pass through the black flag while he was still alive. When the dragon finally stood up after being struck by Reid, it then stared at Reid's location. Standing in front of Elria, Reid then asked her to give a concise order. Elria asked Reid not to defeat the guardian dragons. Elria then shared with Reid that magic is currently attached to Rufus's lifespan, producing enough magic power to summon the guardian dragons. Dividing up their tasks, Elria planned to deal with Rufus's problem, while Reid would handle the guardian dragons. Reid was surprised when the lightning dragon suddenly soared into the clouds. When Reid saw that the lightning dragon was about to launch multiple lightning attacks, he immediately leaped toward it. Impressed with the dragon's lightning spear, Reid grabbed one of the lightning spears, which surprised the lightning dragon. Using the lightning spear, Reid destroyed the other lightning spears while heading toward the lightning dragon. The fire dragon then launched an attack behind Reid. Sensing the attack, Reid turned around and deflected the attack upward, clearing the sky in the process. As soon as Reid landed, a large boulder was thrown at him. However, Reid not only caught the large boulder but then kicked it toward the water dragon. While Elria focused on helping Rufus, she suspected that someone else had cast the magic on Rufus, as it forcibly converted Rufus's lifespan into magic power if she didn't have enough. Since Lafika was created out of Rufus's magic and her own soul, Elria asked for it to return the magic back, replacing the magic inside Rufus and saving her in the process. Elria warned Lafika that her soul might not return to her original body if they disrupted the magic. Elria was shocked when she heard Lafika's voice asking Elria to save Rufus whatever it took. Lafika shared how Rufus was always with her, worried about her, and even called her Rufus's dearest friend. Accepting Lafika's request, Elria thanked Lafika for sacrificing herself. Elria promised Lafika that she would definitely save Rufus. Elria had no clue what would happen after she separated Lafika's soul and Rufus's magic power. Even if Lafika became a husk and rotted away, Elria would try her best to transfer Lafika's soul to a new life. Elria hoped the two would be reunited again. After the soul transfer was activated, Reid was surprised when he saw how the guardian dragon suddenly withered away. When Rufus finally woke up, she asked where Lafika went. Hearing Lafika's voice beside her, Rufus was glad and told her that she would not forgive her if she disappeared. Rufus cried after reminding Lafika that they'd always be together, as Lafika was her dearest friend. Meanwhile, at the Serios Federation, news of what had happened to Lafika reached Rufus's mother. A few days after the exam, Alma met with Reid and Elria. After confirming that she had received permission to meet with the two, Alma then told them that they should visit Rufus's room together. Rufus was very glad to meet her visitors but was not expecting a visit from a teacher from the East Tower. After being asked about her status, Rufus shared that she was told to rest more. However, Rufus felt that her energy was full after eating so much. When Reid asked Rufus if she had heard about everything after the incident, Rufus replied that the incident mentioned how she lost control and dealt with it as such. As Rufus apologized to Elria for having them get scolded, Alma then mentioned that being scolded was to be expected after going all out. Alma then wanted to get to the point and asked Rufus who had taught her the magic to control the guardian dragons. Rufus then shared that the person she met at Serios named Teach was the one who taught her. When Alma asked for Teach's real name, Rufus was surprised as she remembered that Teach was embarrassed by his name and had just written it on a piece of paper. When Reid asked Rufus if she remembered what Teach looked like, Rufus shared with everyone that Teach was a male elf with beautiful silver hair. Elria then asked Rufus what she meant when she mentioned during the fight that the guardian dragons were angry. Seeing Rufus's nervous reaction, Elria reassured her that it was fine. Rufus shared that the guardian dragons never liked her, as the dragons even kept screaming at her that she needed to kill Elria. Rufus's mother then entered the room, informing her of a message from Serios. The international community had reconsidered Serios's guardian dragon as a threat to modern society, even including the one who managed to form a contract with the guardian dragons who went on a rampage. After saying what she wanted Rufus to hear, Rufus then asked about Lafika's whereabouts. Reminding her mother of the promise they made, Rufus asked if Lafika was safe. With Lafika's new appearance, Rufus's mother did not see any purpose for her in Serios and gave her to Rufus. Shocked to see Lafika's new form, Rufus wondered if it was really Lafika. Elria wondered if Lafika's soul had managed to get back to her own body but was curious as to why it was small. When Elria poured Rufus's magic power back into her, some of Lafika's soul flowed inside Rufus's body and believed that it was the reason why Lafika regenerated to be so small. Rufus was still happy regardless of Lafika's size, as Lafika had shared her soul with Rufus, allowing the two to always be by each other's side. When Elria asked Rufus if she felt something was wrong with her body, Rufus jokingly mentioned how she did not mind having matching wings and a tail like Lafika. While Elria asked if she could help Rufus in picking out a matching ribbon for Lafika, Alma was still in shock when she heard Lafika speak. Back in their room, Reid and Elria were talking about what the guardian dragons had told Rufus. Since the guardian dragons wanted to kill Elria, Reid asked her if she had done something to the guardian dragons either now or in her previous life. Elria, having never met the guardian dragons until just recently, assured Reid that she never did anything that would warrant such a grudge. Reid was now more curious as to why the dragons were so adamant about killing Elria. Elria remembered that the dragons were summoned because of Rufus's magic power from the future, which made her wonder if their enemy was also from the future. Elria handed Reid a magic item, informing him that she had Alma retrieve it from Rufus's room. Looking at the magic item, Reid immediately could tell that it did not look like modern technology, but more like a mechanism that was once used in Altine. Elria theorized that Rufus's elven teacher might be connected to Altine, and suggested having Weasel check the magic item first to confirm if the technology existed in the current era. The next day, Reid handed Weasel the magic item. Confused, Reid asked if it was a magic tool. He then asked Weasel if he knew any other magic tool equipment like it or where it came from. Weasel immediately caught Reid's point and assumed that the magic tool might be related to the past. Alma entered the classroom calling for Reid and Elria and informing them that Elise had called for them. After entering Elise's office, Elise reminded Elria that she had only permitted her to use Tier 3 magic, which Elria confirmed. Bursting into tears, Elise asked Elria why she used large-scale magic if she understood the condition. Elria explained that what she had used was sorcery, and was certain that sorcery was not banned. Elise immediately banned the use of sorcery moving forward, a rule that angered Elria. Alma then reminded Elise that they did not come to the office to talk about magic spells. Elise then informed the two that the contents for the comprehensive exam had been announced, which meant that the special graded mage who would examine Elria and Reid had been decided. Elise revealed that the ones who would be in charge of both Reid and Elria were from Legnea, an eastern nation across the sea. Hearing the name of the place, Reid felt a bit nostalgic. Alma became nervous as she had never expected that people from Legnea would be handling Reid and Elria. Hearing the tone of Alma's voice, Reid asked Elria why she was making it sound like their handlers were strong or something. Elria understood why Alma would feel such a way towards the people from Legnea, explaining to Reid that mages from Legnea can use curses in their magic. One needs to accomplish certain conditions in order to break the curse, but in return they would gain all kinds of things such as strong arms or hardened legs. Reid was surprised as he realized that Legnea had a completely different kind of magic. When Elria told Reid that he would not be able to grab or punch their magic, Reid was not fazed, as he was very much confident that he could still do so, even if his 5 senses were sealed away, stating that his 6th sense was enough for the Legnea mages. Although Elria thought that Reid was just talking nonsense, she also felt that Reid could make what he said happen. Going back to the topic, Elise informed the two that the exam would be held in Palmarl. Since both Reid and Elria tended to always break the rules, Elise informed them that she would be assigning tasks for them. Elria and Reid's task was to investigate the monsters in the area and make a report. Alma further explained the task, informing the two that the eastern part of Palmarle directly neighbored the Liberta Desert, a place known for having large monsters. There were large-scale ruins in the desert where many large monsters and unknown creatures resided. To prepare for the comprehensive exam, Elise reminded the two to make sure that the vicinity was safe, and wished for Elria and Reid to work hard just like her. Alma mentioned that Elise just did not want to get scolded by the Mages Association again, to which Elise reacted dramatically and told Alma that what she said was not true. With their task to hunt some monsters and investigate the ruins in the Liberta Desert, Elise reassured the two that they would be fine since they would be accompanied by special-ranked mages. Elria brought up a topic and asked Elise if she knew of a blonde-haired male elf who was doing research on the guardian dragons. Elise didn't have much of an answer and only heard of one doing research on armored dragons. Visiting the library, Reid told Elria about Altane's royal capital, which was situated in the middle of the Liberta Desert's ruins. If it was still the same after 1,000 years, Reid was certain that the location was Altane's royal capital. While searching for any information about the desert, the two were interrupted by Weasel. Unable to contain his excitement, Weasel mentioned that the magic tool Reid handed to him was too advanced for its time, noting that the closest thing they had were the magic tools and equipment from the eastern region. Weasel was certain that if they visited the place, they would be able to analyze the technology in more detail. Before Reid could tell Weasel about their next exam, he was cut off by Millis. Students Lucas and Valk introduced themselves and apologized for not thanking Elria and Reid for saving them. Lucas mentioned how grateful the family head and the whole family were for what Reid and Elria had done. Lucas then mentioned how the family head wanted them to help Farag graduate safely, stating that the task had proved to be more difficult for them. Farag was surprised when Valk told him that they would be returning to their previous relationship, since the family head had informed them that their help was no longer needed. The two felt frustrated during their time helping Farag, holding off their anger when Farag pointed his magic equipment at Lampart. As an apology, Lucas decided to share one of Farag's embarrassing stories. Seeing an opportunity to best Farag, Millis was very eager to know more about Farag's stories. Frustrated, Farag immediately covered Lucas's mouth, stopping him from revealing secrets. The two then stopped teasing Farag and hoped that Reid and the others would treat Farag well. With new members joining the team, Millis brought up the topic of the next comprehensive exam's location, asking Reid if he knew anything about it. Elria responded, sharing information that the exam would be held at Palmarl. The news excited Millis, who wanted to visit the water capital. Millis then mentioned that the Verminen family had a villa and training grounds near Palmarl, and shared their plan with the others to go as a team of 5 with Lucas and Valk since the two were absent from school. Reid and Elria were then told that their help was truly valued, which Farag mentioned when he said he wanted to ask both Reid and Elria for advice or to be sparring opponents. Knowing Farag's true character, Reid asked for the real reason, which Valk revealed. They were ordered to properly thank Reid and Elria for helping Farag. Millis reminded everyone, especially Elria and Reid, to prepare swimsuits and swim rings, inviting everyone to play. The librarian had enough of the noise the group was making and ended up throwing everyone out of the library. Elria informed Reid that she only had her school swimsuit, asking him if that would be alright. However, Elria was surprised when Reid responded that the school swimsuit would not be okay. The group rode a cruise bound for Palmar. Arriving at the island, they were greeted by a humanoid shark named Palmar. Both Weasel and Millis were starstruck by the famous people and highly advanced technology they were witnessing. Alma informed the students that they were not in Palmarl to play, and reminded everyone that there would be no slacking off. Observing the surroundings, Reid was amazed at how much Palmarl had changed. Curious, Elria asked Reid how much had changed since the place was still a part of Altine territory. Reid responded that there was no longer a trace of Altine, stating how the old Palmarl was filled with tired men sitting on the ground and a bunch of beaten up and drunken fishermen. Listening to Reid, Elria could imagine that things had totally changed for the better. Reid then noticed Weasel being busy learning more about the technologies being displayed. After Alma informed everyone that they still had 2 hours until the Verminens arrived, Weasel excused himself as he wanted to look at magic tool shops and workshops. Seeing Weasel run so fast, Alma asked Reid and Elria what they would do, to which the two simultaneously answered that they were going to eat local foods. Alma then directed her attention to Millis, asking her what she planned to do. Alma mentioned that she noticed Millis looking at a tourist guide on the ship. Nervous, Millis admitted that she wanted to purchase a swimsuit. However, the swimsuit was not for her, but instead for Elria. Elria was surprised and confused, wondering why the topic led to her purchasing a swimsuit. When Elria asks Millis why she's going to purchase a swimsuit, Millis responds and brings up how Elria forgot to bring any swimsuits. Elria clarifies that she did bring her school swimsuit, but she was told by Reid that her school swimsuit did not count. The revelation made Alma question Reid's true intentions, to which Reid just responded that the school swimsuit is different. Millis released her frustration, stating how she only wanted to play around at the beach with girls her age. With tears coming out of her eyes, Millis shared that the last time she played with water was when she was washing off her clothes with her grandmother. When Millis mentioned how she also wanted to see Alma wearing a swimsuit, Alma told Millis that they would be going to a resort, revealing that she brought her own swimsuit. Ending their conversation, Millis asks Reid if she could borrow Elria, to which Reid responded that he did not mind and decided to just walk around and enjoy the view. When the two finally left, Reid thought about how weird it was that Millis did not ask for him to join, as he assumed that Millis would need help in selecting Elria's swimsuit. Seeing Reid with his imagination running wild, Alma tells Reid how Elria and he were truly a married couple. Reid responded, clarifying that they were still not married yet. Alma then asks Reid why Elria and he are still not married yet when they are already quite close. Reid responded, sharing the reason with Alma that Elria and he wanted to see who would become stronger when they became magicians. Alma was shocked when Reid finally admitted that he likes Elria. However, Alma was left confused when Reid explained why he liked Elria, stating that he respected and liked Elria for being the type of person she really was in relation to magic and her attitude towards her goals. Alma was sure that what Reid had just said was the same as liking someone as a person, and not as a romantic partner. Reid, who's mentally an old man, tells Alma that it was too late for him to talk about love. When Alma asks Reid if he sees Elria as the opposite gender, Reid responds that his love for Elria has pushed the bounds of logic, putting his life on the line just to meet Elria. While Reid is telling Alma that he also views Elria as someone who's a worthy opponent and a respectable comrade, he notices Alma getting embarrassed and asks what the reason is for. Alma explained how she was caught off guard, not expecting that Reid would reveal his emotions so bluntly. Alma finally got the gist and confirmed with Reid how he only sees Elria as a friend, but is still unsure about seeing Elria as a romantic partner. After putting an end to a 50-year-old relationship, Reid was very eager to start his relationship with Elria once again, stating that Elria and he will remain engaged until they settle the matter. Alma acknowledges Reid's feelings but then points out to Reid the possibility of Elria developing feelings for him regardless of their previous life. Reid was left puzzled, wondering why Elria would do something as roundabout as getting an engagement like they have. Knowing Elria's attitude, Alma was certain that Elria panicked and had forgotten what she was going to say. Reid could also see Alma's reasoning as possible, but he was still certain that Elria would ask him to be engaged with her even after settling the matter. When Alma asks Reid if the reason was because they've known each other for so long, Reid couldn't speak on behalf of Elria's feelings, but he expressed how delighted he would be if he and Elria thought of the same thing. Meanwhile, Elria and Millis were now at a store selecting from various designs for a swimsuit. When Elria tells Millis that she is fine with whatever Millis chooses, Millis immediately tells Elria that they can't do that. Millis explains how swimsuits are meant for others to look at, which is why they need Elria to choose the swimsuit for herself. Millis tries to make Elria understand the importance of the perfect swimsuit, using Reid as an example and asking Elria what Reid would do if he saw her wearing a swimsuit for the first time. After responding that Reid would certainly pat her head and praise her, Millis then asks Elria how that reaction would make her feel, to which Elria responds that it would certainly make her extremely happy. Finally understanding what Millis is trying to imply, Elria reassures Millis that she will do her best and pick the best swimsuit for herself. With Millis as her critic, Elria tried out multiple swimsuits, expressing how she liked the types that were both elegant in style and easy to move in. Seeing Millis so dedicated to helping her out, Elria couldn't help but thank Millis. Millis responds that she was just doing whatever she could to see Elria being cute. When Elria responds that she will make some time for the two of them to play as payment for the help, Millis immediately becomes nervous, asking Elria if she meant that they would fight in a mock battle. Elria responds that she was not that heartless, reassuring Millis that they wouldn't be doing a mock battle. Ever since Elria started living her second life, she had always asked others to choose her clothes, and had never chosen one for herself. Elria was truly grateful to Millis, as she realized that choosing her own clothes was something she did not expect would make her happy. Millis momentarily could not control her emotions and had tears coming out of her eyes. Millis then stated how Reid is one lucky guy to have Elria, who works hard to make her husband happy. When Elria clarifies that Reid and she were not married yet, Millis was surprised that Elria would still say such a thing. Elria reveals that she hasn't told Reid how she feels about him, and that until she reveals her true feelings, she and Reid will remain engaged. The engagement between the two was established as a promise to one another, a challenge to see who would become stronger. Elria has no plans to express her true feelings until the promise they made is fulfilled. Seeing how romantic the promise between the two sounded, Millis assumed that Elria would eventually reveal her true feelings regardless of the outcome. To Millis's surprise, Elria reveals that she will only tell Reid how she truly feels if she wins their fight. Elria explains that she would look pitiable if she were to express her feelings after losing. Seeing how Elria's pride as the sage had once again taken over her actions, Elria then asked Millis to simply support her cause. Though the scenario Elria shared left Millis a bit irritated, she still promised Elria that she would support her. With everyone finally regrouping after exploring Palmarl, they were picked up by Lucas, who was posing as the driver for the Verminen family. Lucas reveals that being a driver for the Verminens was his true job, and asks everyone to enter the vehicle. A woman named Totori saw Alma and was annoyed that Alma did not inform her about visiting Palmarl. A man named Savad then calls Totori's attention, informing her that he has not yet obtained the Liberta Desert Pass. Savad was told that he would have to wait for a high-ranking mage from Vegalta before he could get the pass. When Totori suggested they catch Alma and take her with them, Savad asked Totori if she had seen Alma. Savad recalls that besides Alma, there would also be 2 other students accompanying her in the investigation. Totori then suggests to Savad that they give Alma a surprise. On their way to the Verminen family's villa, both Weasel and Millis could not contain their excitement, as they never expected to experience riding in a magic car. Ignoring the two, Elria and Reid complimented Lucas's driving skills. Finally arriving at the villa, they were greeted by Valk, who was now sporting a maid outfit. The sudden change in appearance surprised Millis, prompting Valk to explain that her real work was as a servant of the Verminen family. Valk informs everyone that the head of the Verminen family, Martis, had instructed them to treat everyone politely. Millis asks Valk if they would treat her the same as the others, even though she is just a commoner. Valk responds that since Millis is an invited guest of honor, they would serve her with perfection. Lucas then asks Valk if she had seen their young master, Farag. Valk remembered that Farag was busy doing something in his room, but she was not sure what it was. Lucas thought that Farag would come out to greet his friends since it was the first time other people had ever visited him. As Valk guided everyone to the lounge room for guests, they did not expect to see the room so well prepared, and praised Farag for taking the time to arrange it for them. Farag, who had been so occupied with preparing the room, became nervous when he saw that everyone had already arrived. Moving to the beach, Reid expressed how he couldn't feel calm wearing a swimsuit. Farag then told Reid that he just looked average and pointed out that all of them were wearing wetsuits. Lucas then commented to Farag that his and Reid's abs were incomparable, making the wetsuit look much better on Reid. The remark enraged Farag, who vowed to train so hard that he would have the exact same abs in no time. Elria finally arrived at the beach, apologizing to everyone for making them wait. Seeing Elria in a swimsuit, Reid was caught off guard and commented that he was certain Elria would look good in white, just like with her other clothes. When Elria complimented Reid and his swimsuit, Reid expressed how he still felt anxious wearing light clothing. The other ladies then made their presence known, teasing Elria and Reid for once again losing themselves in their own world. Alma wondered what Reid would say about her and Millis's swimsuits. Millis was already guessing that Reid would play it safe and say something along the lines of how they all looked good. Overhearing the conversation, Reid told the two that they were putting him in a tough spot. Millis then asked Lucas and Valk if they weren't going to change into their swimsuits. Valk responded that they would be just fine and mentioned that they still had more work to do after training. Weasel approached Millis, asking if she planned to train in her swimsuit or if she was just trying to run away from reality. Millis acknowledged that she still had training with Elria, but insisted that it was also fine to play in the water. Millis then told Weasel that she also wanted to hear compliments about her swimsuit and was determined to do her best if she ever received them. Overhearing Millis, Lucas commented that he also hoped Farag would meet a good person someday. Everyone enjoyed their time at the beach playing beach volleyball and splashing around in the cool water. Unbeknownst to the group, Totori, who was using a bird to track Alma's whereabouts, was surprised to see Alma letting her guard down. Totori was determined to punish Alma for being so careless. After warming up, Elria told everyone that they would be starting the training right away. Disheartened, Millis asked Elria if they could just play for the day. Elria warned everyone that she would be giving extra training to those who acted timid. Knowing that Elria is always true to her word, everyone raised their hands and shouted that they would do their best. For Farag and Weasel, Elria instructed them to play tag on top of the water until one of them ran out of stamina. Farag was shocked when Elria mentioned that he would be the only one running. Weasel would have to use whatever he could create to make Farag fall into the water. Confident in his ability, Farag thought the training would be easy. However, he protested when Elria informed him that he could only use fire explosion magic for movement. Farag pointed out that the magic he was allowed to use was usually reserved for emergency escapes. When Weasel asked if the winner would be getting something, Elria responded that the winner would be exempt from extra lessons. Upon hearing the reward, Weasel asked Farag to sacrifice himself for his sake. Confused as to why he had to sacrifice himself, Farag was also concerned that Weasel was using new magic equipment, which he believed to be cheating. As a magic engineer, Weasel was bound to strive to better himself every day. To obtain all information about magic, Weasel stated that he would not hesitate to sacrifice his friends for his magic tools. After Elria gave the signal, Farag immediately ran for his life, with Weasel not far behind. Elria informed Lucas that he was allowed to interfere with Weasel by using apply magic to protect Farag. However, she forbade Lucas from attacking Weasel directly. As Farag's servant, Lucas did his best to protect him. Weasel immediately stopped when he noticed that he was being captured. To escape from Lucas's magic, Weasel used his momentum and kicked the magic away. Lucas, who had added color to the air, realized that his magic was not enough to hold Weasel off. Elria later told Lucas that if Farag lost, he too would receive extra lessons. Nervously, Lucas asked Elria what the extra lessons were. He became frightened when Elria told him that they would be recreating the pain he experienced during battles to help him get used to it. Scared for his life, Lucas begged Farag to run like his life depended on it. For Valk's training, Elria handed her a ball. She informed Valk that for her training, she would have to actively use her permeation magic. Since Reid didn't know about permeation, Valk explained to him that permeation is similar to teleportation magic. The user chooses a target and makes it phase through another dimension. Elria then summoned Sheffrey and mentioned that she would be playing with Valk. In an instant, Sheffrey stole the ball from Valk's hands. Elria informed Valk that it was best for her to get the ball as soon as possible, as the ball contained a large amount of magic power. As a demon wolf, Sheffrey would become more powerful, making her more difficult for Valk to handle. Seeing Sheffrey now as big as herself, Valk immediately grabbed the ball and ran for her life. Seeing everyone exerting themselves during training, Millis expected nothing less from Elria. Elria assured Millis that she would not be her opponent for the day. The news excited Millis and she thought she had won the lottery. However, Elria then informed her that she would be facing Alma instead. Millis immediately became disappointed and even questioned why everyone was so strong. Alma tried to cheer Millis up by telling her that she wouldn't beat her directly, her soldiers would. After assigning everyone their training regimen, both Alma and Elria lay down and relaxed. Meanwhile, Reid couldn't help but worry about the others. Elria reassured Reid that their friends would be fine, as she had reminded everyone, including Sheffrey, to hold back. Sitting beside the two girls, Reid immediately noticed thunderclouds forming above. Out of nowhere, a lightning strike nearly hit Alma and the others. Using her ability, Alma was able to block the attack. Recognizing the magic, Alma asked Totori why she was interrupting them. Calling Alma a lazy special rank mage, Totori clarified that she had only come to greet her. Introducing herself as the Thunder Princess of Legnia, she vowed to fight Alma on behalf of her students. Alma wasted no time and knocked Totori away by summoning a massive skeleton hand behind her. Totori cried out as she hadn't expected Alma to actually hit her. Alma became annoyed as the sky had now become completely cloudy because of Totori's actions. Totori explained that she had only been trying to scare everyone a little. Totori was shocked when she saw Elria and Reid casually touching her lightning. Seeing Totori's reaction, Alma asked her, "Who's more surprised now?" Totori believed she wasn't the only one who was surprised. However, she fell silent after seeing the others busy with their own training. As a special rank mage herself, Totori couldn't believe what she was witnessing. Alma then asked Reid if he could blow the lightning away. With just a single punch, Reid reduced the lightning to dust. With her mouth wide open, Alma told Totori that those were the students she and Savad would be facing. After their exhausting training, Valk and Lucas apologized to everyone for not being able to prepare dinner. With Reid coming to the rescue, he reassured Valk and Lucas that they could leave the rest to him. Both Weasel and Millis immediately felt rejuvenated after eating the meat Reid cooked. With Farag unable to move a muscle, Reid informed him that his assignment was focused on mobility and tuning his magic power consumption. As someone who was serious and methodical, Reid was confident that Farag would be able to adjust and improve in time. Reid advises Farag that he should improve his accuracy before the comprehensive exam. Agreeing with Reid, Farag expressed how annoyed he is, seeing how Reid can easily do it but not him. Elria becomes concerned for Reid, as he has been grilling all day and has not eaten yet. To solve the problem, Elria offers to feed Reid herself. Thanking Elria, Reid eats the meat and is astonished at how delicious it is. The drunk Alma notices that Elria is using her own chopsticks to feed Reid, which she then points out means the two have made an indirect kiss. Though Reid told Alma that such a thing is nothing to be bothered about, Elria, on the other hand, has turned red from embarrassment. Since Alma could no longer control herself, Reid takes her liquor and empties it in one gulp. As Alma continues to tease the two, Elria also continues to feed Reid with the meat, even though she is quite embarrassed. Later that night, everyone was all gathered up near a campfire. What surprises the students is the unexpected visit from Totori. In exchange for giving her a delicious meal, Totori offers to tell everyone Legnia's ghost story. Millis becomes excited, as she has already heard of Legnia's ghost story, where people gather around at night and take turns telling a scary story. As the first one to tell a story, Totori successfully places fear onto Farag and Lucas. Hearing a rustling sound behind him, everyone becomes alarmed and wonders what it is. The drunk Alma immediately sobered up from fear and is now grabbing Reid's arm along with Elria. As soon as Farag sees a pair of eyes with horns, he feels as if his soul has left his body, believing that an Oni has shown itself. However, it is not the case. It is revealed that everything was a prank orchestrated by both Totori and Savad. Annoyed by the prank, Alma immediately runs her mouth, bad-mouthing Savad after not seeing each other for a long time. Because of the prank, Alma pointed out that they killed with just fear alone. Apologetic, Savad assumed that it was fine for him to reveal himself since Farag was able to detect him. Reid tries to calm Elria down, making her realize that it was all a prank. However, Elria is no longer listening to him and is too focused on the story. Seeing how the rumored sage is unable to handle a scary story, Totori offers to tell them a legend that had happened 1,000 years ago instead. Reid is surprised and becomes intrigued by the supposed legend story. Totori informs Reid and Elria that 1,000 years ago, calamity struck Legnia's capital and it nearly died as a country. The ruler of Legnia, Ukunanushi, came and parted the seas. Listening to the story, Reid is somewhat familiar with it and asks if the Ukunanushi is a girl named Mifuru with black hair and ears. After telling Reid that he is correct, Totori continues to share the legend, but is surprised when Reid shares more details about the calamity and about the being named Aragami, who was asked to defeat an 8-headed dragon and later returned. Reid reveals that the person who was called Aragami was none other than him. As everyone is left stunned by Reid's revelation, it is unbeknownst to them that Kristia has arrived and is very eager to meet Elria. Inside the carriage, Alma was having the taste of her consequences for drinking too much. Elria, on the other hand, was shocked when Reid fell asleep and was about to fall onto her. Totori then suggests to Elria that she give Reid a lap pillow. Long ago, before Reid became the hero of Altyne, He once suffered a terrible fever and collapsed in the woods. When asked why he was in the woods, Reid responded that he was practicing and holding an axe. Accepting his fate that he would not become a useful soldier, Reid wished that he could at least chop trees and be helpful for his father. Even after 1,000 years had passed, Reid still remembered the few times when his family smiled. However, terrible circumstances kept on coming for Reid's family, depleting them financially and mentally. Wanting to save his mother, Reid hopped on a carriage that is owned by slave traders. For Reid, becoming a slave was a salvation for him. While trying to run away, Reid encounters a mysterious person asking him why he is all alone. After asking the man to not tell the villagers about him running away, Reid stated that he only wished to help his parents and believes that by becoming a slave it would allow him to do so. The mysterious person then asked Reid to choose, whether it's hero or sage. The man could see that Reid is a clever young man, understanding how powerless he is, and even finding his very own solution despite being powerless. Choosing to help out his parents by becoming a slave and earning the money to give to them, the man tells Reid that he soon will be showered in praise by those around him and would soon call Reid a sage. When asked what he would do if his wishes came true, Reid responded that he wanted to be the strongest hero. Reid hated the fact that he was just a burden for his parents, and did not even have the body to help his own father. The man warns Reid that being a hero will lead to a painful path as everyone will fear his power. Thus, the man pointed out that being weak was much better. The man shared how he once knew someone who sought out power, and once they achieved it, they ended up facing the sad reality that they are all alone. After mentioning how everyone has pointed out the subject of his story as evil, Reid asks the man if he wanted to apologize to the person he is talking about. As someone who's weak, Reid admits that he does not know how a strong person feels, but once he becomes stronger, Reid wants to understand how those people feel, and even wants to build a friendship with them. Reid's answer surprised the man, and he advises Reid not to ride on the carriage, suggesting that he become a hero. Confused, Reid responded that he does not know how to become one. The man reassures Reid that as long as he trains every day without fail, he would definitely become a hero. The last thing the man told Reid is that the hero has entrusted Reid with all of it. When Reid finally woke up, he apologized to Elria for sleeping on her lap. Elria tells Reid that it was not a problem, as she mentions how it was rare for Reid to suddenly doze off. When Elria asks Reid if he had a dream or something, Reid responds that he did but is having trouble trying to remember it. Reid also thanked Lucas for driving them. After an isolation magic was activated, Reid reminded everyone of his revelation during their story night. Savad still finds it very difficult to believe that Reid is the being that was named Aragami. To make things much clearer, Reid introduces himself and Elria and reveals to Savad and Totori that they've been reincarnated into the new world. After Reid revealed their past identities, Totori suggests to Savad to believe that Reid is Aragami, sharing the fact of how Reid easily blew away her magic with a single punch. When the word beast possessed was brought up, Reid asked what it was. Elria explains to Reid that it is a phenomenon that only happens in Legnea. When one becomes a beast possessed, that person will soon show characteristics of a beast and will stop aging. Reid asks Totori why the phenomenon only happens in Legnea. As Totori was about to explain it to Reid, Elria intervenes and explains the phenomenon to Reid herself. Since there were no records of a beast possessed in Vegalta nor Seros, Elria was certain it was the result of a curse caused by Legnea's culture of using curses. Among the curse techniques, there are some that are banned to use. After concluding her deduction, Totori stops Elria as she praises Elria's lung capacity to talk so long. After Elria shared her theory, it was enough to convince Totori to believe that Elria was indeed the sage. After confirming that all Elria mentioned was true, Totori shared that the information about the beast possessed is highly classified, which she wishes to keep as a secret. After sharing her knowledge about how dangerous the forbidden curses are, Totori stated that reincarnation is one of the forbidden curses, which requires a huge cost. Unfortunately, the documents regarding forbidden curses have been stolen. The Imperial Palace has already placed a barrier and patrol guards, making it difficult for even a special ranked mage to enter the palace. However, despite all the tight security, it was discovered that the door to the treasury was opened, and all documents regarding forbidden curses have been stolen. Savad and Totori were then tasked by the Legnea government to look into the situation. When Alma brought up the incident with Rufus, Elria remembered that the color of the magic inside Rufus was something she had not seen before. If the magic that was inside Rufus's body before was slowly taking her power, Elria then believes that the magic was a forbidden curse. After reading the report about Rufus's incident, it leads Totori to believe that the blonde elf and the perpetrator are likely the same person. As Totori shared their theories, Reid also pointed out that by revealing their past identities, it is to show that they can be trusted and also seek help. When Reid mentioned that the Liberta Desert was once his hometown, which was the capital of Altaïn, Totori was intrigued as she had never heard of Reid's country before, and asked him if it is somehow related to their current situation. From what Reid could deduce, the elf that tricked Rufus may be connected with Altaïn. Agreeing with Reid, Totori then stated that their top priority for the time being was to get permission to visit the Liberta Desert. After stepping off the carriage, Elria received an unexpected visit from Christia. When Alma asks the princess if they can continue with their conversation, Christia becomes angry and states that she still needed to absorb more of Elria's substance. Seeing no point in trying to talk the princess out, Alma just continued with their conversation, asking the princess if they have now received permission to enter the Liberta Desert. Christia tells Alma that she had already taken care of the matter and has also notified the areas surrounding the Liberta Desert about their short-term investigation. With the special ranked mages present, Christia thought that she shouldn't hold back. When Reid asks Christia if she can connect them with the other person, Christia looks at Elria and proceeds to follow Reid's wish. Using her magic, Christia was able to bring Tiana's consciousness into the future. After Reid apologized for suddenly bringing Tiana out, Tiana stared at Alma and mentioned that they should remove any outsiders before starting their discussion. Reid explains to Tiana that Alma is his subordinate and is also Liet's descendant. After knowing Alma's connection, Tiana then introduces herself and reveals her identity. Alma becomes excited as she never thought that she would meet a very important person. Receiving praise from Tiana for carrying the responsibility of a special ranked mage, Alma couldn't hide her excitement and nervousness. When Tiana asks for the reason why she was brought out, Reid asks her about the events that happened after his and Elria's death, and how Altaïn got destroyed. Liet, who's the hero's adjutant and flag-bearer, went back to the capital with the news regarding Reid's death and memento. Upon hearing the news, the Emperor of Altaïn uttered intolerable words toward their own hero. This action triggered deep anger within Liet and thus started a coup. With the Vegalta army backing Liet's revolt, the capital then fell in less than a couple of years. Curious about the Emperor's last movements, Tiana informs Reid that the Emperor's body was never found after the capital fell. Tiana suspects that the Emperor fled to Legnia through the areas surrounding the Eastern Sea. Curious, Alma asks Tiana why her ancestor suddenly betrayed the Emperor. Reid informs Alma that the reason why her ancestry betrayed the Emperor was so that he could witness the truth with his own eyes. Reid informs Alma that to better understand her ancestor's past, she first must hear about Reid's past. 1,000 years ago, a young Reid faced countless soldiers and blew them away with a single swing. However, because of Reid's overwhelming power, the sword he used had broken again. As Reid wondered if there was a sword that was just lying around, he coincidentally saw a sword and thought that it was perfect after picking it up. When Reid was starting out as a mercenary, he wandered from one battlefield to another. After subjugating the armored dragon, people started calling him Hero. After having his name be spread out, the Emperor of Altaïn decided to summon Reid to give him a court rank. Arriving at the capital, Reid was amazed at how magnificent the capital was. While being guided, Reid was told to lower his head since Crown Prince Vidios was coming towards them. After the Crown Prince passed by, his subordinate stopped and insulted Reid, telling him how people like him are just polluting the capital's air. Glaring back, Reid asked the man, "What?" The man was surprised upon seeing Reid glaring back at him. However, Reid did not do anything and just left. Entering a room, Reid sighs in frustration. A man suddenly appeared and told Reid that he should sigh when no one is looking. Puzzled, Reid asks the man who he was. The man introduced himself as Theo, a commoner that specializes in research. After seeing Reid's little exchange, Theo told Reid that he was brave for talking back. After their first encounter, Theo started following Reid everywhere. Wherever Reid goes, Theo appears and tries to befriend him. Deep in the forest, Theo asks Reid why he is taking the soil back with him. Reid pointed out to Theo that they are on a battlefield where danger is always present. However, Theo is not afraid and promises Reid that he won't die until they become friends. Finding Theo a nuisance, Reid tells Theo to go home already. Reid was surprised when Theo guessed that he didn't know how to examine soil. Theo brought up how Reid used his forces to help the villagers on the front lines. Reid responds that times are hard and manpower is needed everywhere. Reid shared that he was given authority and that Theo has no right to complain. Theo clarified that he wasn't complaining but was just wondering why Reid is investigating the soil. Reid mentioned how the village has had bad harvests around the area, and if he can confirm that a monster may appear, then the harvest wouldn't survive. Though most of the time the reason why the crops die lies in the soil, Reid believes that if he can look further into it, he may find out the reason. Listening to Reid, Theo offered to help and teach Reid how to analyze soil. When Reid asks Theo what he is after, Theo responds with another question, asking Reid if he likes Altaïn. Reid didn't particularly like Altaïn but was just left with nowhere else to go. When Reid mentioned that his powers are only useful on the battlefield, Theo clarified and told Reid that physical strength isn't his only power. Since not a lot of soldiers care for villages like Reid, who always helps the weak, Theo wanted to help Reid in order to change Altyne. When Reid asked Theo how he plans on doing that, Theo responded with an idea of a country where everyone can live freely and mentioned that Reid can become his disciple. From there on out, Reid and Theo started talking more about Altyne's future. Reid never liked Altyne, but just liked hearing Theo talk about the future. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince Vitios was enthroned as the emperor. Altyne didn't change and remained a warmongering country. Reid tells Theo that changing the emperor didn't change anything. When Theo asked for Reid to become the country's general, Reid was curious and wondered why him. Theo then pleaded to Reid that he become the country's general. Theo explained that the previous emperor took a liking to Reid and that even if Vitios is discontent, he would still approve of Reid, which is the reason why Reid cannot be banished. Reid asks Theo if he was planning to make him general and admonish the emperor. However, Theo knew the emperor's personality and was certain that admonishing the emperor would be difficult. Reid was surprised with how Theo talked about the emperor. Theo explained that he was the late emperor's twin brother, which makes him the emperor's uncle. As an unwanted child, Theo believes that the reason why he was left alone was because he didn't look like the emperor at all. Theo shared how the people that side with the emperor fear that if they make Reid the general and leave him in the capital, Reid would kill them in their sleep. That reason is also why Altyne tries to send Reid to every battlefield. Always on the battlefield, Reid used that time to improve all the poor areas. Reid understands what Theo is trying to say, but Reid does not know whether he can stay in the country till the end. Theo tries to get some sympathy from Reid, telling him how he had seen how heavy the burden of the crown is for his nephew. The newly crowned King Vitios used to talk to people like Theo without discrimination. Theo wants Reid to see it for himself whether Vitios can still be saved or if it's already too late. After becoming a general, Reid was given free rein to do whatever he wanted in the war with Vigalta. Reid also researched all the spells Elria cast during their battles until their last breath. Listening to the story, it then made sense to Tiana and she realized that it was because of Reid. Elria was confused as to how Reid was the reason. Tiana explained that the improvements of Vigalta's eastern region were possible thanks to Liat and some Altyne soldiers' help. Since there was no record of the hero, Tiana and the whole kingdom of Vigalta couldn't figure out how they improved so much in the span of a few hundred years. When Reid asks Tiana if she's exaggerating with her story, Reid's comment angered Tiana, and she told Reid to not talk to her as if she's an idiot. Tiana clarifies that the improvements weren't just the abundant improvement plans, pointing out how the kingdom fumbled around making use of Elria's ideas to better understand magic. Since there was no record of the hero, the kingdom of Vigalta just assumed that Altyne also had a sage of their own. Tiana asks Elria if she knew why she was always sent to the battlefield with the hero. Elria too didn't know what Reid's aim was and could only start to piece together his invasion plans. After Elria realized that Reid was investigating something, she purposely left magic items around. Remembering the items that they've picked up before, Reid was able to confirm his theory that the items were being left purposely. Most of the items could be prepared pretty easily and used again, which Reid finds very weird. After decades, the kingdom never prepared any kind of diversion or countermeasures against magic, which is why Elria thought Reid was working independently and overlooked it. In Reid's investigation, they also predicted Elria's invasion plan, and purposely timed their investigation so that they would be discovered as soon as they were done. Elria also predicted Reid's movements, and she was able to surmise his intention, hiding the traces of investigation by fighting in the battlefield. Tiana becomes annoyed at the two for using the battlefield to exchange messages. Reid asks Tiana if she can relay a message to Liat, to which Tiana doesn't mind. Tiana shared the moment she told Liat about Reid and Elria's status and how they are living happily, how Liat and the kids were crying out of happiness. Puzzled, Reid asks Tiana what she meant by kids. Seeing Tiana's reaction, Reid was able to deduce the matter, and asked Tiana to tell Liat congratulations, as Reid was also certain that Liat didn't tell him anything out of consideration. Another message Reid wanted to relay to Liat was to put the sword back to its original place, and to make sure that the sword gets left behind no matter what. Curious, Elria asks Reid how he got a hold of the sword in the first place. Reid shared how he found the sword just laying on the ground. In his previous life, Reid didn't know why the sword didn't break at all. However, now in the present, he knows the reason. The sword fits Reid's mana, which is why Reid wanted for the sword to be left alone so he could confirm it. Promising Reid that she would inform Liat, Tiana then approaches Elria, wanting to ask something of her. Before Kristia's consciousness returns, Tiana asks to pat Elria's head. Elria looked extremely unwilling at first, but eventually agreed to have her head patted. To Alma's surprise, Tiana also wanted to pat her head. Confused, Alma asked for the reason. Tiana explained that since Alma is a descendant of the House of Kainos, Alma never stopped believing in the hero, which is why Tiana asks for Alma to always support the hero, and then revealed that it was Lyot's request and wishes. Saluting, Alma vowed to uphold Lyot's wishes. After patting Alma, Tiana tells Reid that she will be leaving Elria in his hands. However, when Reid responded that he would always take care of Elria, it angered Tiana, and she asked for Reid to stop treating her master like some kind of pet. Seeing how Reid didn't change after 1,000 years, Tiana shared that when Reid rushed over before, she felt really happy. Reid stayed true to his feelings even when his life was on the line. Tiana and her family pray that Reid's dreams may come true. When Christia's consciousness finally returned, she started bawling and told Elria that she still hadn't had enough. Unfortunately for Christia, she was stopped by her butler, who reminded her that Reid and the others still have lots of official business to take care of. Alma suggests that they meet up with Totori and Savad, as she is certain that the two are now waiting by the Liberta Desert. Reid asks Alma's opinion after hearing Tiana's story, and if she can estimate when Altain was erased from history. Alma believes that Altain slowly vanished right after the reconstruction in the East was completed. Accounting for the time when the people of the area eventually forgot Altain, Alma estimates around 100 years. Alma shared how they found Reid's memorandum, which helped them in restoring the East area within 100 years. Elria believes that the one who altered history had to be someone from the time. Reid guessed that the people who still remembered Altan from the time before may have done something about the records of the hero. Reid points out how it was already a miracle that both the hero and Sage lived in the same time period, and the fact that they've lived again after 1,000 years may surely have impacted history. Reid pointed out how Lanyea's Arami legend didn't feel too far off from reality. Reid was certain that the non-human who came in contact with it was the elf's folklore. The stories were traces left behind by those who felt out of place that Altain never existed. Reid guesses that the people who altered the stories may have also anticipated their reincarnation. In order to not miss any signs, Reid thought that an observer was assigned. Reid was certain that the only beings that can be assigned are the ones that have a long lifespan or someone who can pass down their memories. Elria asked Reid what he would do to the person who altered history if they were ever to find him. With history changed, it led to Valk and Lucas being greatly injured by the armored dragon, and Rufus having her lifespan reduced. Elria states that she will not forgive anyone who hurts others just to change history. Reid tells Elria that after being reincarnated for 1,000 years into a peaceful future, he could only think of sharing the view with her. Confused, Elria asks Reid if he thinks that the person is not a bad person. Reid reassures Elria that if the culprit is indeed bad, then he wouldn't hesitate. Stretching out his hand, Reid tells Elria that in order to unveil the truth, they would have to go to the Liberta Desert. Arriving at the Liberta Desert, Totori asks Reid if he was certain that the vast desert was once his hometown, since she finds it hard to believe that there was a country there before. Reid responded that he was certain that the place they are now stepping on was once the capital of Altain. Amongst all the East region places, the place where Altain was once present had the most stable mana. Although the landscape has changed, Reid believes that the place would change so much. Savad reports that the mage who often patrols at the place saw a humanoid shadow moving near the deepest part of the building. Observing the area, Reid was certain that the place Savad was talking about was the central tower, and the building beneath is the castle. Looking down below, Reid guessed that their exploration won't be as easy as they thought, as huge monsters started to crawl up to the walls. Totori reassures Reid that they would take care of it, sharing how they also received a quest to hunt some monsters. Offering to clear a path, Totori asks for everyone to just sit and wait. As Totori leaped forward, covering her body with electricity, she then casted her spell Nue Kagura. The attack was so powerful that it defeated multiple large monsters in an instant. Totori laughs as she is now getting excited after defeating multiple monsters. Despite luring a much larger monster, which was now in front of her, Totori did not show any fear and continued to hack through the large monsters. Elria was starstruck, commenting how Totori's is quite amazing even though it's different from Vigalta's magic. Alma, on the other hand, admitted that her magic won't be able to blow off heads like Totori's. Reid pointed out that Alma's Death Brigade is effective against everything, which makes it pretty convenient. Alma was grateful for Reid's compliment. However, she still can't get out of Reid and Elria's shadows. After hearing news how Reid and Elria defeated 4 guardian dragons at the same time using a single magic, and grabbing their magic barehanded, Savad asks the two if those information were true. Elria responded nonchalantly, and told Savad that what he just mentioned may be true. Savad smiles and asks if he could speak with the two after their mission, wanting to find a way to test Reid and Elria without them dying. When Reid mentioned that they will be heading to the Emperor's throne, Alma was confused, as she thought that they would be going to the place where the sword was left. Reid explains that they are only assuming that the world they are currently in and his past are connected, and they are now about to find out if it's true or not. Putting back to its original place is a code word to put the sword in a safe place in the gap between the Emperor's throne and the hidden escape route. Make sure that it gets left behind no matter what, was another code word which meant to store confidential information in designated places. Curious, Alma asks Reid why he couldn't just tell her ancestor directly instead of giving coded words. Since all the things that happened are centered around him and Elria, Reid believes that there's a high chance that the person who changed the future is fully aware of their movements. If the plan was to have Reid and Elria removed, Reid was certain that those people would do something about it. If the people who orchestrated the changes in the future erased what Alma's ancestors left behind, Alma believes that they would have less information than them. Arriving at some ruins, Elria was shocked seeing the terrible state of the place. With the castle and buildings built 1,000 years ago, Reid mentions that such structures just can't easily come and go. Seeing how the place has so much sand, Alma believes that the inside would not be safe for them to enter. However, Reid was certain that at least the central facility is safe, assuming that there are no monsters. Totori then mentioned that it was Sabad's turn to show off. Reid also asked Elria to not use any big magic, reassuring everyone that the whole place collapsing is something they no longer need to worry about. Reid suggested that they now head down to confirm things. Curious, Elria asks Reid how they are to get down since there were no stairs around. Reid explained that in Altine before they had something called machinery, which uses electricity as power to make things move. Reid reveals that the castle has an accessible elevator that they can use to go up and down. Elria becomes interested in the technology of Altine, while Alma finds it weird seeing moving things without the use of magic. After checking the ground, Reid chose a spot and stomped on it, creating a huge hole. Reid then suggested that they go down from there. Both Alma and Elria stared at Reid as they couldn't believe how Reid easily destroyed things in his path, even though he just warned Elria to not use big magic. Reid explains that there was no other way for them to enter since there's no longer any electricity and everywhere else is buried in sand. Sabad laughs as he thanks Reid's action for allowing him to confirm that the place is hollow inside despite the long drop they would go to. Upon seeing much closer, more monsters were now crawling towards them. Reid's plan was to open up a path with Sabad, and asks Sabad if he is able to do it since it also meant that they would be going straight into the middle of a monster horde. Nervous, Sabad guessed that Reid's plan is the type where someone usually dies. However, confident in his ability, Sabad believes that he can do it. Despite Reid being the person in their legend stories, Sabad decides to take the lead as he still can't let a student take the lead. Jumping into the hole full of monsters, Sabad decides to take out 10 monsters first. Arriving at the bottom floor, Reid followed not long after and was surprised to see how the nest was much bigger than he expected. With a huge snake in front of them, Reid guessed that clearing the place would take longer than expected, and suggested that they have a chat while defeating the monsters. Intrigued, Sabad asks Reid if he has any topics in mind. Having the perfect topic in mind, Reid wanted to talk about why Sabad and he have the same mana. Peeking at the hole, Elria pulls Totori back, telling her how dangerous it would be if she falls down. Totori tells Elria that she is no longer a kid, revealing her age to be 120 years old. Totori also shared how she is only worried about her husband, which is typical for a wife to feel. When Elria responded calmly, Totori did not expect her reaction since the reaction she always gets is people in total disbelief that a beast possessed like her was able to get married. Elria believes that both Totori and Sabad are similar, guessing that Sabad is also a beast possessed. When Totori asked Elria how she believes that Sabad is a beast possessed, Elria explained that long ago the animals that served the gods were worshipped, and that beast-possessed people often reflect those traits. Elria was not certain what type of beast Sabad reflected, but seeing how Sabad covers his face and seeing his attack pattern earlier, Elria felt that it is quite similar to Reid. Elria then asks Totori how Sabad became like that in the first place. Totori revealed that she used forbidden magic to bring Sabad back to life. Meanwhile, inside the dark ruins, Sabad also revealed to Reid how he had died once because his mana rampaged inside his body. For as long as Sabad could remember, there had always been an unknown power inside him which allowed him to go on par with strong adults. Since both Sabad's parents are normal, he was then called Oni, and lived deep in the mountains alone. Despite facing a rough childhood, Sabad did not feel lonely as he was able to meet Totori. Because of Totori's actions, she ended up being persecuted by the villagers, which sparked anger within Sabad, allowing himself to rampage and trample the villagers, leaving Totori behind. When Sabad finally regained consciousness, he couldn't remember a thing, and realized that he woke up into something similar to a beast possessed. Through the use of the forbidden spell, Sabad was turned into an actual Oni. Explaining her past to Elria, Totori revealed that after Sabad's rampage, the Mages Association issued an order to subjugate Sabad. As a special rank mage, Totori decided to take Sabad's life herself. However, Totori still hasn't given up as she wanted to see Savad smile one more time. With the desire to see Savad alive one more time, Totori used a spell to bring back the dead. When Elria mentioned that the spell succeeded, Totori responded that she can't confirm if the spell succeeded or not, as she also pointed out that the mana from the forbidden spell and Savad's mana were really compatible. After using the reviving spell, Savad had been reborn as a demon possessed by Oni. Totori mentioned how Elria reincarnated from an elf to a human, and believes that there's a good chance that Elria got reincarnated because of the magic that Reid activated. Totori believes that Reid was not aware of activating such magic, and guessed that it was all planned beforehand, referencing a forbidden spell that uses death as a trigger. When Elria shared that Reid's mana was given to him, and with Savad having the same mana as Reid, Totori could only wonder if the person who gave Reid and Savad mana knew about Savad's situation. With tears falling down her eyes, Totori wonders if those people knew that she revived Savad for her own selfish reason. Elria tries to calm Totori down, telling her that with her situation, regardless of Reid's intention, she is still thankful towards him for letting her live and spend her lifetime with the person she loves. Elria had nothing else to say since she was able to walk beside and laugh with Reid. After Reid risked his life just to see Elria's dead body, Elria no longer had anything else to say since her wish had already been granted. Elria was now filled with so much happiness and wouldn't have ever imagined it in her past life. Elria was certain that Savad also wanted to live together with Totori, which may also be the reason why Savad chose to stay with Totori. With her comforting words, Totori broke down crying on Elria's shoulders. Savad asked Reid a favor to not tell anyone about Totori's forbidden magic. Reid agrees in exchange that Savad would also not tell about his and Elria's reincarnation. After agreeing to Reid's terms, Savad shares how guilty he feels after being revived by Totori, even after he killed numerous people. In terms of killing people, Reid was certain that he was far ahead of Savad in his past life. However, what counted to Reid the most is the lives that he was able to save. Reid tells Savad that there was no need for him to be tied down with his past since he got revived with the woman he loves. Reid points out that Savad should feel more guilty if he makes Totori sad. Savad smiles as he agrees with Reid. Elria notices Alma missing and wonders where she went off. Alma appears and explains that after hearing the two have a serious talk, she felt like it would be insensitive to overhear the conversation. Hearing Alma, Totori states how she likes Alma's personality. Seeing something being tossed at them, Elria guessed that Reid and Savad were now finished. After getting down and meeting up with Reid and Savad, Elria asked if the two of them got closer. Reid responded that Savad and him only talked about a bunch of stuff. Alma then asked Reid where the throne was. After guiding everyone and asking for assistance from Totori to light up the path, Reid then responds that the throne is still underground. Savad comments how rare it was to have a throne underground. Reid believes that it is just their customs, as Altane has pretty drastic climate change, which made them decide to put the throne underground. People who had power and money also preferred to live underground. Despite the precautionary measures the country made, Reid states that in the end it still collapsed. As everyone arrives at the throne, Reid starts to reminisce how he used to bow to the king who was sitting on the throne, telling him how dying on the front lines suited him best. The memories triggered Reid's hidden hate towards the Empire and he was about to kick the throne down. Fortunately, Elria and Alma were present to stop Reid, trying to calm him down. Reid explained that remembering the former king just got on his nerves. Reid promises to hold back as long as he's allowed to hit the throne once. Alma and Elria remind Reid that he was the one who told them that they shouldn't destroy things. Annoyed, Reid decides to just pick the throne up and grab an object that is on the ground. Totori immediately recognizes it as Legnea's machinery. Reid confirms that it is and shared that the item is made by a drifter from Legnea. Reid also shared how the engineer was told to be gentle when handling the item. Looking at the surroundings, Totori thought how she would not be surprised if some of the designs are like the ones in Legnea. Looking at the designs, Totori can't help but feel bad. Going further underground, Alma wonders where her ancestors hid the weapon since it was her first time going down deep into the old Altane. Savad then calls for Reid, pointing at a flag. Recognizing the Union flag, Reid praises Liat for doing a good job. Digging up a chest, Reid uncovers a letter and recognizes it as Liat's handwriting. In the note, Liat informs Reid that he has received the message from Tiana and is accomplishing his mission. The result of Liat's investigation concludes the following, confirming that someone from the imperial family that survived had given it to Vitios and then ran away with it. However, their whereabouts are unknown. Based on the witnesses and testimonies, Liat believes that there's a high chance that the weapon sank in the Eastern Sea area. With the report ending, Alma couldn't help but feel disappointed and pointed out how the letter has a completely different vibe compared to the memorandum. Knowing that Liat is a serious fellow, Reid was certain that Liat wouldn't write any personal statements in his report. Reid then handed Alma a letter, telling her that it was for her. As Alma read through the letter, she felt joy hearing praises from her descendants. However, as Alma continues to read the letter, Reid asks how long the letter truly is. Alma responds that what she had read out loud was just about half of the first page and there's still 10 more pages. Reid then suggests that Alma read the last part. In the last part, Alma learned that Liat and Tiana left her a present. Since Alma comes from the Kanos bloodline, Liat was certain that the present will help her greatly. Opening the box, Alma was shocked as she never saw an item that is still in good condition, despite being made over 1,000 years ago. Elria notices how the banner is woven from a demon spinner's thread. Totori then mentioned that demon spinners have long gone extinct. Elria also shared that the thread, created while wrapped in mana, is sturdy. It is also pleasant to the touch. With the magnificent product, it resulted in overhunting, which led to the material being limited. Alma asks Elria how much the banner is worth based on their current era's value. Elria responds that Alma can buy land and build a castle and still have plenty of leftovers. Realizing how valuable the item is, Alma was having a hard time accepting it. Reid then noticed that the box had the Union Names Registry. Reading the notes, Alma realized that her ancestor added how he views the individual and even their personality. Reading the notes made Alma realize how her ancestors are putting a lot of faith in her. Reid asks Alma if she understands something. Alma understood what her ancestors wanted for her to do and that her magic would be the key. Alma states that she might have to pull some all-nighters and would even throw all her schoolwork to Philia. All of a sudden, everyone sensed a presence ahead. Not expecting a bullet to be shot, Savad ended up getting injured while protecting Totori. A white-haired man suddenly appears, leaping towards them and wielding an axe. As the man was about to land an attack on the injured Savad, Reid stops him by kicking the weapon away. After creating some space, both Elria and Reid stood in front, protecting the others. The man then stood up and told Reid and the others how he won't stand and see grave robbers stealing from his ruined homeland, calling the humans in the current age despicable. Believing the man to be the person that was sighted in the desert, he was asked about his identity. After telling Reid and the others that he is the hero, the man then orders his men to finish Reid and the others off. Recognizing the military weapons, Reid warns everyone to not try and defend, but instead dodge the attack. Reid also ordered Elria for strengthening. As the white-haired hero ordered for an attack, Reid, along with everyone else, just hid behind the rocks. Curious, Alma asked what the weapons were. Reid revealed that the weapons are called guns and that they were used 1,000 years ago by the military. The attack can easily be defended with magic, as the most it could do is to keep them in place. However, Reid points out that the main problem was the bullets themselves. The bullet is made from the armored dragons. The bullets were weapons that never existed before. With the bullets able to neutralize magic, Alma admits that both she and Totori may not be that useful right now. Reid then informs Totori and Savad that they are retreating and that Elria and he will cover the rear. Savad asks for Reid to wait, offering to handle the matter himself. Reid asks for Savad to stop, telling him that going out there would mean suicide. Savad reassured Reid that he is fine, and wished for Reid to chase the white-haired hero. Totori believes that the man may have used a forbidden spell, since they could smell blood, and sensed a wicked feeling from the throne the moment the man appeared. Reid asks what would happen if one uses a forbidden spell. All the forbidden spells that were used in Legnia failed, and beings created for the spell are called Calamity, and for that reason alone is why Savad wishes for Reid to handle the situation himself. Reid finally agrees with Savad's plan, and makes him promise to not die on him. Savad promises that he won't, and that he would always stay by Totori's side no matter what. One of the soldiers saw Savad standing in front of them. With the soldiers shooting all of their ammo, Savad took all of it whilst turning himself into a true demon. One by one, Savad ripped through the soldiers. When Reid and Elria finally caught up to the white-haired hero, they were shocked to see the man killing his own men. The hero then asked Reid and Elria why they came, and said that they were the ones who were defiling the place. Reid could no longer stand how the man just killed his own soldier with no reason at all, thus deciding to attack him first. The white-haired hero was certain that there's only magic in their world, which made him curious about Reid. Reid responds that he is a hero and points out how the white-haired man is the future hero. The white-haired hero assumed that Reid and the others were sent by the traitorous bastard Vors. Hearing the name surprises Elria. Reid, on the other hand, was confused as to who Vors is. The white-haired hero created distance between him and Reid. Swinging his huge axe, a soldier appeared and told the white-haired hero that their preparations are now complete. The hero asks the soldier's name after telling him how slow he is, with the soldier introducing himself as William Hoost. The hero then informs William that he now must fulfill his final duty. Walking past William, the hero tells him that he would remember his name. In William's last words, he stated, "Glory to our motherland, Altine," before ending his own life. This act shocked Reid. Clenching his fist, the hero praises William for a job well done, appreciating his sacrifice. Right after William's death, his body was sucked in, along with the bodies of his fallen comrades. Alma warned everyone that an earthquake was happening. When the white-haired hero turned, Reid told him to wait. Turning around, the white-haired hero grinned and said goodbye to Reid. Before leaving, the white-haired hero tells Reid that he can go ahead and wait for the Kaldwin scumbag in the afterlife. With the whole place shaking, Reid asks for Elria to clear the rubble. However, Elria ignored Reid's words, asking why the white-haired hero mentioned Vorse Kaldwin's name, revealing that it was the name of her father. Reid gets close to Elria, asking for her to get a hold of herself. Alma calls on to Reid, informing him that she has secured an escape route for them and that they must hurry. Carrying Elria in his arms, Reid follows Alma until they finally get out. Turning around, Reid and the others witnessed how the castle of Altine sunk deep into the ground. Reid asked Savad how his wounds were. "Ah, I'm fine," Savad responded. Savad shares that using Kikokutan allows him to keep attacking while forcibly healing himself until whoever is caught by it is no longer connected to him. However, the skill overwrites his mind with the personality of an Oni, and considers it himself as a double-edged sword. Totori mentioned that she has dispelled the spell before Savad could kill them, but all of the enemy committed suicide when she tried to get them to talk. Reid deduced that the soldiers probably planned to die from the start. Totori asks Reid if something happened on their side as well. "Yeah," Reid responded and revealed that there is a chance for Elria's father to be involved in the case. "Elria's father?" says Alma. Wanting to confirm, Alma asks if they are referring to Galio Kaldwin. Reid responds that he is referring to Elria's father from 1,000 years ago when she was still an elf. Mentioning her father's name, Vorse Kaldwin, Elria shared that it was her father who had taught her sorcery. Elria didn't spend much time with her father because he was always traveling, but whenever Vorse Kaldwin came back, he would praise Elria's sorcery. In the past, Elria once informed her father that she wanted to read the book she had found. After taking a look at the book, Vorse told his daughter that she might not understand it since it was quite difficult. Though Elria understood what her father was implying, she also pointed out to her father that not reading the book because it is difficult is also bad. "You sure say clever things, El," said Vorse, after which he praised Elria for being a really hard worker. "I did my best," Elria responded. Vorse stated how Elria always managed to use the sorcery he taught her so quickly. Vorse was surprised when Elria suddenly announced that she would challenge her father soon and overthrow him. Vorse didn't expect that Elria would even know the word overthrow, which confirmed that his daughter does read everything. This left Vorse with no other choice but to accept Elria's challenge. With her eyes full of determination, Elria told her father to bring it on. Holding Elria in his right hand, Vorse snapped his fingers and summoned a huge tree in front of them. This act did not please Elria, as she called her father immature for suddenly showing off. However, she was very much curious as to how her father did it and asked about it. Vorse apologized and told Elria that he could not teach her that. Annoyed, Elria told her father that he not only acted immaturely but was also stingy. Vorse thought that it was better for Elria to figure it out on her own rather than him telling her how to do it. Confused, Elria said, "Me?" Vorse explained that telling Elria how to do it would be easy, but then pointed out that such a type of learning wouldn't be fun. With that in mind, Vorse wanted Elria to create something new on her own, instead of just using sorcery. Someday, Vorse hoped that Elria would be able to craft a magic that makes her wish come true. After sharing what her father had told her, Elria became more puzzled as to how her father knew of the future, and what the reason was for telling her to craft her own magic. Letting go of her staff, Elria started to question who her father truly was. Hearing this, Reid wondered if history could have been altered even 1,000 years ago when they were alive, as Reid also remembered that he had been given orders to kill Elria. With tears in her eyes, Elria began to question her very own identity. To calm Elria down, Reid held her face, telling Elria who she really is. For Reid, Elria loved reading and drinking lukewarm milk tea. A person who's shy, but the moment magic comes up, she gets talkative. Elria hated losing and never gave up no matter what happened. Reid also shared how Elria is always a mess in the morning, always doing something that makes him nervous. And yet on the battlefield, Elria is stronger and more beautiful than anyone else. Reid stated that it is Elria Kaldwin whom he has come to know. Reid does not know who Elria used to be in the past, and he has no idea what Elria did 1,000 years ago. Reid saw who Elria truly is during their fight, and he has spent all that time with her since they were reborn. Reid reassured Elria that he knows the Elria Kaldwin now better than anyone. Reid lastly told Elria that her current version is the woman he fell for. Elria's face immediately turned red, not expecting a confession from Reid. On the other hand, Reid nonchalantly mentioned that he accidentally went and said it. Alma asked Reid why he suddenly confessed at such a crucial time. Reid responded that it just came out unknowingly. Alma reminded Reid that he and Elria had insisted on staying engaged until he settled the score between them. Enraged, Alma pointed out how Reid had dragged out the whole "I won't confess until they settle who's stronger" for ages, which made her more curious as to why Reid suddenly confessed. Frustrated and visibly annoyed, Alma vented her frustration about how Reid randomly changes and breaks his word. Shocked, Totori was not sure why but pointed out that Alma was crashing out. Reid knelt in front of Elria, telling her that no matter the past or the future, she will always be Elria Kaldwin. Elria couldn't understand her own feelings but only sensed that she was happy and that everything would be just fine. Reid smiled and told Elria, "That's good to hear." When Reid mentioned that he wanted to return to the topic where they had left off, this annoyed Alma again, as she told Reid how he just jumps back into a grim topic after a sweet moment. Totori defended Reid, telling Alma that Reid isn't wrong though. Reid shared how the white-haired man who pursued them lined his men's heads as if it were some sort of ritual. Even the last man who came in later took his very own life without hesitation. Right after that, a jet-black void opened up, followed by an earthquake that caused the castle to crumble. Alma wondered if the forbidden spell had failed. Totori mentioned that she had studied all of Legnia's forbidden spells, but the one in the throne room wasn't familiar to her. Totori also pointed out that if the spell had failed, it would have caused a disaster. Reid believed that the white-haired hero did it out of some sort of conviction. Hearing a ringing sound at her waist, Alma picked up the call and heard how the person on the other line was thankful that they had finally gotten a hold of her. Asking the person on the other line to calm down, Alma asked what had happened. Alma was then informed that after a big earthquake, numerous unidentified magical beasts had suddenly appeared. Furthermore, it had been reported that a massive island had appeared on the coast of Palmare. Meanwhile, monsters appeared in the city. Selvis ordered Christia to stand back after piercing the monster with huge chains. Wondering where the monsters came from, another one sneaked its way behind Christia. Fortunately for Christia, the monster was instantly frozen in its place. Looking up at the sky, Christia immediately recognized the spell and its user. Landing on top of the monster and breaking it in half, Elria asked Chris if she was alright. Chris hugged Elria, telling her how glad she was that Elria was safe. Elria responded, "That's my line." Elria informed Selvas that they didn't see such monsters in the desert, and asked if he knew where the monsters came from. Selvas shared that a few monsters appeared from the direction of the sea after the big earthquake. Selvas suspected that the monsters emerged from the island that appeared off the coast of Palmare. Elria ordered Chris to evacuate to a safe place as she would investigate the situation along with Reid and the others. Standing at the edge of the shore, Alma stated that the island looked vile. Totori was shocked when a monster suddenly emerged from the island. After another earthquake hit the city, Elria asked Totori if, since there is a forbidden spell that turns the user into a beast possessed, there could also be a spell that turns the user into a magical beast. Setting aside the question of feasibility, Totori responded that it is possible. Reid stated that in layman's terms they were facing a calamity magical beast born out of a forbidden spell. Reid wondered how they were going to defeat such a monster, as one step of it is enough to cause earthquakes and tsunamis, resulting in even more destruction. Elria was shocked when she heard her father's voice, impressed with both the hero and the sage. The voice then told the two that it would be a problem if he let them go all out, and asked them to wait for a moment. Finally hearing the voice of Vorse Caldwin, Reid thought someone was watching them, but he didn't expect that Vorse would contact them directly. Vorse explained that things had turned out to be much more dire than he expected. However, Vorse couldn't find a way to solve the situation and was left with no other choice but to leave it to the two. Vorse was certain that the two had a lot of questions to ask of him, but asked that they save them until after they stopped the calamity. After Vorse apologized to Elria, Elria reached out to her father asking him how to stop the calamity. Vorse revealed that the calamity is akin to magic. It can't be defeated by ordinary means, except by the hero and the sage. Vorse informed the two that he would teach them how to defeat the calamity, and once that was done they could meet with each other. He also promised that he would answer all of their questions. Seeing an island with a huge mouth shocked Totori, prompting her to ask Alma what the creature was. Alma responded with another question, asking Totori which was bigger, the drought beast she hunted or the creature in front of them. Totori replied that it didn't even compare. Alma agreed and stated that the creature was even bigger than the ice whale she had once defeated. Savad raised his hand, calling the attention of both Totori and Alma. Totori told Savad that if they did not stop the beast it would certainly cause Legnia to suffer as well. Savad understood and agreed, then relayed the order that came from Reid, which was to protect everyone since he was going to go all out. Hearing this confused Alma and Totori, who muttered. After relaying Reid's order, Savad suggested that they deal with the smaller monsters. Meanwhile, Reid, who was being carried by Elria, was now headed toward the creature. Elria jokingly told Reid how she never expected that the day would come when she would be the one carrying him in her arms. Reid agreed, pointing out how he usually would be the one doing it. Stopping in midair, Elria asked Reid if he was ready. Reid responded that he was and told Elria to do it. After saying ready, Elria went ahead and threw Reid into the sky. Now having a full view of the creature, Reid lifted his leg and used a technique called iron shoes. Reid went straight toward the creature's mouth, chipping some of its teeth away. After Reid successfully got through, Elria followed right after and told him to hop on. Reid was surprised when he saw the inside of the creature. Following what her father had said, Elria was certain that a magic core would be found at the heart of the calamitous beast. However, they first had to choose the right path from among the doors. Punching into a wall, the two noticed that the creature regenerated at a fast rate. Elria revealed that not only sorcery but a number of complicated magic spells were also mixed in. With the information she had gathered so far, Elria deduced that the beast itself could be some sort of magic. Reid asked if they couldn't just destroy the beast from the inside with the sword that Elria had made for him before. Elria told Reid that she couldn't keep making that sword. To make sure it was completely destroyed, Elria believed that the best option would be finding the beast's core. Elria also stated that there was a magic spell she had never seen before, and believed that it was most likely a magic spell from the future. As of now, Elria and everyone else did not have enough time to unravel and dismantle it. All of a sudden, a swarm of eyeballs started appearing from a pit. With insane speed, the eyeballs launched an attack. However, it was still not strong enough against Reid, who easily blocked it. Forming a magic circle, another attack was launched in front of Reid and Elria. Sensing something from behind, the two turned around and saw a flood of blood. In order to stop the flood, Elria started chanting the spell Cradle of Tranquil Ice. Elria successfully froze the flood, which had almost hit them. Reid then took the opportunity to destroy the frozen blood, punching it cleanly. However, what the two didn't expect was that they saw an object after Reid had punched the frozen blood. After approaching it, Reid wondered if it was a door. Upon touching the door, it opened and revealed a large eye. This caught Reid off guard. When Reid called for Elria, he was puzzled when he no longer saw her and realized that they may have gotten separated. Seeing a tower in the distance, Reid stated that it felt to him as though he might have seen it before. Hearing screams from the other side, Reid turned and saw an eyeless monster about to run over a couple of civilians. Reid decided to intervene, jumping at the creature and punching it in the back. However, his attack didn't even cause any damage. Landing on top of the smaller monsters, Reid realized that his punch didn't work and that the monster didn't even react to him. Reid deduced that what he was seeing might be an illusion or the memory of the person who was used as the vessel for the spell. As Reid wondered what he should do, he turned around and was suddenly swallowed by a mouth. Reid now looked even more puzzled when he saw that he was back at the same spot again. Seeing the tower again, Reid was certain that he had already passed through the same path. Reid was shocked when he saw the exact monster that he had attacked earlier. Reid had only one theory, that he was looping back. The theory alone angered Reid since he couldn't help or do anything. Meanwhile, Alma called to Savad and asked if she had heard correctly when Reid told them that they were going inside the calamitous beast to destroy the core. Savad responded that she was correct. Totori asked Alma if something was wrong and if she had noticed something. Alma had been looking at the beast and then pointed to its teeth, telling Totori to look at them. Alma had been wondering why the wounds from the spawning magical beasts had already healed, yet the teeth that Reid broke had not. After Alma pointed it out, Savad finally noticed it as well. If the beast was formed from human bodies, Totori believed that the same principles of human body structure should apply. Unlike cells and skin which can heal, broken teeth can't be repaired. Listening to Totori, Alma agreed and thought that it sounded logical. Alma then asked Totori if she could lend a hand. Nervous, Totori asked Alma if she planned on attacking the beast along with Reid and Elria. Knowing the capabilities of Reid and Elria, Alma believed that the two would probably be fine. Totori told Alma that she was acting a bit too blasé, reminding her that she was also a teacher. Not wanting to hear more of Totori's comments, Alma ordered her to just get to it. Frustrated, Totori told Alma not to blame her if anything happened. The two started chanting their very own spells, combining them and casting the spell Lightning Emperor's Iron Fist. Going back to Reid, he wondered how many times he had repeated the same thing. Squatting down, Reid realized that he had not yet gotten used to being alone. Missing Elria's voice, Reid longed to hear it once again. To Reid's surprise, he heard Elria's voice calling his name. Reid was surprised when he actually saw Elria, relieved that she had finally found him. Elria told Reid that he vanished the moment the door opened. However, she could still sense his presence, so she figured that Reid must have been taken to a different space. Puzzled, Reid asked Elria how she was able to find him. Thanks to the attack from outside, the beast's magic power was dispersed, loosening up the space. Elria then took that opportunity to put her magic into her voice and make it resonate throughout the beast's body. Elria then used a dispel spell on the spots that responded to her voice. Elria stopped when Reid suddenly held her hand, asking her if something was wrong. Reid thanked Elria since her voice was the very reason he regained his composure. A flustered Elria thought that perhaps her magic power had erased the effects of the illusion. Changing the subject, Reid asked Elria if what was in front of them was the beast's core. After Reid's sudden disappearance, Elria guessed that the beast was trying to make Reid become a part of its core. "I see, that's unforgivable," said Reid. When Elria thanked Reid for everything, Reid looked confused and asked her why so suddenly. Elria responded and told Reid that she just wanted to say it, as she was also not sure herself. It made Elria think that maybe there was a version of her that wasn't really her, which scared her. However, even if she was not sure, Elria knew that everything would be fine because Reid would make it all clear for her. Now with a sword in his hands, Reid told Elria that he would do it as many times as she wanted, reminding Elria that she was Elria Caldwin, the sage. Lightning came out of the beast's mouth, which led to a huge explosion. After the incident, Millis was finally reunited with Reid and Elria, unable to control her emotions as she felt relieved to see the two were fine. Hugging Elria, Millis was very happy to see the two alive. Listening to Millis whine, Weasel told her that the way she said it made it sound like she was disappointed that Reid and Elria came back alive. Lucas also couldn't contain his emotions and shared that there was chaos in their location, and that what surprised them most was when the colossal magical beast appeared after the earthquake. When Valk heard that Reid and Elria were on site, her blood ran cold. Laughing at the two, Farrig stated that he was not worried about Reid and Elria in the slightest. Farrig then mentioned that if anyone under his command were to lose to a colossal magical beast, then surpassing them would be too easy for him, which he would then find boring. Farrig's comment angered both Valk and Lucas, who told Farrig that he was the one who was worried the most. Lucas then told Farrig that because he kept saying things like that, it was the reason why he couldn't make any friends. Also listening to Farrig, Weasel told Farrig that what he had just said was basically admitting that Reid was the same as a special rank mage. Weasel then informed Reid that he had heard the headmaster was rushing to get to the location in response to the incident. Reid responded, telling Weasel that Elria and he were planning to meet with the headmaster. A few days later, after the calamitous beast's defeat, Elise congratulated the two on defeating the colossal magical beast. Elise had never imagined that the two would be able to defeat such a colossal magical beast while still students at the academy. Both Reid and Elria apologized to Elise for being reckless again, and were prepared to accept her scolding. "Nah," said Elise as she then told the two that for once she wouldn't let the association have any say in the matter. Elise mentioned that 3 special rank mages, as well as Princess Christ, had witnessed everything. Elise was certain that the public wouldn't remain silent if Reid and Elria didn't receive recognition for their actions. Elise stated that the two were now on the fast track to graduation, and that Elria would be known as the youngest to become a special class mage. As for Reid, he would also be recognized as a mage. Reid thought that it all sounded good to hear, and mentioned that he had made a promise with the head of Caldwin after all. Elise then remembered the terms for Reid and Elria's engagement. With a bright smile, Elise told the two that they finally could get married. Elise couldn't express how happy she was for the two to get along, especially considering how they carried the same names of Reid and Elria from the legend. Reid asked Elise if she could finally start explaining things now. Puzzled, Elise asked Reid what he meant by that. Elise then asked if the question was about their placement on the comprehensive exam or if it was about the content of Alma's lecture. Reid then told Elise that it was her who had told them to meet up with her. Elise froze when Reid asked her if he was wrong calling her Vorse Caldwin. Reid reminds Elise how he was the one who had told them to meet her. Reid then reveals a twist as he calls Elise Vorse Caldwin. Puzzled, Elise asks Reid what he meant by that. Reid asks to be spared from Elise's lies and trickery, and makes it clear that he is not saying all of it based on mere guesses or speculation. As the headmaster and a genius magic tool engineer, Reid points out how Elise had instantly elevated Vigulta's technological standards, a feat that should have taken decades. Regarding the protection technology from the bracelet artifacts during the comprehensive exam, Reid points out that the technology used in them reminded him greatly of Altine's surveillance devices and transmitters. However, from what Reid knows, all of Altine's technology died out 1,000 years ago. If that were the case, such a feat is only possible because Elise possesses knowledge of technology from the future that is more advanced than anything they have today. As for why Reid concluded that Elise is from the future, it was also her who directed them to go to the Liberta Desert. Both the timing of the Magic Beast investigation and the dispatching of Legnia's special class mages were too coincidental for Reid. Elise even directed the group to the location so that they would run into the white-haired hero. Elise raises her hand admitting defeat and that Reid had solved the puzzle. Elise tells the two that she really is Vorse Caldwin, Elria's father from 1,000 years ago. After calling Elise headmaster, Elria corrects herself, changing it to dad, and tells her that she wants to ask the most important thing. Elise allows the question and asks Elria what it is. Elise is shocked when Elria asks if she was longing to be a girl, and if that is also the reason why she is wearing frilly clothes. Worried, Elria asks Reid what she should do now that her father wears frilly clothes like a little girl. Reid too finds it hard to believe even after realizing it. Elise bursts out asking Reid and Elria to hold on for a moment. Elise then explains that she has the memories of Vorse Caldwin, but she is also a genuine adorable elf girl named Elise Rummel. Elise explains that her personality and that of Vorse are two different things. Based on what Elise mentioned, Reid states that Elise is a memory inheritor. Elria asks Elise if that means her father never longed to be reincarnated as a little girl and wear frilly dresses. Elise responds and makes it clear to Elria that her father did not have such a longing, and that it is also not possible to choose to be a memory inheritor. Crying out, Elise reveals that the clothes she is wearing now are not the type of clothes she likes. However, her relatives keep sending them to her, telling her how they would definitely suit her. Elria comments on how it is polite of Elise to keep wearing clothes that she does not like. Setting the matter aside, Reid asks Elise to confirm whether she and the white-haired hero were allies. Elise responds that they are not being precise. Elise points out that they were her allies at first, but then she started acting on her own, which made it look as though she had betrayed them. Expressing a more accurate description, Elise reveals that Vorse's aim was to create a world exactly as Elria wished to live in. Shocked, Elria looks confused and asks about her wish. Elise tells the two that Vorse came from the future and changed the history of their world. Hearing the shocking news, Elria asks if that meant that she too was from the future. Elise confirms it and tells Elria that she is. As for the hero from the future who confronted Reid, Elise explains that the hero is a human who came from even further ahead in time than they did. Most likely their objective is to migrate from the pre-altered world to theirs. 1,000 years ago in the pre-altered world, the Etoria continent bore witness to the Altine Empire and the Kingdom of Vigalta competing for dominance. During this same period, Reid, known as the Sage, left behind a wealth of knowledge from which magic and mechanical technology developed. The Altine Empire eventually destroyed the Kingdom of Vigalta. Time passed, and 1,000 years later, in what they would now call the present day, Elria was born. Seeing the young Elria reading another book, Vorse tells her how she had pulled out another book from his study again without his permission. However, Elria only ignores his words and tells her father how the person in the book is amazing. After checking the book, Vorse asks if she is referring to Reid, the Sage. Elria responds that she is and believes that she can make her dreams come true with Reid's book. Staring at Elria, Vorse says, "Your dream?" Elria responds and tells her father that her dream was to make everyone happy with magic, and so Elria created magic using the Sage's knowledge. Within the Altine Empire, the elves were persecuted, and to ensure both his and his daughter's safety, Vorse made a deal with Altine. Elise reveals how Vorse handed over the magic technology that Elria created with the hope of making others happy to the Altine Empire. Based on what Reid knows of Altine, they would only trample on such a dream. As a result, Altine used the magic to take many lives and bring the entire continent of Etoria under their rule. Vorse withheld the truth from Elria and isolated her from the outside world. The young Elria, who was ignorant at the time, did not know that her magic was being used by the Empire to destroy cities. When Elria finally learned that her dreams had been betrayed, rage and hatred consumed her. Elria brought indiscriminate destruction and death to all and became the world's enemy. In order to atone for hiding the truth from Elria, Vorse decided to remain by her side as her ally, even if it meant turning the entire world against him. However, humanity did not simply stand idle. They created the magic known as the hero from the knowledge left behind by the Sage. Then, after another 1,000 years, humanity finally faced its extinction. As the only remaining race left, Elria wondered why everything had ended up in such a way. Vorse approaches Elria, telling her that they have guests over for the first time in ages. "Is that so?" says Elria. At that moment, the huge tree on which they had built their castle was suddenly cut down. Entering the castle through a window, a man with a huge sword appeared, greeting Elria, whom he calls the Demon Queen, and stating that it has been 5 years since they last met. The man recalculates the time in his memories, mentioning how it has been 5 years for him, but for Elria, he guesses that it is their first ever meeting. It does not bother Elria, nor does she show any care, and she only knows that the man in front of her is a hero, and that is all she needs to know. Elria understands that the man came to kill her. After hearing Elria speak, the man responds that talking about killing her would make him more of a warrior rather than a hero. Despite the man's jokes and taunts, Elria still does not care, and could not care less. Pointing her finger at the man, Elria shoots powerful blasts, strong enough to destroy the entire wall behind him. With his entire shoulder grazed by the magic, the man tells Elria how it burns, and asks if she was trying to kill him. Elria responds, reminding the man how he came to their castle to kill her. The man then asks Elria to wait and makes it clear that he did not come to fight her. The man then interacts with Vorse, calling him uncle, and asks if he has not talked to the Demon Queen about it yet. Vorse then tells the man that he came and trashed the tower before he could speak to her. Vorse mentions that his daughter's name is Elria and asks that the man not call her the Demon Queen. "Ooh, guess you're right," says the man, as he too would not want to be called any awful names either. Putting down his sword, the man declares that he is surrendering. The man admits that humanity cannot win against Elria, not even with the hero created by the Great Sage. No matter how many times they are reincarnated and inherit memories and magical power, humanity will still perish before they can surpass Elria's strength. "Is that so?" says Elria. The man asks for Elria's forgiveness, stating how they had called Elria the evil Demon Queen and sought to kill her, even though she was the one who gave them the gift of magic. Unfortunately for Elria, none of it mattered anymore. Whether humanity misused magic and called her the Demon Queen, and even tried to kill her, or whether humanity accepted its end, for Elria it was all too late. The man then asks Elria if, should she be able to start all over again, what she would wish for. "Huh?" says Elria, confused by the man's question. The man smiles as he has finally caught Elria's attention. The man explains that heroes like him use magic that draws power from the divine realm, which exists beyond the world's laws. Not even the Demon Queen, who has mastered magic or the power of becoming immortal, can access such power, says the man. When heroes die and reincarnate, a flood of magic from the divine realm is released. With that magic, they would be able to rewind the flow of time for their existence. In that way, Elria would be able to start over from the beginning. Supporting the man, Vorse tells his daughter that everything she has heard is the truth. At the very least, Vorse finds what the man said quite plausible, which is why he had brought the man to their place. With the man's hero power and Vorse in soul form, they would be able to send Elria back in time. Vorse then asks Elria that they start over again, and that in their second time, he wishes that they make sure Elria's dream would come true. Elria's dream of a world where they can make everyone happy with magic. The man then informs Vorse that he will not be able to help out any longer and leaves the rest to him. Vorse understands and tells the man that he will keep the promise he made to the heroes. The man smiles and says that he can finally die in peace. Confused, Elria asks the hero why he would go through such lengths for her. The man looks confused and explains to Elria that he and the heroes who came before him believed it was the sage's will. The sage's will, says Elria. The path and conditions to become a hero are the sage's magic draft for heroes that he had left behind. The man touches on it a bit earlier and wonders why the sage chose the name hero. The man is sure that it is because the sage wanted to save those who should be saved, just like the girl with absolute power who was branded the enemy of humanity and evil, says the man. Calling Vorse's name, the man asks that they meet again in the past, and the man is certain that the hero Vorse would meet will no longer be him. Vorse smiles back as he still looks forward to their reunion. The man sits down and slowly lays his back on the ground. Raising his hand, the man states that he will now leave the young lady to the sage. The man corrects himself and changes it to the first hero, Reid. To save his daughter Elria, Vorse borrowed the power of the hero, once their enemy returned to the past and changed the very course of the world's history. To achieve such a feat, Vorse had Elria create magic and guide the Vigalta kingdom into becoming a powerful nation of magic. However, something unexpected came to Vorse. Reid believes that it was Elria's sudden death caused by the depletion of her magic powers. Elise confirms this to Reid and mentions that Vorse never imagined that someone from the future would come and kill Elria. From the memories Reid saw earlier within the colossal magic beast, he remembers witnessing a calamity wreaking havoc and killing countless people. In the future, where both the Demon Queen and the hero had vanished, mankind remains facing extinction due to the calamities left behind by the Demon Queen. This became the reason they traveled back in time in order to survive. Then they found Elria's past self and killed her, says Elria. Elise pointed out that only the hero could travel back in time. This meant that their enemy had somehow obtained the hero's power. Vorse once again detected that their enemies were coming from the future. Vorse decided to use the remaining soul of the hero to erase Alteen's existence from history, all to create a world in which, someday, the reincarnated hero and his beloved daughter Elria could live in happiness. Elise became frank with the two and shared how frightened she was of Vorse for going to such extreme lengths. However, when Elise finally met the two after being reincarnated as the inheritor of Vorse's memories, she resolved herself to the belief that she had a duty to protect the world. Elria spoke up about her father's actions and mentioned that sacrificing the future of mankind was not acceptable. However, she also understood her father's wish to change the world for her sake. Even so, Elria still couldn't accept the fact that there were people who had been hurt in the process. Lafika was supposed to be disposed of after her contract with the Guardian Dragons expired, but now that her soul is united with Rufus's, the two can live together. Totori would have had no choice but to kill her beloved with her own hands, but because Savad was given the hero's magic, her forbidden spell succeeded. For Elria, she does not believe that it is a bad future. After looking at Reid, Elria tells Elise that she too will do what she can to protect their world, including the future of mankind, says Reid. Hearing the two speak caught Elise off guard. Tearing up, Elise laughed and finally confirmed for herself that Reid truly is a hero. Elise told the two that as of right now they are everything Vorse had hoped for, and everything those who have carried on his memories have wished for. Elise was overjoyed to have met Reid and Elria in her generation. After their meeting with Elise, Reid stated that the smile on the principal's face when they first met her came from a father's perspective. Reid praises Vorse, calling him an amazing dad for literally changing the world for the sake of his daughter. Elria tells Reid that the same goes for him as well, pointing out how Reid is the sage who created the hero's magic. Reid felt weird getting praised for something a different version of himself did. He sure did something that's not like me at all, says Reid. Grabbing Reid's arm, Elria told him that if it weren't for him she would never have invented magic. For that reason, Elria has decided that their fight has ended with her losing it, says Reid. Flustered, Elria stutters and tells Reid that she has lost, and that she has something she wanted to say to him. Elria remembers the conversation she had with her mother, who reminded her to tell Reid that she wanted to get engaged to him. Before Elria could say anything further, Reid stopped her and told Elria that since they were going with that logic, he too had something to say. Who, says Elria. Reid tells Elria that if she had been serious from the start, the Alteen military would have been annihilated. And if Elria takes into account that she saved Reid with her belief magic, then Reid explains how they could argue that the fight was his loss. Elria screams at Reid, telling him that it was Alteen's defeat and that she does not think of it as defeating Reid. However, Reid couldn't have done the Eastern Region investigation without Elria, and since Reid hasn't repaid that debt to Elria, he believes that it would be his loss. Elria responds back, telling Reid that the encouragement he gave her at the ruins lifted her spirits, and therefore she believes that it should be counted as her loss. Slamming his hand onto the wall and pinning Elria, Reid pointed out that it was because Elria refused to give up on looking for him after they reincarnated that they were able to meet again. Reid added that he wouldn't have become a mage if Elria hadn't asked him to become engaged to her. With everything Reid mentioned, he believes that it was his total defeat. Spiraling downward, Elria didn't want to accept the win and told Reid that there was still more. Seeing Elria panicking made Reid smile. A girl was walking up the stairs hearing a familiar voice. With her face completely red, Elria shouts at Reid and tells him that he came when she needed help with Rufus. Reid explained that all he did was play with the guardian dragons, and pointed out that it was Elria who saved Rufus. "Found you," says the girl, which was heard by both Reid and Elria. Looking in the direction of the girl, Reid mentions the name Stella. Elria asks if the girl is someone Reid knows. Running toward Reid, the girl, who is named Stella, suddenly kicked him. Blocking Stella's attack, Reid asks her what she was doing at the academy. Stella grinned before hugging him. Stella called Reid Nie-chan and told him how it had been a long time since they had last seen each other. Reid agrees and remembers that it was during the last winter break that the two of them last saw each other. Seeing a girl riding on Reid's shoulders, Elria trembled. "Nie-chan," says Elria. Finally noticing the girl beside Reid, Stella asks her if she was the real Lady Elria. Elria responds that she is, and asks the girl who she is. The girl introduces herself as Stella Frieden, Reid's little sister and a 15-year-old. Stella asks Elria that they shake hands, as she was very pleased that they had finally met. "Nice to meet you," says Elria. Reid once again asks his sister what she was doing in Palmary. Raising her hand, Stella tells her brother that it was for the comprehensive exams. Stella was meant to be in Palmare for the comprehensive exam itself, but Reid believes that Stella came early after hearing that he was there. "That's right," says Stella. A man appeared behind Reid trembling and stated that Stella's Reid detector still worked amazingly as usual. Waving at his brother, Reid learned that his older brother Ed was also in Palmare. "What in the world, Reid?" says Ed as he mentioned that Reid had duplicated himself after not seeing each other for a while. Reid tells his brother Ed that once he opens his eyes he will go back to being just one of himself. Grabbing Reid by the shoulder, Ed asks Reid to be reasonable. Calling Reid his clever little brother, Ed explains that he is in Palmar to babysit their little sister who is always full of energy every day while working as an instructor's aide on the side. Ed desperately needed his sleep now. Stella then tells her older brother that they had only had 3 mock battles today. Ed responds by asking his battle-maniac little sister to calm down. Ed then asks Stella if she had forgotten the reason why they came to see Reid. After thinking about it, Stella proudly tells her older brother that she had forgotten. "You forgot, I see," says Ed. Ed approaches Elria and apologizes for the ruckus that they had made. Ed then formally introduces himself to Elria as Edward Frieden, the oldest brother of Reid and also an assistant instructor at the Meridian Academy of Magic in the South. Elria responds by introducing herself to Edward. Upon hearing the last name Caldwin, Edward starts staring at Elria more closely. Edward then turns to Stella and informs his sister that the person in front of them is the real Lady Elria in the flesh. "If Ed Nie-chan said so, then she is the real one," says Stella. Holding back his tears, Edward states that his little sister is usually a handful, and yet her unquestioning trust toward him is something he finds too adorable. Freaking out, Elria calls out to Reid. Apologizing to Elria, Reid explains how his family is usually like that. Stella grabs Edward's attention and mentions that the rumors must be true since the real Elria is standing right in front of them. Edward agrees, which now makes him worried that their mother might faint when she hears of the rumors. Confused, Reid asks the two why they are mentioning their mother. Still confused, Edward asks Reid why he is even asking, and whether he even remembered what he told their mother before he left. Reid mentions that he told their mother that he would be getting engaged to Elria and that he probably wouldn't be back home for a while. Reid was shocked when Edward told him that their mother thought it was a prank. Reid remembered his mother mentioning something like that in her letter, but Reid had included a photo in his letter as well, which made him wonder why his mother thought of it as a prank. Edward revealed that when their mother saw the photo, she realized that it might be more than a prank at first, but as soon as she thought that a famous lady was falling in love with Reid, their mother's doubt returned. However, after a year passed, it finally dawned on their mother that everything Reid said might be real. Reid wished that his mother had believed him from the beginning. Stella also thought that it was a prank from Reid. When their mother read the news about Reid defeating the colossal magic beast in Palmarl the other day, she made up her mind to come and visit them. "Huh," says Reid. Edward mentions that their mother won't return home until she meets Reid's bride. The next day, Stella is yet again full of energy, excited since it was her first time riding a magic car. Barely able to control the car, Edward asks his sister to stay still for a moment. Although Edward had driven a similar car for work at the academy before, if the car they were using now got damaged, Edward would have to work for free instead of getting paid. Stella ignored Edward's plea and instead praised him for being able to drive such a car. Reid told the two that they owed Farag a thank you for lending it to them. Hearing the name Farag, Edward asked Reid if he was referring to the son of the famous Verminion house. On top of knowing a member of the Verminion house, Reid is also engaged to Elria, which prompted Edward to ask just how much good karma Reid had built up in his past life. "A lot, let's just say," says Reid. Changing the topic, Edward asks Reid if Elria isn't trembling with anger because of his terrible driving. Edward then points out how Elria is trembling like crazy. Reid responds that Elria is just nervous. When Elria muttered something, Reid translated it and told the two that Elria was fine. However, all Edward heard was just a squeal. Reid explains how his wife squeals every now and then. Embarrassed, Elria covers her face after being called Reid's wife. Reid then asks Stella if she can have a little chat with Elria. Stella agrees, eager to have a conversation with her future big sister. Stella immediately turns her attention to Elria, calling out to get her attention. Yes, says Elria. When Elria was asked which part of Reid she fell in love with, Elria was shocked and flustered, muttering, "Fall in love?" Stella pointed out that her brother can't use magic and that their social standing is so different, which led Stella to believe that it must have been Elria who confessed and asked to get engaged. Another theory Stella drew up was that it was because of Reid's old man vibe, even though he is still young. Muttering, Elria asked what that meant. Elria then continued, saying that she fell in love with everything about Reid. Blown away, Stella shouts outside, telling the animals that Elria loves everything about Reid. Unable to focus, Edward tells his little sister that his ears are ringing. Stella then turns to Reid, asking him which part of Elria he fell in love with. "Of course, everything," says Reid. Stella was caught off guard by Reid's straightforward answer. Reid states that what he said is the truth, which is why he does not hesitate. Stella notices the change in Reid and tells him about it. Reid responds that unlike in the past, right now he has Elria by his side. Looking at Elria, Reid states that if Elria said that she fell in love with everything about him, then he has to answer with the same feeling. Embarrassed, Elria ducks and covers her ears. When Reid touched Elria's head, he was shocked at how hot it was and asked her if she was alright. Elria broke down, asking Reid if he really fell in love with everything about her as well. Shocked, Reid asks if that was what finished her off. Stella grabs Edward's attention, informing him that Reid had finished Elria off. Edward asks his little sister to calm down again and to stop doing interesting things while he can't take his eyes off the street. Reid guesses that he will have to be more mindful of what he says in the future so that Elria doesn't pass out anymore. Stella is all cheers after finally arriving at their destination. Worried about Elria, Reid asks if she is now feeling better. I'm completely fine now," says Elria, but she warns Reid that if he keeps saying nice things to her, she might faint again. Reid agrees but makes it clear that he does not mind Elria fainting since the others will be worried, so he will try to keep it in moderation, her face turning red again. Elria thought that it was exactly what she meant, and felt like Reid was much more open now than before. Isn't that?" says Reid. A woman charges toward Reid, calling out his name. "Long time no see, Mom," says Reid. Reid's mother shakes him rapidly, telling him not to just leave home for months just to make his prank more believable. Reid makes it clear that what he said wasn't a prank, and that he already explained himself in the letter. Reid's mother responds, telling him that getting engaged after a noble lady fell for him at first sight, which she then points out that someone like Reid who couldn't use magic, gets enrolled in Vigalta Magic Academy, and then slaying a colossal magic beast, all sounded like a prank to her no matter how she looks at it. "Makes sense," Reid responds. Turning her attention to Elria, Reid's mother asks who the cute lady is. Elria greets Reid's mother, introducing herself as Elria. Reid's mother is very pleased with how polite Elria is. She then introduces herself as Kaela Frieden. Mentioning Elria's name, Kaela points out that it is the same name as the great sage from 1,000 years ago. Kaela then tells Elria that she has a very auspicious and wonderful name. When Elria mentions that her last name is Kaldwin, Kaela looks puzzled and mentions that it is the same name as the noble house mentioned by Reid in his letter. "Could it be?" says Kaela as she finally connects the dots. "For you to think it's still a prank despite hearing all that, I can't help but worry about you, Mom," Reid says to Kaela. Edward agrees with Reid and tells her that they too are surprised, reassuring her that everything is true. A familiar person coincidentally shows up and states how they were the last ones to arrive. Reid apologizes for having troubled them to come all the way to their place. Alicia tells Reid that the next time he calls, he should let them know ahead of time if he plans on inviting them. Galleon laughs and apologizes for being late, explaining that their ride can't just pick up speed because he is too heavy. Alicia approaches Kaela, telling her how she is very pleased to meet Reid's mother. Kaela is surprised when she is called Madame and mentions that it's the first time she has been called that. Kaela asks Alicia if she is Elria's big sister. Alicia apologizes for the late introduction and introduces herself as Alicia Kaldwin, the 25th head of the family, as well as Elria's mother. Standing next to her is her husband, Galleon Kaldwin. Alicia mentions that they were invited today by Reid to extend their greetings. Alicia believes that the purpose of today's gathering is a formal meeting between their two families regarding the engagement. After transferring to a more formal room, the two families are now seated at a table. Kaela asks her daughter to be on her best behavior, stating that there is a proper way to do things, such as knowing which cutlery to use first. Elria asks the girls to be relaxed and that they can use the cutlery from the outside in and they will be fine. "Okay then. I'll just eat however it feels right," says Stella. Galleon asks Reid if the person beside him is his father. Edward takes the opportunity to introduce himself as the older brother, and mentions that their father's name is Silas, who is currently away on a business trip in Serios. Edward relays a message from his father, promising to visit the Kaldwin family in person at a later date. Kaela's and Stella's eyes glow after seeing the delicious meals presented in front of them. Alicia calls Kaela's attention, asking if she can have a word with her. Yes, says Kaela. Nervous, Kaela says, Of course, please, go ahead. Alicia tells Kayla that there is no need for her to be talking so formally, and that she can speak as she usually does. Kayla understands and asks if she can call Alicia, Alicia-chan. Both Reid and Edward are too shocked and end up spitting the liquor they were drinking. That's a rather unexpected level of familiarity, says Alicia. Kayla tells Alicia that although she is pretty and has a prim aura about her, she can't help but see that there is a little girlishness left in her. For that reason, Kayla wishes to call Elria's mother Alicia-chan. Trembling, Alicia responds and tells Kayla that she may call her whatever she wants. Elria is shocked, stating that her mother is blushing. Galleon is also surprised and mentions that Kayla's candid and innocent words hit Alicia hard, leaving her at a loss for words. Going back to the main topic, Alicia believes that Kayla is now convinced that their children's engagement is genuine. Now that she has met Elria and her family, Kayla is left with no other choice but to believe everything. Alicia shares that Reid has also gained his mage qualification after subjugating the colossal magical beast the other day. With that matter resolved, Alicia believes that it is they who should be bowing their heads to ask for his hand. Galleon mentions that Reid is truly amazing, even though there have been cases where entire divisions of first-class mages have been annihilated while confronting such beasts, and achieving such a feat means that Reid is practically as good as a special rank mage. Right? Says Stella as she states that she has always believed that Reid is invincible. Galleon laughs and tells Stella that it is exactly as she says. Shaking hands, Galleon is sure that Stella would be a wonderful mage as well since she understands Reid's true strength. When the time comes, Galleon would be pleased to welcome Stella. With that in mind, the Kaldwin family wants to take the opportunity to give their full approval to not only Reid and Elria's engagement but also the marriage. As for the wedding and any other future expenses, Alicia takes the initiative and tells Kayla that they will cover all the costs, and that they will also accept any conditions that the Frieden family has. Finally, having a grasp of what is going on, Kayla decides to object to everything. Kayla states that although Reid may have done something admirable, he also did something dangerous. Confused, Reid asks his mother what was wrong. Galleon responds that from a different point of view, Kayla may be correct. Pointing at Reid, Kayla tells her son that she isn't happy that he did something dangerous behind her back. Reid admits that he only told Kayla about the engagement and not all the danger that happened. Kayla knows that the Kaldwin family has been generous to Reid, but asks that the Kaldwin family does not expect that she would agree to the marriage just because of that. For Kayla, it seems like she would be giving her beloved son away just for money. I suppose it does sound like that, Alicia responds. Kayla asks for everyone to understand, and mentions that she only wants Reid to be truly happy. Since she did not give birth to an ordinary child, she admits that she has made Reid's life harder by being born magicless. Mom, says Reid. Kayla makes it clear that she does not completely object to the marriage. Kayla can see that Reid is now much more relaxed than he was in the village. Reid had always seemed restless to her before, but he now looks much harder. With a smile on her face, Kayla asks Reid if he is happy now, and if he thinks that he will be happier once he gets married. Yes, of course, says Reid. Kayla asks if she can ask for one condition. Yes, Elria responds. Kayla asks Elria if she would promise to bring Reid more happiness than anyone else, and makes it clear that it is all she ever asks. Elria accepts the condition and promises that she will make Reid happy. Kayla then calls on Reid, telling him that he too must make the same promise, that he would make Elria happy. Reid understands and promises to everyone that he will make Elria happier than anyone else. Kayla is so annoyed at Reid for giving such a nonchalant response and shares why everyone is calling him an old man. Reid tells his mother that he still has something else to tell her. Kayla instantly assumes that Reid already has a baby and asks if she is going to become a grandmother soon. Blood boiling, Galleon tells Reid that he can't let that one slide. Reid tells the two that they are wrong. What he is about to say is something he decided to talk about after discussing it with Elria. Reid reveals to everyone that Elria and he are both the reincarnations of individuals known as the Sage and the Hero who lived 1,000 years ago. After sharing the truth, Stella sums it all up by saying that Reid and Elria are both amazing people. Edward then mentions that it won't change the fact that they are family, and that Reid is his proud little brother. Kayla is also so happy to learn that Reid isn't magicless, but that he simply has amazing magic instead. Galleon is thrilled to learn that his beloved daughter is the revered sage, and that he is extremely conflicted about whether he should adore or respect her. Alicia is convinced though that it doesn't change the fact that their decorum leaves a lot to be desired. In fact, to maintain the dignity of the sage, she says that she is going to be stricter with her from now on. After their meeting, Kayla tells her son to come back home once in a while. Yeah, say hi to Dad, says Reid. Inside the car, Reid apologizes to Edward for making him drive all the way home. Edward responds and tells Reid that it was no big deal, wondering if he should now call his little brother a hero instead. Reid becomes honest and wishes that he could have told everyone sooner. However, he had no idea what kind of magic he had until Elria told him. Other than that, lots of other things happen, says Reid. He feels bad for making their mother worry about him all this time. Edward points out that their mother wasn't really angry with Reid, and that Reid has always been the dependable one, the kind who never gave anyone a reason to worry. Edward then asks Reid if he can remember the day he took the magic aptitude test. Reid responds that he does, remembering that it was the day he got a real earful for breaking the testing tool. During that time, Kayella pleaded with the school to let Reid take the test one more time. The principal understands Kayella's feelings but asks that she understand that her request is impossible to fulfill. However, despite being told that it was not possible, Kayella still begged. The kids in the town started talking about Reid being magicless, and about how he couldn't even use a magic tool. The other kids thought that having no talent for magic must be hard to live with. Holding young Stella's hand, Reid tells her that she does not have to pay attention to them. Reid was once surprised when he saw his little sister with bruises. Kayella, who also saw her daughter bruised up, asked if Stella got caught in a fight. Stella explained that Reid was being made fun of and that she couldn't forgive them for mocking him. Reid tells Stella that the situation can't be helped and promises to teach her how to fight. Shocked, Kayella tells Reid that it is wrong. Edward had a conversation with his father Silas and was asked if he was certain about not pursuing a career as a mage. Edward wanted to find out and wished to determine whether Reid has magic or if it is a whole new type of magic altogether. After that conversation, Edward left to pursue his research. When Reid came of age, he told his father that he would work in the village as a lumberjack and help people around. This thrilled Silas, and he supported Reid's decision. Since Reid was going to work in the village without any problems, Silas decided to change his job, a decision that surprised Reid. Stella also spoke up and begged that Reid train her to become a mage and show everyone how amazing he is. In total disbelief at what is going on, Reid asks his mother if she plans on stopping them. However, Kayella tells Reid that it is all fine and that this is how they, the Frieden family, roll. Reid can't help feeling that he hasn't shown his gratitude enough. In his previous life, Reid barely spent any time with his family. With his current life, he is truly happy and grateful to have been reborn into such a loving family. Edward tears up, telling Reid that what he said was a very nice thing. "It's because you're that way that we can't help but want to do something for you," says Edward. The older brother couldn't stand that no one accepted their precious family just because Reid couldn't use magic. Reid tells Edward to hold on and points out that the car is swerving. Crying, Edward mentions how he was filled with happiness when he heard that people were now recognizing Reid. Worried, Reid asks his brother not to drive while looking down. Edward becomes annoyed since he can't see anything in front of him because of his tears. "So looking forward's useless too," says Reid. Reid screams, "A deer?" Edward then tells Reid that since they are family, if the car gets wrecked, they should share the cost of the damage together. Panicking, Reid asks Edward why he is acting like they are going to crash for real. Reid takes over the wheel just in time to avoid the deer. Stella, who wakes up because of the ruckus, asks her brothers why they are making so much noise. Edward explains to Stella how he couldn't help but shed manly tears because he was so moved. Reid, who is holding the steering wheel, asks his brother to cut it out already and look forward. Stella states that she does not care who it is and asks which one of the two she should punch. "What a scary thing to say right after waking up," says Reid. Stella is told to be patient until tomorrow, as Reid has someone perfect in mind to spar with her. Stella agrees and mentions how she can't wait. Edward then tells Reid not to redirect Stella's frustration without thinking, as he is the one who has to deal with it afterward. Reid reassures Edward that there is nothing to worry about since the person he has in mind may learn many things from Stella.